going to talk about, we're all on a spectrum of straight to gay, male to female, man to woman. We're just getting into it. Where the straightest are going to be gay, the gayest are going to be straight. Okay, Dick, I'm ready. Go ahead.
Did everyone miss your introduction? I feel like we should. I feel like we should let everybody go around the room and kind of give yourself a tiny intro before we get started. Do you think that's appropriate, Mr. Girl?
Hey, I'm just another panelist.
You're the moderator, man.
Real quick, I can almost do it for him. RekietaLaw is kind of a far right, well, not far right. He's more of a right leaning person who did a lot of coverage and got pretty big off the Rittenhouse trial. Dick Masterson was part of the Kill Stream. Now he has the Dick Show. Definitely farther right than Rekieta, I would say. Buck Angel is the farthest right here, clearly. I'll be interested to see what his stances are because I really don't know how Buck Angel stands. And then MrGirl is MrGirl. So, yes, as such takes as trans culture is a religion, and definitely has, and allegedly talked his significant other away from being trans. And then Destiny is, the best trans spokesperson on the internet. So,
Nick.
I'm Nick Rekieta of RekietaLaw, a small law firm in central Minnesota. I have transitioned from man to man.
Wow, great.
Can't even tell.
XD.
I know. It was a failed transition. One of the botched stories that you hear about. So it's looking grim for me.
And Mr. Girl, please tell us a little bit about yourself for new viewers.
My name's MrGirl. I know the name makes it sound like maybe I'm trans or non-binary. I'm kind of a gender abolitionist, I guess. I believe in biological sex, and I don't believe in gender that much. But I don't want to be put in a box, so I call myself MrGirl, and that's my gamer tag. That's it.
Nice.
Very good. I'm going to be trying to give everybody a chance to talk and interrupting now and then, just so we can get an answer on things. It gets confusing. We're all very passionate about this stuff, but I want to make sure the audience gets their answer that they crave, because everyone hates evasive debates.
Why does Buck Angel have a map?
Girl has given me a list of questions here
His background
to get the conversation started. I've randomized the order we're going to go in. Trampa, Buck Angel, I'm going to start with you. Gender is a hotly debated topic between political groups, but rarely debated within political groups. Both conservatives and progressives are reluctant to acknowledge that their positions are even up for debate. Is your position up for debate? What is your working definition of man, woman, sex, gender, and transgender? Go ahead.
Okay, so my positions are not necessarily up for debate. So I believe in biology. So I'm kind of going to be this trans person who's possibly going to be more leaning towards probably most of what all of you guys talk about. So I believe in biology. I believe that biology is real. I am a biological female, even though I don't look that way. I believe gender is, on some level, could be socially constructed, though I do think it does pertain to the sex. What were the other ones? Am I gender, sex?
I think it's more so that there's a lot of utility in the projected binary, even if it is constructed.
Woman is it pertains to biology. So an adult human male and adult human female, those things I'm very strict on. I am not a man. I am a transsexual man. So I am different than all of you guys.
Okay.
Acknowledge that.
Nice.
So it's not a
Thank
debate
God.
with me in any way, shape, or form. I 100%. The only reason I'm a transsexual person is because of biology. If biology wasn't on the table, I wouldn't be having the conversation of why did I need a sex change. So no, I'm very now. The reason why I think a lot of other people don't debate it now is because it's a very thing that's hard to debate. You get totally called a bigot or a transphobe or a TERF, or you just get all these names thrown at you. And being
Transmedicalist.
sexual person can be in the debate a little harder than most people. But if any of you start having that conversation, you're immediately name called. So I think it's hard in the political space to be sort of middle ground or to have a nuanced idea of this, because you get totally thrown under the bus. So I'm pretty hard straight on facts. I live in a factual life in reality. And why I'm here is to talk about that, and that it is important that biology stays in the transsexual space.
Destiny, I'm going to go for you to response to that, because I think I already know Nick's positions. Do you have any disagreements with that?
I I don't think so. I think any of our disagreements are going to like get really into the weeds. Like, I think that it's important to recognize that there is like a biological reality. I think it's kind of silly that on one end, like I understand where the desire comes from to say things like trans women are women or trans men are men, because like socially, in some instance, we wanted to be treated that way. But obviously, if trans women were women, then they wouldn't need hormones or surgery. So obviously, there's something else going on that we have to account for. But yeah, I imagine we'll probably get more into the weeds on this. I will say one thing. I think it's a little bit silly sometimes when it's usually conservatives will push you and they'll say something like, what is a woman? Can you give a definition? That's a really hard thing to define. Anytime we talk about any like highly multi-traded, multifaceted thing, it's very hard to give a strict definition. Like we were talking the other day, if I were to ask you like, give me the definition of a table, I want the definition that includes every single table and excludes everything that's not a table. Like how does it have to have 3 legs? Some have 1 leg. Are you able to sit on them? What's the difference between a table and a chair? Like, and that's a really simple thing. We could get into more complicated. What makes a building a building? What makes a car, not a motorcycle or a van or whatever? But yeah, I think that it's good to recognize that these things are like very complicated, that there are going to be some biological realities that are worth addressing and talking about, and we need to be careful when we separate like social and biological fact, I guess, for the purposes of these conversations.
Now, Nick, what do you think about that? What do you think about the definition of a man and woman as Destiny puts it forth? Because I've heard that before.
I think there's a way to overcomplicate issues for the purposes of discussion and semantics, and I think it was just done. No slight to Destiny, of course. He is embroiled in the language of gender.
I wonder if Rekieta will call him a pedophile.
I shouldn't put you there yet, but I'm guessing we're going to trend that way. But the definition of woman does not actually need to encompass every single aspect of every single thing. The idea that a definition must encompass every possible iteration
well, that's not what Destiny was saying.
Is not actually true. We accept common
he would agree that
with aberrations all the time.
Destiny would agree that there's like there's utility in what society kind of labels as man and a woman. I think they agree with that.
Time doing this. I mean, if we debated what a woman was forever, trying to find the 0.001% outlier and say, well, that discredits the entire definition. Then
that's not what he was saying. You're actually making his point.
An aberration, and that's okay. Aberration isn't derogatory. I mean, maybe if you went and called someone like you're an aberration, that could be a problem. But generally speaking, a woman has an XX pair of chromosomes and a vagina.
Nice.
That solves most of the problems. There, I fixed it. And Biden can hire me if you ever need to consult on what a woman is.
Oh my God, Buck Angel, Jesus fucking Christ.
What do you think about that, Destiny? There's less nuance.
I mean, again, like I generally agree. Like,
yeah,
I think that in society, like 99% of us understand like what is a man or what is a woman. But when we're talking about trans people, we are specifically talking about edge cases. So, I mean, it seems like for the purposes of discussing trans people, we kind of have to elevate our understanding of these concepts to a little bit more nuance than just saying like men have dicks and women have pussies, because obviously we're missing a lot of the conversation there. I'm not really too attached to what words we use, but yeah.
I don't see why we have to elevate the conversation, though. I mean, men have dicks, women have pussies is a reality that we're into, and there's no reason when dealing with an edge case that needs to be any different. Again, it doesn't
like,
speak to the...
Do you have any children?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Do you have a daughter?
Yep.
Do you want your daughter going into the bathroom with Buck?
With Buck? I don't care.
Yes.
So, like, this is like the conservatives will say, like, it shouldn't matter, blah, blah, blah. But, like, do I want my son going into the bathroom with Blair White? Do I want, like, people always use these, like, on one end to say that, like, oh, I don't want these creepy trans people in bathrooms with my children. But then on the other hand, when you have, like, a clearly passing trans person, well, what do you want to do with them? Like, it's obviously, like, unless you're going to tell me that you don't believe in, like, gendered bathrooms, in which case, right? So it seems like we have to talk a little bit more about it, right?
Based.
But, I mean, the example you just gave was my daughter going into the bathroom with a biological female.
Yeah, but
so
I feel like
that wouldn't actually like be controversial.
Well, it would be controversial.
Yeah, it would absolutely
look at me.
be.
It would be controversial.
Yeah.
I mean,
if somebody like Buck came walking
well, don't
out
you
of
have
the
a card that you hand out that
if
says,
somebody
by
like
the way,
Buck,
I have a
if
vagina.
somebody like Buck came walking out of the bathroom in the wrong state, Buck would get killed, right?
Oh,
like
no,
depending on where you're like, yeah.
Yeah, that's true, actually. But prior to my transition, before I even looked like this, I used the men's room. Like, I'm going to tell you, it's different for trans men than it is for trans women. Right?
Absolutely.
So
okay.
that being said, when I was
Let's go,
approached
Buck.
a woman, no guys don't care about me going in. It's different in the women's room. None of you have ever been in the women's room, I assume. Yeah, I have. So it's a different place. It's a much more
Oh shit, Lauren Southern is taking Brianna Wu's place. No way. No fucking way.
So men
Oh, no fucking way.
woman walking into the men's room, they didn't care. But
Oh,
you have
Giga
to
Chad
understand
moment.
it's a very, very
Holy
delicate
shit.
conversation when it comes to women. And trans women are not women. Trans women are trans women. And when you have to understand it's very important that we distinguish this for many reasons, but one reason being this type of conversation. And a lot of trans women these days, well, I wouldn't use a lot, but some trans women don't want to pass. I pass. We call that passing, right? I made it so I look like a man. I can walk the world as a man. No one would ever even know that I have a pussy unless I like literally show you or talk about it. That was the whole point of my sex change. And so today, people don't want to look like a woman. They want to look like a woman with a beard, not even trying. And then, of course, women are going to get mad if they go into the woman's room. They feel unsafe, and that is a real thing that needs to be discussed without everyone being called transphobic. It's unfair for women not to be able to have that conversation.
I'm gonna pause there. Okay. So, depending like if I'm shaving and like who I'm with, going like to the bathroom with, like it's obviously much easier to go to the bathroom with a friend, and especially much easier if you're like wearing a dress and like leggings and shit like that. I think there's like some value in something you need to like put on the table in order to like access those spaces without feeling as though you're a threat. But I can tell you, just like going into like traditionally women's spaces and not being expected to be there, it's no matter how hard you go, you're always going to be like seen as a threat in some cases, to the point where if you do put so much value on this passing, like what happens if there's someone who like genuinely suffers from these issues but then can't actually pass even if they have had multiple surgeries, as Buck has kind of pointed out here. So I'd imagine we're going to get to that, but we'll see what Lauren has to add to the conversation.
Yes. Go ahead, Max. Were you going to address that?
I think Destiny is running interference for some trans activists and progressives here, because yes, you can come up with a practical situation where okay, the definition of man and woman is suddenly blurred, but we could also just as easily say trans women use the women's bathroom, but not because they are women. You don't have to be a woman literally to enter a bathroom that has a picture of a woman on it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I think that part of the reason we're overcomplicating these definitions is because some trans people, not all, and some trans activists and progressives can't stand the idea that like a trans woman doesn't get to actually be in the real literal box like woman, and so they want to just expand the definition of woman and just stretch it out until they can just put it around themselves, and like you can do that like Nick was saying, like yeah, a super expert in a field can blow your mind with like all the things that go into being biologically female, but walking down the street, yeah, women have XX and they have pussies, and I think that we're using that hyper expert lens to kind of disintegrate the idea of a woman in normal social situations where lay people are just like talking to each other, so that trans people can feel like they are technically.
I would generally agree with that for MrGirl, but I imagine he's going to run with that.
I think to guide for the rest of this conversation, I think it's really important that we distinguish between what we're saying on the panel and then kind of like the new.
What the prescription should be for everyone else.
Ideas. I think Buck mentioned something earlier. I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but something that Buck mentioned that I've seen a lot on the internet was that in the great olden days of the 90s, like going back even just like 1 decade ago, it seemed like if you were a trans person, your goal was to pass as not as a cis person, but as a whatever gender you wanted your expression to be. That was like what you needed to do. That was the whole point of getting gender affirming surgeries, healthcare, etc. But nowadays, there's a newer thing where you have people that are identifying as things that have no interest in passing. And I think that their ideas, those newer ideas, are going to be substantially different than what a lot of other trans people's ideas are. So I think when we talk about these things, we have to be careful to differentiate between here. Because some of the people that you bring up, Max, like if I had conversations with these people, I would be called trans. I got banned from Twitch for being transphobic. So that's the nature of those conversations. Versus like more traditional trans people, which sounds weird to say, are going to have like a totally different set of like how these things all intersect with one another. Yeah.
No, it's not weird to say. I have to tell you, it's why I actually call myself a transsexual.
Yeah.
I'm not transgender. I'm transsexual, and I have always made this huge point. If you all know and follow me on Twitter, I'm a transsexual. That is somebody who was born in one gender or one sex.
Bro, we know.
We make a huge effort to pass. We make a huge effort. I'm not a trans person. I call myself a man. I'm male. Everything says male. That is the whole point of me transitioning. Today we have this newer space where you don't need gender dysphoria. You can just be trans without any diagnosis. I have a disorder called gender dysphoria. And there's a huge part of the trans community that does not want to acknowledge that. They say anyone can be trans. I don't even know what that is. That is nothing to do with me or people like me who actually feel like we have a disorder. We've been diagnosed in it. We deal with it. We do this in order so that we can walk the world.
Okay.
happily.
Okay,
So there's
Grandpa.
different
Fuck.
places in this trans community.
Can I jump in here, or was I just
I was
brought
gonna
in
say
for
hi to
comedic
Lauren.
relief?
Lauren.
Yeah.
Because you're pretty.
I thought you would just have
Based.
like the woman sit here, be quiet the whole time while you all talk
Oh.
about what women want. I think that would be cool.
That'd be
They
based.
know what they are.
Excellent, excellent.
Before we get into trans-cel culture, Lauren, could you give us your working definitions of man, woman, sex, gender, and transgender? Anything else that you heard since you were joining us? These are just the basics. By the way, I don't think I've heard the term transsexual in about 20 years. I didn't know we could still say that.
Yeah. Depends on where
I
you're
love Dick.
Yeah, you can.
Holy
I'm
fuck.
telling you, you can.
Oh, we all got a transsexual pass from Buck.
Did everyone come in here and like give their definition of each of these
Yeah.
terms at the beginning?
That is what
That's
happened.
my
one
first
person
discussion
didn't.
question.
Sorry.
One person didn't come in here and give any terms or definitions at all, but
You're replacing Brianna Wu, so you have to try to represent her positions.
Guys, have you heard of trans truthers before?
I'm gonna need you to bring your voice way down a couple octaves to
Yeah, I mean,
represent
I'm
Brianna
already
Wu.
pretty low here, man.
Jesus
so-
fucking
That
shit.
nice 14-year-old boy going
Reketa
through puberty voice. But,
Is fucking wild.
Yeah, I've got a lot of trans truthers that actually do think I'm male to female already, so I'm gonna do
Based.
my best here. They're the people that post those like photos of Kyle Rittenhouse, and they're like, look at this,
Yeah, I've
like
seen those.
look at his hip size, male,
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway,
Yeah.
male, yeah, someone who is biologically got male genitals, female, someone who has biologically got vagina, female genitals. What were the other definitions?
Man, woman, sex, gender, transgender.
Sex, I guess it can either mean the act of sex or your sexual body parts. Gender is your gender expression in society.
Okay.
Based
This next
definition.
one, Destiny, I'm going to go to you for obvious reasons. If
God.
trans-cel culture, because you are
Destiny
the one who
typed in
suffered from
chat
it
that
most recently. I
apparently
think.
Hassan
Trans-cel
is
culture
losing
is
it on chat.
defined as a fear of societal punishment for disagreeing with progressive narratives about gender. Do you think it exists, and has it gone too far?
I think it's important when we talk about these things to know
The voice
that
crack.
they're very localized. So, like, does it exist in my world? Abso-fucking-lutely. Where I exist in a very online world, I'm on Twitch or whatever. Like, if I go to like Alabama, Louisiana, or whatever, am I gonna find a lot of like trans culture? Probably not. But yeah, I mean, I would say that like we have, it's. I would say it's probably gone a little bit too far when it comes to the online stuff. I think that the nature of the conversations has made it so that like if you're acting like a goofy child, I can say that. If you're 16, 17, 18, 19, if you're acting like you're being weird, you're having a phase, whatever shit you're going through, I can like kind of make fun of you for it, and that's fine. And I think that kids should go through phases. I think that's fine. We should all be crazy when we're 18, 19, 20. That's acceptable. But when it gets wrapped up in gender identity, all of a sudden it's become this like unassailable topic, and when everything
I don't know why we
like,
need to have
autism
3
is a
chats on
gender, and when you've got neo-pronouns, you've got
on
like
the
a
screen.
million different things,
Ooh.
it becomes really weird to have
Way
any
too
sort
dank.
of critical or challenging conversation around any of these topics, because now like you can't be an opposing voice, you're a transphobe. You can't have like an opposing opinion, you're just a transphobic person that wants trans people to kill themselves. And that's really frustrating. And those conversations have gone like way, way, way too far, I think, to where basically like the MO now is if you see somebody that says something you disagree with, because of the tools we have on the internet, you're trying to destroy their life in as many ways possible. It used to be that we just got kicked off of Teams. Now we're getting kicked off of social media. Now we're getting banned from YouTube. Now we're getting banned from Twitch. And it's like like it wouldn't surprise me pretty soon. It's like if you've ever said something like you don't believe that trans women should play sports with cis women, you're never going to be able to get a Visa card again because I emailed the guy that like underwrites these loans. Like yeah, I think it's too far. I think it's got a little insane.
Mr. Girl, what do you think about that? That it's highly localized and not everywhere, like Destiny's saying about trans-cel culture.
It sounds sane, but it's a delusion. No, I think that I think it is spreading very rapidly, very, very rapidly. Like I remember telling some of my friends like there's subreddits where like you can get banned if you say I define women as having like 2 X chromosomes. including the subreddit called 2X chromosomes. They will now ban you for saying that the title of their subreddit is correct.
That's so funny. I'm sorry.
and my friends are like, well, that's Reddit, right? And I'm like, you don't understand. Like this is a problem. It's like a spreading problem, and it's spreading super fast. And I'm like, you can see it go from a kind of niche, like super hyper liberal space, to a Supreme Court justice being afraid to answer the question of what is a woman. And so it is localized the way that if your house is on fire and only half of it is on fire, the fire, yes, technically it's localized, and like maybe you can go visit the other half of the house that's not on fire, but it feels like it's spreading pretty fast, and it feels like an emergency.
Buck, you're nodding. You've obviously seen this develop to where we are now and been involved in it. What kind of perspective can you give on it?
Well, I think it's really, first off, I think cancel culture is very immature, and I think that it's embarrassing as a trans person to be connected to this type of behavior, which it really comes out of.
I thought he wasn't a trans person.
On some level, it started there.
Okay.
And
Right.
I find it to be really a way that trans people are starting to be hated more and more. And cancel culture is a way and a means to control what's being said out there. And they try to cancel me all the time, but because I'm an actual trans person, it's very difficult to do. And I speak against a lot of it. And I notice that's exactly what they want to do. They want to shut you down, but I don't necessarily think it's localized. I think that it is spreading, and I think it is getting into other communities and other spaces. But from my own perspective, I really did see it come out of the trans community when trans women or women mantra really became so powerful. And if you even pushed against that in any tiny bit, you were immediately, canceled or called a TERF or whatever the heck other stuff they're doing. It's a scary space that we're in. And it's why I sit here with all you today and why I continue to speak out about it.
I think we can all agree that cancel culture and cancel culture in general is super fucking gay. I think that's where we can go with this one. It's everywhere, and it's about power. It's about abusing a status.
DGG is following my cringe face.
Is, some people, Buck being an example, have an actual gender dysphoria. They have a minority status that should be in some ways acknowledged. Whatever that manifests as, it should at least be acknowledged. But there's a whole wave of people who are riding this idea.
I'm gonna pause. So he's identified that, that, oh yeah, well of course, if you have dysphoria, then it's like okay, but like there's some points at which doctors can't even like explain or like know if you have dysphoria, to the point where you have to have this like comfortable kind of sandbox to. Especially at a young age, to explore this and realize that you don't actually like have these issues, and unless like that exists, and unless we like actually give credence to that, we're gonna continually get these issues where people are gonna be in their mid-20s, not know if they do or not, and then they're gonna either be too far to change it, or they're if that is the case, or it gets to the point where this is almost like this problem of ego death, where if you like come out. You keep like living your life as and trying to like fit in as a woman in women's spaces. Like if you don't actually suffer from these problems and you've like put yourself out there, not only is there like this large price of coming out in the first place, but there's an even larger price of like just going back and saying that you were wrong. So unless we can actually create those like spaces or ease a lot of tension around exploring gender identity, I think that's the only way we're getting to what seems to be prescribed by every member on this panel. But let's see how long it gets there. I really want Destiny to put in on that point, because he even said it last night when I was watching. He just kind of echoed these points where at a young age you need to have this able to express yourself. And it kind of parrots his earlier point of like, well, people like 17, 18, you just had phases and stuff like that. And as long as you can explore those phases to learn if you like genuinely suffer from these issues or not. Especially if they're like exacerbated by this male puberty as well. So for trans women specifically in my case, but I guess we'll see.
Of particularly kids, let's be honest, kids to teenagers and their struggles with identity in general, and they're taking them and offering them an opportunity to assume a status, and that status comes with power. That status comes with, I mean, it's supposed to be a burdensome status, but we're flipping the script on that now. And if you are a trans student, you are exalted by authorities, you are protected, and you are given authority over other students by the arbitrary nature of your assignment, we'll call it. And I think in many cases, it's less about actual gender dysphoria and gender assignment, and it's a whole lot about a struggle for identity and then finding a life rope at the worst fucking time in anybody's life, junior high and high school. Nobody likes it, and you suddenly have a way out, and that way out is a way up, and it's by stepping on the faces of everyone around you who's been fucking you over for the last couple years.
I just want to jump in here.
He's
Someone
kind of-
pointed out I used the
he's
word
kind of
gender
pointed
to
that
define
out.
gender, and that was a fuck up on my part. I meant the social expression of sex, not gender. And this is something I wanted to talk to Buck about.
Mad
One of
funny.
my big concerns with trans culture and the big trans movement coming about is the erasure of gender being somewhat separated from your sex. So while it is the social expression of certain sex characteristics, like to be masculine, you don't have to have a penis. To be feminine, you don't have to have a vagina, right? And I feel like that is being a bit erased with the trans conversation. It's like, oh, you are a masculine girl. Well, you need to now have your sex characteristics match your gender expression. So like to you, Buck, I'd be curious, why was it so important for you to change the sex characteristics to what about, was your gender identity publicly not enough being masculine?
Yeah,
Why
it's a
couldn't
great
you just be
question.
a tomboy?
Yeah, I was a tomboy. I was all of those things. I'm not even allowed to say tomboy anymore. That's why I'm a tomboy, tomboy, tomboy. No, so I always was very masculine, even as I grew up. I'm 59, so I grew up in the 60s and in the 70s when we didn't have any of these conversations, and tomboy was fine. And that being said, I was always like hyper masculine as a woman. I was a very butch, identified lesbian woman. But always in the back of my head, there was something about being a woman or being called a girl that just, I always cringed, and I never felt that. So I really did need my gender expression to, on some level, come out and be physically this way so that the world would see me as, so my gender expression had to be connected to my sex expression, even though I didn't have an actual sex change. That's impossible.
Ooh.
It's why we called it the sex change back
I wonder if they even like extend this question to ask Buck Angel what if he was just applying to his idea of a man and not what it actually means to be a man, because I feel like that's something that a lot of trans folks deal with a lot is you like ascribe to this one thing and you realize that it's not necessarily attainable, or it doesn't even make sense to be attainable, to the point where it gets to the point where it was very helpful for me during COVID to like hyper kind of through college in order to be more accepted in women's space, at least in my thoughts. I was like had a lot of anxiety around pressing femme, but then COVID happened and I just like fucking dropped out of school, and all of it went away. And I just grew my beard out. I stopped shaving nearly as frequently, sweatpants, hoodies every single day. There's still points where I like felt those like same discomforts, being like instantly not written off, but instantly kind of just labeled as a dude. Being like 6'2" and talking like this doesn't really help. So even with those things stripped away, like there's still like I found that there was like still something there. But I feel as though that's something that specifically COVID gave me. So I'd be interested if Buck expressed on that.
But is that because we have attached the word girl so much with certain gender characteristics? Like, this was like the big thing of the feminists, second wave Simone de Beauvoir feminists. They wanted to split gender and sex and be like, no, when you say the word girl, that doesn't mean feminine or masculine. But now it feels like we kind of tried that, and we're going straight back to your sex is your gender.
That's
and
right. Yeah. So again, I can only speak for myself. I don't know. I think they're twisting words. I think this new trans, and I call it this new trans agenda because it has nothing. That's not where people like me come from. Like I said, I went through many 10, 15 years of therapy before I transitioned, and that was really instrumental in me really understanding where I needed to go. I was one of the very first people here in Los Angeles to take hormones and to even try it 30 years ago. I was an experiment, so I was willing to take all of that on in order to.
Well, okay. If they keep going down this road, then we need to like actually talk about differences between trans men and trans women in this like category in which like male puberty is like a much more violent change in your body that later on in life, after like 10 to 15 years, you can't actually these lives are vastly different, and I hope to God they don't treat them as the same experience.
Because I did have massive dysphoria around walking the world as a girl. So I think your question is fantastic, and I would say that even if I could still be living as a masculine woman, I wouldn't make that choice. I really do feel much more comfortable and live a beautiful, more amazing life I could ever even imagine, having had my transition to living to look male.
Last big question here. If there were no association with feminine with the word girl, like if people saw girls
Oh shit!
the same
Lauren's
sexual
face.
standing as men
Let's
in
go.
every way, would you have transitioned physically?
Oh, I would have, 100%. Okay. Yeah. Because I feel comfortable being a man. Even though I could have been, like I said, I lived masculine as a woman. I did, and I don't think it was the words. I don't think so. Because I mean, I didn't grow up in social media. I didn't grow up with any of what a lot of the youngsters are dealing with. And I think what a lot of the youngsters are dealing with does play into why they are transitioning and why they feel that they are trans with no diagnosis.
I guess I'm trying to figure out like why the word girl would bother you. I really
Oh,
appreciate
yes,
that.
yes,
I
Lauren.
imagine
Let's
you know,
go.
talking, maybe this is a bad example, but like there are a lot of people that look at things about themselves and hate it. Like Michael Jackson changing his skin color, right?
Yeah.
And I know if we went into the social sphere and someone said, you know, hearing that I was a white woman just really bothered me all the time. And some people it does. Like it seriously does. They don't want to be seen as white. They don't want to be seen as X, Y, Z. Sorry,
Lauren,
what were you saying?
doesn't it bother you when you're when the trans truthers say that you're secretly a man?
I've been on the internet far too long for it to bother me that much.
Okay, yeah, I know that, but I think that's bullshit because I've been on the internet for a while and every little fucking thing drives me insane.
There's
So
some things that drive me insane, not that
Wait,
one.
I actually is
I'm just-
lying.
I'm
Yeah,
just-
let's do that conversation for like 2 hours.
I think you're lying. Well, I know you're lying. No, I think my point is I'm trying to
Out of
make
my head.
no.
Lauren's
trying to
just one of
make
the fellas. Leave him alone.
I'm trying to
It's just one of the points.
You feel when somebody says that you're actually a man is probably the way Buck felt when someone said that he was a woman, even though like he is or
Right.
was female.
But
Yeah.
what I'm getting at is there are a lot of things that we are born as in life that we're actually uncomfortable with, but for some reason in this one sphere of life, we're really, really accommodating for it. Really accommodating. For
That's
it.
right. You're right. In this time, we are overcompensating for it.
Oh, Mr. Girl should have jumped in with his makeup
No, I still have a vagina. I
line.
did not get a penis put on, so I can have that argument. I did learn to be comfortable with my female part. Okay, I got
See,
my roots.
that's
Yes.
so interesting to me.
I did.
Sorry.
I learned to do that for many reasons. One being that the penis was not what I want. I want a penis. I want something that I can use and work
Yeah.
with. You know, that wasn't what was going to be given to me. So I'm like, I might as well keep my vagina. It's pretty awesome.
I actually
So
agree
it's
with
like,
Bucky Angel on
I
that
had to
part.
learn how to deal with something that is not male, right? And I had to learn to walk the world with that, which was not easy, but I did it. I pushed through it, and I did it without forcing other people to accept my space. If they didn't, I would just go to the other way, and then eventually people just were like, Buck's a cool dude.
I don't know if you had this feeling, but it seems like so Lauren used the word like people call you a girl. I think that as cis people, if I am a cis person, if Lauren is a cis person, who knows? But like as cis people, I think that when we hear people talk about our gender identity, it's hard to imagine an incongruence with the gender identity and the gender expression because I don't know what the fuck that feels like. But it seems like when we talk about things like race or other types of statuses, we don't have this like really strong internal model for what that should be. Whereas when it comes to gender, it seems like there is a really strong internal model for what your like sex should be. So like when we talk about like people will talk about like transracial, be like I want to be treated like a black person, I want to be treated like that. I think that for people that are experiencing hardcore gender dysphoria, there is a bit of social dysphoria where you want to be treated as a woman, you want to be treated as a man, but that's not it. There's another like really important component to where like if you had a trans person that was locked on an island and they never associated with another person ever, but they were like mirrors, or they could look down and see themselves, there would still be this like really intensely kind of disgusting or disassociated or uncomfortable feeling with their body because it's not just about being treated like a man or treated like a woman, it's about having like the actual sexual expression of that as well. And that seems to be unique to gender that doesn't exist with like race or other
Do you
things.
not think that someone like Michael Jackson, who like went all the way to get surgery to change their skin color, would not be disgusted looking at his body in the mirror?
Yeah, but I think he had body dysphoric issues, and I think you can argue that people that do like the excessive like facial surgeries and everything that these people have issues too. But I'm just saying that it seems like they're like Michael Jackson stuff. My understanding is that started when he got his first really bad burn, when he did that Pepsi commercial and his face got fucked, and then he went down the road of reconstructive surgeries. And once you've started cosmetic surgery, it's really hard to stop for a lot of people. But it seems like there's something fundamentally baked into us about our gender identity that's really hard to get away from.
No, that's true. That's why I question a lot of what's going on today because a lot of the trans people don't even want to transition like me anymore. They don't want to be passing as male or female. They say I have passing privilege. I'm like, privilege? Do you know how I go to the gym, I work out, you know what I mean? I do so much to look this way. It's not a privilege. I really make myself look this way. So the newer generation doesn't necessarily want to pass it in this gender way, right? So what does that even mean?
Yeah,
Well, what if they
we're making it too
what if they do but they can't? Right? Like fucking 6'2", talking like this shit. Like, Buck, Jesus fucking Christ.
easy?
On some level.
You're saying
Oh,
if you want to be part of the old guard, you want to be a real trans person, then we have to keep this obstacle pretty high, and you
Yes.
got to fucking jump over it.
Yes, I do that, and that's why I distinguish myself from them and me because I actually have
Oh my God, Buck is actually getting fucked by Mr. Girl live on screen.
It's not what I have is not normal. I would give anything to have been born male, and I still would. I hate being trans. It's not fun. It's not cool. It's not hip. It's none of the above.
What about having been born female but with no dysphoria?
Great. Awesome.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Either
I
one.
would have chosen that too. But I didn't get that. I got dysphoria. And so my point being is I had to go through all of this in order to be a comfortable person in the world. That's why I don't relate to what's happening today. When they say you don't need dysphoria to be trans, then you're not trans. You're something else. Because that's exactly what transgender and transsexual are. We deal with dysphoric feelings and we have a disorder.
Okay, well, Nick is alluding to the social benefits of transitioning and saying it's a way to basically just get a boost.
Mhm.
You get to be the bully against all your bullies all of a sudden, a total power reversal.
I think there's some
Do you
truth in
see
that.
It's like the primary reason young people are transitioning today, or is there why do you
Well,
think?
that's a good point.
Why do you
Again,
think fake trans people are transitioning?
fake trans people. Well, I think kids, I think the younger generation, they do see a benefit, especially young girls. I mean, I had puberty. I had girl puberty. It's horrible. It's not fun. I mean, I think it's different than male puberty on some level. And so, when you start growing boobs and you start getting sexualized and all these things start coming at you at a young age, it can actually create dysphoria and it can create another way of, if I was just a dude, things would be easier. So yeah, on some level, I do think a lot of the young girls are being told that it's easier to be male. And I won't lie that my life did change, but that wasn't why I did it. But my life has changed drastically being a male. I'm treated differently. I walk the world differently. I have totally different privileges to walk around. It's it's an actual real thing. And it's not why I did it, but I would say that I think some people think if I just become a dude, life will be easier.
Well, I think they're driven there, right? Like that's the issue. I know it's going to come up in a later question. I don't want to jump ahead too far, but I mean that's the socio-cultural issue we're dealing with right now. Is not I'm not speaking for anybody else in the panel, but I think most of us probably don't give a fuck what people do when they're an adult. But I think where the issues come in is when you have a kid who's 14 years old and saying, you know, I'm really unsure of myself. I don't really know. Or I was reading a thread the other day. It was like, oh, this person wears hoodies, which is gender non-conforming clothing. It's like, holy shit! If a hoodie it means you're trans, like I don't even know what the hell the limit is. It's this for lack of a I mean it's a popular term right now, but it's this grooming, and it doesn't have to do with trying to have sex with kids in this instance. It has to do with implanting an ideology in their head with shifting them towards this particular thing. And
Jesus
like it or
fucking
not,
Christ.
there's a bunch of weirdos out there who really want to do this to someone else. They want someone else to be, I don't know if they need someone to be, a partner in their struggle or whatever it is. But again, and I think a lot of society is like this, especially now. They're like, I don't care what you do. I care what you do to my kid. But I do have to say one thing to Mr. Destiny. I have to take issue with one thing you said, which was that racial issue, like race may not be as strong of a bond as gender. As a black man, I'm just offended that you have never listened to NWA and you do not know the struggle and you do not know the serious identity that race brings with it.
Nice.
And I implore you to read the book of Matthew Harris, which is all about racial identity and being basically in tune and in touch with one's race.
Based. I never said that racial bonds can't be strong. I'm just saying I don't think we have an internal identity of a race as much as we seem to have an internal identity of a gender. Or if we do,
Again,
Cox.
okay.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I didn't mean to step on you.
Yeah. No, it's all good.
Well, I'm now trans because I'm stepping on you on the way up. I'm going to send you the dissertation of Matthew Harris, which will argue the exact opposite. And the man is a brilliant scholar.
Gotcha.
All right, this one goes to
Sounds
Lauren.
interesting.
Whatever you were going to say, save it till after this. If a key way to avoid cancellation, we're still on translation. By the way, I can hear the Tumblr people screaming at the validity of Trans-cel culture being in response to the transphobia that they're suffering around the world and the internet. So if anybody wants to speak on that next, please do. Just representing their issues. If a key way to avoid cancellation is to cancel someone else, does that create a feedback loop where we have to express increasing amounts of outrage in order to stay safe? If so, how can we untangle, de-escalate, or otherwise stop this dynamic?
This is kind of interesting because this gets at. I recently had to talk with Sanzel, and we talked about him kind of lashing out at a lot of people who are very vocal about neopronouns and stuff like that. And I kind of got him to a point where it was kind of frustrating, where he said that his personal page really matters to him on Twitter, and these discourses really do matter. But then he also said I'm drama farming. I'm just it's not real life. It's just it's just online. And then so going back between those things, I kind of asked him how he felt about Libs of TikTok, because it felt as though it kind of struck a very similar vibe where he's giving a little bit more context than Libs of TikTok do. So it's much less, no pun intended, than the people on TikTok tying their own noose. But Sans was very, very kind of, and a lot of people are very, very militantly. I mean, even Destiny at some point, but most of them it's talk shit, get hit, right? But it seems to be either this push to cancel people with neopronouns or cancel the transphobes who are giving the slightest pushback onto neopronouns, but fully agree with all of the trans issues. Well, all of the trans issues, because neopronouns are a little bit tertiary, but a very interesting question from
yeah, obviously, I think
Dick.
when we think of cancellation, half the time people get canceled, it's just for vague associations and not jumping in on the dog pile. Why are you still friends with this person? You didn't condemn this person. I've been asked that my whole life, especially being in the right wing. If someone's a degree more right wing than me, where's the condemnation, right? And of course, that humans are selfish and they're fighting for that tiny slice of the pie in the media circle that they want to keep, and they'll try to stay alive till the very end, no matter how many corpses of friends and fellow coworkers in this industry they have to step on, and we're stepping on people. Yeah, that just seems to be the case, unfortunately. I don't know how we can stop that cycle, because it seems to be just the cycle of natural human selfishness.
Yeah, because it seems taking the high road
Anybody
doesn't
else
work.
have ideas to de-escalate, untangle, otherwise stop this vicious circle, cancellation?
You
Well, I
did it,
think
Dick. They
speaking
stopped.
out-
Thank you so much. Thank you so
No,
much for that.
speaking
Dude.
out on it. It's very important that we all speak out on it, because if we don't speak out on it and we don't say it, I speak out. I'm like, you're not canceling me. As much as you want to cancel me, I say it all the time. Go ahead, try to cancel me. Do it. And they can't. How do you get canceled if you're not going to let somebody cancel
Well,
you?
if you get banned from all your shit, that's how you get canceled.
I don't care. Keep banning
Well,
me.
some
I'll
of
go
us need to
find
make
another-
money. Some of us got
I'll
jobs,
keep
bud.
crawling up. It's my job. This is actually my job too. But
Okay,
I
okay,
respect
but
that.
I mean, I think what Destiny is saying is that
Please
this is,
translate for me. Communication is a huge problem of mine, so go ahead.
that's actually one of my strengths.
It is
what he's saying
not.
is that this has cost him a lot of money.
No, it's not funny. I'm sorry. It's actually not funny.
Yeah,
Like,
that's not
the
funny.
one-
Fuck you.
It's not. No, but for reals, it's not funny and it's gross, and that's why I actually really it disturbs me beyond belief, because like I said earlier, why are we not having conversations? Why is everybody so goddamn scared to talk about things that you're not agreeing with, or you know what I mean? Why is everybody
Money.
so
I think it comes back to money. Honestly, I think
Max would think
there's
that.
making money
Okay,
and
okay.
it being
Sorry,
silenced.
sorry.
And
That was not.
money is also speech. In a way. If you have enough money, then you can just make a documentary. You can start your own streaming platform. You can do whatever you want. Like you can still speak if you're J.K. Rowling.
That's right.
But for everybody else, I think that cancel culture ultimately, all cancel culture is really about money. I think at the end of the day.
I think we have
An ego.
we have to be intentional. I agree with what Buck said. We got to speak out about this stuff, because there are some people out there that are just giant fucking weepy bitches who think that cancellation is something you should do, who think that flagging shit because they get their feelings hurt is something you should do, who think that they should use legal processes to go after people because they don't like what they said, or something like that. And those people are giant fucking sacks of garbage, and also whiny pussies.
I think I like you, dude.
Anyone specifically?
I like you, Rekita.
Is that just a general?
Pure
General-
coincidence.
I wanted to change my opinion on this, actually, Dick. I think this cancel culture thing will naturally end in 20 to 30 years. And there'll be an extreme backlash, because you're going to have all of these kids taking their parents and schools to courts over transitions that they regret. And I think it's going to be like a really bad hardcore backlash. Like,
Well, that
horrendous
might
for
be
the
true,
LGBT
and
community.
maybe we can avoid future cancellation by trying to stay on the right side of history here. But I think when I wrote the fucking question, I was asking, is there anything we can proactively do about this? And you're saying just survive for 30 years.
No, actually, okay, wait, no.
No. You're saying let's just throw a bunch of kids under the bus. We'll let them carve up their fucking bodies and take hormones. And then once they get old enough to realize what a bad idea that was, they'll stop it. And then we can start crawl out of our holes and start making money again.
Listen,
Jesus
I'm
Christ,
pretty
Lauren.
black-pilled, but I mean,
can
the
see
other
that.
option,
The
is
children, Lauren. The children.
It's like trolley question. You can have this go on for like 100 more years, or we can sacrifice a lot of children right now, hardcore, just like transition the shit out of everyone, and then this will be like a Band-Aid off. It'll get canceled real quick.
Okay, so
The canceling will get
transition-
canceling.
Transition more kids.
It's not my solution.
Drag them screaming to the server clinic.
Oh, Lauren, secretly
How long have
based.
conservatives been waiting for that backswing to the left? How many decades?
True. Even my 30-year solution is pure conservative copium.
Remember when multiculturalism destroyed Rome? It's going backwards any day now. I'm sure.
So be rich.
Pendulum's gonna stop at some point. It's gonna start going back. It's right on the cusp.
What will that look like to you, Nick?
Yeah, the pendulum's gonna come back. Thanks, Dick.
The pendulum sliding back.
Yes.
We actually, the real answer to that is it will be absolutely fucking terrifying. It will be right now on overdrive, because when we see institutional power at risk anywhere in any institution throughout history, what you see is a massive ramp up of institutional power leading to that sea change. And so what you will get is an inflation of Trans-cel cancel culture. You will get an inflation of this hyperbolic focus on these issues, the overinflation of this issue. I mean, just when you go by statistics of gender dysphoria and you see just how few people it actually affects, and to think about how big of an issue it's being made now, but multiply it by 20, 30, 50 times what it is, and that's when you'll see the pendulum start to get to that peak. And we're not even there. That's what's fucking terrifying about it. I know we were joking about dragging the kids to the thing, but all the dystopian writers have this idea that again, this is a future question, but that the state will take charge of the children, and it will be a thing, and the parents will all kind of accept it after a while, because that'll be the thing that happens. But when the state takes charge of the children, I mean, who's to stop the transitioning? And
Rekieta's wild. I didn't think he was this far.
That's the true answer of where it goes. It's every fucking time, and it's horrifying.
I think we will get there. The next question, Buck, I'd like to present this to you first.
I had one.
Go ahead,
I
Mr.
don't know. Are you sure that's okay if I say something? I mean, it's my.
Yeah,
okay.
go.
Cool. Okay.
Everybody
Moderator's
saw
ass kick, get him.
Okay. I just wanted to say, I think another thing that is happening is kids are being raised with social media. And social media, as a concept, as a way to exist in the world, is you take yourself and then you have like a fake self that you just construct. And so I think in a weird way, even without gender, kids are just learning that you present yourself by constructing a self that is just kind of what you wish you were like, and then blast that out to the world. And we all do that as adults. And then so it's really hard to convince them probably not to transition, because that's what a lot of what transitioning is. But we're all already kind of like trans in a weird way anyway, where we have so much, we have the technology and medical stuff to present ourselves the way we want, but we also have the.
I guess to his point, it seems as though there's a very large draw to bringing people out in these like societal, like what they're saying is stepping on the heads of other people around them. Really, really wild way to to illustrate that, but we'll work with it. It seems as though it's much easier to come out than it is to realize that coming out wasn't the choice, and then to go back. And I feel as though the answer to Max's question is to be more forgiving of this, but I somehow I can't imagine the majority of the panel would come to that prescription.
The social media technology to construct like a fake self and put it out there.
I think to kind of vibe off that, because that's what we're doing, we're vibing here. I do believe that everybody on the planet that has like their perfect system detailing why society's falling apart never seems to include that technology is a huge reason. And I actually super agree with that. I think that one of the big issues is kind of going along with something I said earlier. Like kids today aren't allowed to be stupid and grow because kids today can get like infinite amounts of validation on social media.
Okay. I'm sorry pausing.
Maybe you had like 2 close friends that commented on like your Zanga or your MySpace or your live channel, and like that was it. But now, like if somebody makes fun of me as a 17-year-old, I can take this motherfucker, blow him up on Twitter, and actually destroy his fucking life, and then maybe raise $20,000 and GoFundMe afterwards for a new dress or something, right? Like the amount of validation that kids are able to get on social media is probably insanely unhealthy, because you probably don't want to ultra reinforce the crazy shit that people believe when they're in their teens. But it seems like we're able to do that with social media today more than we ever were in the past.
This is something I wanted to build on too, with this ease of access. Like if you went to a high school classroom and you asked kids, like, what do you want to change about yourself? Everyone would have something, whether it be like race, hair color, weight, mental abilities. And the fact that, gender is one of those things that you can just walk into a room in the school and change instantly. Like they would probably walk into that room if it were any of those other things they could pick as well. But it just happens that there's that counselor office for gender. There's those surgeries available for gender. There's all of that support for that one thing. So it's ease of access to this one quick thing they can change and get a ton of attention for. What were you laughing about, Mr. Cole?
I just the idea of like a high school kid being like, I want to change my mental ability.
True,
Well.
I mean.
That's funny.
Maybe not that one.
If only they figured out a way you could change your weight. Bach, here's the question. Is gender theory undergoing rapid mutation on social media and infecting the minds of teenagers like a virus? Or
Dick
are we
is
witnessing
so
a
good.
genuine scientific and cultural
Fuck.
awakening?
Is this some
it's
wild
virus,
anti-Semitic
100%.
shit? But
I do believe kids are being taught
think it's
this.
mad
I
funny.
think that what we were just talking about, social media, all of them. I mean, I'm actually next to a large amount of detransitioners. And if you don't know what that is, those are mostly youngsters who transitioned and then realized after they did it that they didn't made a big mistake. And that's so profound. I don't know if you all understand how profound that is. There are girls who cut their breasts off and maybe even grew a beard and then realized, oh my God, I'm not really a guy. I actually really want to be a girl. So that being said, I do think on some level this is really a problem within our society. And
it's even not that they swing back to the other side of the binary, but there seems to be no like middle ground where they sell themselves on the idea of being male, and then their idea of that is not marketable. So it seems as though they like, at the very least, some will quote unquote detransition and just go into presenting as like a non-binary person.
Just sort of like pushing people to do this as opposed to it. That's why I said people don't have gender dysphoria anymore. They're just self-IDing. That says something different to me. Why would anybody want to be trans? As if it's just this really great thing to be, right? So it's like, I want to have cancer, so I'm going to have cancer. And I don't really have cancer, but I actually have cancer. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but have you seen like 3D
Look at all the
printed
good parts of
cars?
cancer.
You're not talking about Mr. Medical, are you?
Well, like okay, so like they'll
That was
get
sick.
like a shitty car, like a and then they'll strip the top of it.
Medical
These
joke.
guys will 3D print the parts to like a Bugatti Chiron and lay it over. It's still a fucking Ford Escort or whatever, but it's a Bugatti Chiron. That's what's being done with the trans thing. It's like no, this is not the supercharged vehicle you think it is, but they dress it up in this enticing sort of shell. And
Who's saying that? God
God
damn.
That's why I don't think it's societal.
That's
and
so
I don't think
fucked.
it's just this new way. We're all moving forward like that. No way. I do not think that in any way, shape, or form because I see how the kids are, and it's mostly youngsters doing this. Where are all the adults in the room? Why are there not a lot of adults, older, transitioning? Why is it all a very like young generation of
Because
kids?
it seems like you
Should I-
guys are all
wait,
hated
wait.
now. Nobody wants to talk to the older part of the trans
It's
movement. When you
true.
guys are all trans, you use bad words like
guess
transsexual, which is basically a slur these days. Yeah, sorry. Guys.
Should I just be Brianna Wu for everyone?
Yeah.
Because it's a bit of a circle jerk here. I'll be your Brianna Wu. All right. Well, I think
No, fuck that. Hold on. No, fuck you. You're not gonna be the progressive argument.
Get out of
If
here.
you
Get out of
actually
my
believe what
space.
you're about to say, you don't have to fucking pretend that you're playing a part. If you,
Should I get to
disagree,
call you John?
you have a genuine
Alright.
disagreement.
So why are there not all these adults transitioning? They're, if maybe if they had the ability
There
when
actually
they
are,
were younger, when they were in school to transition, they would have. Maybe if they had the social acceptance to do it then, they would have. But now they're set in their ways. They're too old, especially trying to go on hormones when you're older. You can't stop a lot of that stuff that you went through in puberty. Whereas if you take hormone blockers when you're 11, 12, you can really, really actually be quite similar to the other sex you're trying to transition to. So yeah, maybe it was just lack of access for the older people.
I don't think you think it's just lack of access, but this has to
I don't
be.
think any of this, but yeah.
I'm gonna
You don't think
disagree
any of
with
that's true?
Maybe.
You don't think any of it's true at all? I mean, it has to be somewhat true. There have to
No,
be.
okay,
older
hold on.
people who would transition
This
if
is the
they fit.
problem.
Like, it's a-
Conservatives are just as much to blame as people on the left, okay? Here's the issue, okay? And I talk about this all the time. The problem is that when you don't have anybody that's willing to be reasonable, then nobody is going to be reasonable. That's the issue that you run into, okay? So when we look at, like, trans people, who are the group of people saying, like, hey, trans people are real, we should alleviate their problems as much as possible? That might even mean some responsible exploration in high school with puberty blocks or something maybe, but we should be careful. We need to make sure that we're having challenging conversations with these children. We're not just force-feeding kids drugs to make them trans, right? Nobody has that opinion. On the left, you've got people saying you should be able to identify as deer, as activists online or on college campuses, and on the right, you've got people
Dr.
saying,
T.
that, like, I don't think trans people are real at all. So, like, when those are the only two positions that exist, and when society tends to culturally shift left over time, it's not surprising that it's going to move more and more and more extremely far to the left. Like, you can't go from screeching for decades, I think trans people are fake bullshit, to being like, okay, maybe trans people are real, but can they please not be real until they're 18? Like, motherfucker, you lost that fight already because you never wanted to hold that position. So, yeah, I mean, when you have people that are unwilling to occupy reasonable spaces, then I think the conversation will
fuck.
only ever move one way.
But I'm
Do you
gonna
think you
tell
might have a bit of brain rot from the internet and people in the real world are not having just those two positions and there's a bit of nuance there?
I wish
No,
that was the
not
case.
really.
That was the argument that I used 5 years ago when I argued against crazy alt-writers and stuff online, that it was only online or that this stuff was only blah, blah, blah. But no, I think that it was only online. Now it's like in a lot of colleges, and now it is like the most corporate safe thing to do, so it kind of leaks into a lot of our entertainment as well, and it's slowly like permeating all the culture because you've got this huge tech backing that's never
Every
existed
college,
before.
every high school in America are telling your kids transition
No,
at
that's not
9
what
years old
that's-
right now.
She's being
That's-
Brianna
he's
Wu
just
because
saying-
she's
he's saying-
fucking don't respond to her.
He's saying that
Don't feed the
we're
troll.
highly polarized, and that is obviously true, and increasingly so. I think we need to be less polarized as a way to get out of this dynamic. So like Nick, some of the ways that you talk about this feels
He's transphobic. Say it. He is a transphobe.
okay. But
Do it.
what's weird
Do
is
it,
that I
pussy.
don't think you. I don't
Actually,
think
I
you
think
are.
he is. Call him one.
I don't. I think you're transphobic. No, I don't think you're. I don't think you actually are transphobic. You come across as like a pretty understanding guy, which I think is why. So I'm left leaning, but I enjoy your streams partly because when push comes to shove, you actually are able to empathize
Yeah,
with people
I-
of different backgrounds.
Watching a lot of,
races,
well, not a lot, but I tuned to a bit of his law streams for
on
Rittenhouse.
both sides of
It was
the
kind of interesting.
political
Did not expect this
spectrum.
presenting from him.
But when you're but then you start calling people like pussies and like I know you're kind of
yeah.
joking, but you're kind of not joking. But I feel like I think we need to develop a way to disagree with people without completely shitting all over them, which I kind of think is what Destiny's getting at with saying that it's not reasonable.
Wow, Mr. Girl's
to
tone policing
be that
Rekita.
polarized
It's
and
fucked
that
up.
dismissive. I guess I don't agree with. I don't give a fuck about what other adults.
He's
do.
become the trans
I just
culture.
wanna protect the kids. I think that the way we empathize with kids and care about their well-being, we need to expand to all adults. I just don't. I
No.
don't think it's right to do. Well, yes, Nick. I don't
But we
think it's
don't,
right to.
because that's the whole purpose of being an adult is those shields that are put over you as you go up through becoming 18, which is an arbitrary number that we've decided is adulthood. I get it, but as you mature through your life, there are various protections as your brain is developing, as you're going through all of these things, and a whole bunch of smart people have for some reason landed on this number. But we do a lot of protection for the purposes of switching from concrete thinking to abstract thinking, from being able to deal with criticism, from being able to recognize the difference between a joke and an actual
Okay,
insult. And
but there's
and as
overwhelming evidence that many adults lack these abilities, and so you could say
Basic
they should have
faculties.
them because we decided that by the time you're 18, you should be able to do these things. But most people just can't. And I'm not saying that they need to be shielded from criticism or shielded from their own decisions, but I still think we should afford them empathy that you seem to be willing to afford a blue-haired, trans, mask, lesbian, whatever, dear gender 14-year-old that you're not willing to
Are they
afford a
white?
24-year-old. And I just think there's a dismissiveness that makes it work. Like there's no way to back down or de-escalate from anybody's positions if the de-escalation means you have to step toward the people who are calling you like a retard.
Yeah, but I think you're either misunderstanding or misstating my position. I will afford the same level of empathy to any particular person. I don't care
Child
if
or
they're-
adult. You sound
Yeah, of course not.
softer or more caring when you talk. I mean, I'm not saying it should be the same level of empathy, but there is a dismissiveness when we talk about like, what about adults who are getting roped into this or pushed into this, and it's everybody's just kind of like, well, fuck them.
Well, okay. I don't want anybody roped into anything. The reality, though, is that children are more vulnerable because we're putting them consistently into institutions where authorities are removing them from the people who have the actual onus to educate them on these subjects.
Yeah, I mean,
and they're taking
at this point, like Mr. Girl's trying to not say that he's like laying into these like Ron DeSantis groomer talking points that kind of started the QAnon movement, saying that like Pizzagate and stuff like that, and people in Hollywood are, harvesting adrenochrome, and then or generally just grooming people with Epstein stuff, and then branching that into like the new talking points in which 200 bills across the nation aimed at anti-LGBT legislation. Like, I'm not sure if Rekieta is even like intentionally doing that because he knows the meta or whatever, or not. But Mr. Girl seems fed up with it, which is very, very interesting for the person who started the Trans-cel culture panel.
that on. We're giving that to the state largely, sometimes to private schools, and sometimes to even small group tutors or clubs or whatever it is. But as we abrogate our responsibility to our kids, and we give up our parenting in some way to something else, we need to maintain control over those groups. That's why children are important. But adults aren't being put into a school where they don't have an opportunity to turn around and walk the fuck away, get in a car, and drive off. A kid can't. You can't leave. But as an adult, you can. You can turn around. You could drive. You could take a bus. You can get a golf cart. You can have a homeless person piggyback you. It doesn't fucking matter. You can find some way to get away. In large, again, speaking in generalities. Yes, there are people who will not be able to leave situations, but we can deal with margins on the margins.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, don't you think that a lot of the people in the school who are teaching kids that they can be female deer or whatever it is, are they're also like roped into their beliefs.
It's one of the
They're
other
also surrounded by a net of people who don't want them to change their beliefs and who will get mad at them if they do, and also conservatives. Like there are people watching this right now who won't even like the way that you are being somewhat conciliatory in your response to what I'm saying. There are people who are probably in your chat being like, "Shut this motherfucker down. He wants to groom kids," right? And so we're all being pressured to just go further and further and further. And I think that cancel culture is not just going after people who aren't far left enough. By default, by making the left appear so disgusting to the right with cancel culture, there's a reverse cancel culture, and now it's a quieter type of cancellation. But I think both sides are being pushed further and further, and it has to grow. It's like the stock market; like it has to always be expanding.
Something I think is important. Like, do we believe that trans people are real? Because if we do believe that trans people are real and that dysphoria is real, like, shouldn't children be able to get help for that? Because my understanding, Buck can speak if you disagree. My understanding is that like there might be kids that think they're trans when they're growing up, but they're not. But if you are trans, you definitely know around when you hit puberty that you're trans. And to not be able to address it then, or to not have the ability to address it then, because of, ironically enough, an intervention of the state to say that
Seems
doctors can't
horribly
talk to you,
cruel.
parents can't talk to you, that there's nobody that you can turn to. That seems to be bad if you believe that trans people are a real phenomenon.
Well, yeah, you can't just 100% cut it off because there are, and I don't like to call them trans kids. I call them dysphoric kids because they might not necessarily be trans. They could be gay or something. They're just dealing with some dysphoria stuff here. But the problem
Okay.
for me in transitioning young people at such an early age with medication,
It is
I social.
it is tirelessly frustrating when he keeps saying that he's not part of the trans community and saying that he's trans. Wild.
Transitioned on some level as a youngster, but the positive thing, it can destroy, especially what they're giving these young kids, and it is irreversible. Whether or not, whatever any of you think here, I know for a fact the medication they are giving these young kids is irreversible. And so that being said, it is a very small space. What I have is not as big as what the world is seeing. It is extremely small, and it's a disorder that's very small. The trans people you're seeing today, I think on some level, are being told they're trans by other people. It's happening in colleges, by the way. Massive amounts of young girls are transitioning in college right now and going along with it. And then when you detransition in college, you get mobbed on, you get jumped on, you get called all kinds of bad things. So what you said earlier is true. Once you desist from the group, you're considered a bad person. So it's all over the place. There isn't like a very specific kind of road that's happening. I went through a structure. There's no structure anymore. And I find that to be extremely dangerous if you're taking a medical space. If you're just socially transitioning, that's fine. And I do think there are young kids who have dysphoria. There's no doubt about it. But we're willy-nilly it. We're just here, take some drugs, and maybe you're trans, and have top surgery at 13. And all of those things are extremely dangerous when we're not really monitoring what this actually means. And we have no long-term studies. How can you do such a drastic change with no long-term studies?
I definitely agree with that, but like for things like puberty blockers, at the very least, like if you have access to like gender clinics or whatever, this should probably be on the table for people that are perhaps dysphoric as children, no?
Well, I'm going to kind of disagree with that.
Puberty blockers do have pretty intense,
but needs to go through some therapy before they start taking that.
Yeah.
But they're not doing that. They're literally telling parents, and I have firsthand experience with this. Oh, your kid is trans. They say they're trans. You better give your kid some this.
Or they're gonna kill themselves. Yeah.
The suicide thing.
Yeah.
Like if you don't do that, your kid's gonna commit suicide. That is actually horrifying that they say that to parents. I'm a parent.
Sure.
So I'm a parent of a 9-year-old. I know exactly.
Wait a second.
Real quick, hold on this, just on the puberty blockers.
I'm gonna add to what you're saying.
Okay, go.
What Destiny's asking you.
No, now you're done. Okay, what I'm saying
should
is
they be on the table at all? You're
like,
criticizing the way they're on the table.
Because now we've kind of gone to the other position where it's like some people abuse it, so fuck all of it. I do agree that
no, I don't.
I do agree that some
say
people.
that.
I do agree that some people abuse it, but like, if you are a trans woman, depending on the cards you were dealt, male puberty fucking sucks.
Yeah.
You're looking at $50,000 facial feminization surgery. You're looking at
Baby, lock them doors in.
You're fucked. You're 6'2". Like there is so much to overcome if you go through an incredible.
Finally, the representation I've been looking for.
It seems kind of sad to say that. Well, because there are some therapists that I've talked to detransitioners too, and one of them told me that on their first meeting they were declared trans and issued drugs. Like first meeting. I agree with you. That's insane. That's fucking wild. But just because some people abuse it or fuck with it, I don't think means that we should say no puberty blockers whatsoever. I think that we need to have like a better process by which to help like children if they go on that journey I do agree that right now in some places it goes too far, yeah.
Everybody, what's your minimum age for puberty blockers? Ideal conditions, everything's done exactly to your specifications, therapy, whatever. Mine is 18.
Well, you've already gone through puberty at 18.
Well, if you've already,
They don't need
okay,
it.
so
Now
then
you go straight
mine
to
is 100. I'm saying I'm against it. I'm against blocking puberty. Okay, everybody say what? Everybody cast your lot.
Okay,
Destiny.
so
if you have
I would say that ideally, if we have good
years of
processes in place,
therapy, probably
like responsible ones where children are having challenging conversations with therapists like they should be.
I'd imagine the answer is you have challenging conversations with therapists, like probably a couple of years, and then you have this safe environment to socially transition before you medically transition. Is I think the answer. I don't think that is the answer.
Then whatever age puberty could start or begins to matter. So that could be as early as 9 or 10 or 11, or as late as 12 or 13. It just depends. But like if I accept trans people, which they are, then if you are a trans woman especially, avoiding male puberty is like one of the most important things you could possibly do.
Nick, what do you think? Puberty blockers, are they on the table or not?
Steven says
Fuck
9.
off.
You got a rebuttal?
This might
No,
be
of
the
course
myth
not.
that Mr. Girl's talking about.
Again,
Yeah.
in some like
should be nicer.
beautiful, perfect world where we have perfect therapy and perfectly therapeutic children, sure, but we don't. And
What age? What age?
no, I'm saying no age. I
Getting into-
say no.
But he's
Are you
Explain.
saying
explaining.
no. I'm saying in the ideal world, in your hypothetical, you can have whatever. You can have a team.
You should say
of the
19.
best therapists in the country telling you.
26.
Okay. Yeah.
Right
Is
after
that,
you
is that a genuine answer, or are you avoided the question because you're
Well,
scared?
no, he said he doesn't believe in puberty blockers. So that...
Yeah, I don't think they should ever be implemented.
Yeah, but when you started explaining why you don't believe in
No,
puberty
I was-
blockers, you were saying that the way they're delivered is not ideal. So
I was speaking in arguendo. Assuming Destiny's argument that there were some way to actually do this, I was speaking,
Okay.
but I don't hold that position.
what if there were?
There isn't.
Nick, what do you
Bro.
think of the trade-off?
You don't have to answer-
Rekita
you don't
is
have to
Giga
answer
Chat, I
the
guess.
Hypothetical because you don't believe it that the conditions are possible.
No, I don't believe the conditions are possible,
What if they were?
but they aren't.
What if they were?
But they won't.
Look, see,
We're
abstract thinking
looping.
doesn't always kick in at 25.
What if people live? What do you think the age of consent should be if people live to be 200?
If people live to be 200, but people don't live to be 200 right now.
Well, yeah. But what if they could? Are you
The age
able
of
to
consent
imagine? Are you
is,
able to picture?
They're
a world
throwing.
where people can live to be 200?
Yeah, sure. But the age of consent is set by
What would
state
you do
law.
if you grew a third arm right now? What would you do?
Jerk off while showing.
Okay, so
guys that I'm
so you
not.
are capable of answering hypothetical questions based on the impossible. So for this question,
I'm a lawyer. Of
I'm
course, I
asking-
can answer hypothetical questions.
So
Because I don't think it's worth entertaining. I don't believe in gender or in puberty blockers at any age under any hypothetical.
What about the trade-off that Destiny was talking about, where if you believe in a trans person, them going through puberty would be horrible, and it would be irreversible? In that
Yeah.
edge case, what do you think about that?
You know what? There are people who are born with things that are very horrible, and I am very sorry for it. But I do not believe in puberty blockers, even in edge cases. I just don't. And I know that it's like we've set up this cool thing where we're talking about, well, there's too much extremes, and maybe we need to consider.
Dick is a
middle, but,
great moderator.
I don't think that it's
Dick is
valuable
crazy.
to say this because we go through all sorts of there are all sorts of issues that you're born into, socioeconomic issues that cannot be and will never be solved by society or technology, and it sucks, right? Like it sucks that I was born white when I'm a black man. It really does suck because
Jesus
I
fuck,
tried to play
dude.
the rap game and I ended up on fucking YouTube.
Wait, but this doesn't. Okay, when we talk about society,
wait.
hold on. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I don't know why people say this. Life sucks. When we're talking about societal prescriptions, that is the least profound statement I've ever heard in my entire life. Life sucks. No shit, life sucks. But like, even of the examples you give, like, well, you know, some people are born into shitty socioeconomic systems. Yeah, no shit. That's why you have a progressive tax bracket and welfare. That's why you have
No, but
Section 8
those
housing.
don't work.
Like,
Those
I'm
literally
saying that the goal
Okay,
of
take-
having some sort of governance
take the wrong
is
point.
usually to like address some of these imbalances, right?
Only
Do I
if
get
you're a
to
commie.
give my opinion here?
yeah, I just have a
No.
couple more
Like-
questions. For you. I have
Lauren
one
with her
more question
jade roller.
just to follow up
Can
real
I
quick.
answer the
Lauren,
question
I-
everyone got to answer first?
Yes, yeah. But after this quick couple questions, is a Dick, do you want to make a ruling?
Oh yeah, Lauren, go for it.
Well, now it feels like I'm just like going to pity, like in here. All right.
You're getting it because you're a woman.
Life sucks, Lauren.
I don't think you should give any person, let alone a child, puberty blockers until you can prove pretty confidently that they are actually dysphoric. And one of the
Okay.
best ways to prove that they are actually dysphoric is for them to go through puberty. So I don't really think you can prove that someone has persisting dysphoria without them going through puberty.
Okay,
I don't want to give you
so-
insulin because I need to prove that you're diabetic. Your toes fall
Well, no,
off and I see what happens. Like,
Whoa. Diabetes and gender dysphoria are very
Two
fucking
yeah, they
different
are, but there
things.
is probably ways through talking to
wait.
children we can figure out.
But you
Like,
can't know it's retarded
blood
though
test
because
to
you
find if
don't give
someone is
someone insulin
dysphoric.
until you find out they're diabetic.
Sure, but I mean, we do give kids SSRIs. We do give kids medication for anxiety and ADHD. Should all of that be illegal as well? We don't cut into their brains to see if they have an ADHD brain.
There isn't like an age point, unless maybe I'm incorrect about this, but there isn't an age point where it's like one of the distinctive factors in deciding are they going to have persisting ADHD
It is
or
absolutely.
not.
I will say, as a parent of a child with ADHD, the age is actually incredibly important because if they do have these types of problems, it's recommended to start as early as possible. Because if you do have a kid that's like severely ADHD and you're like, fuck it, I'll wait till he's 18, his life might be fucked by then because they have no friends.
But then what if it was a cost wait, yeah, what if it
Just
was a
let the
cost to put
woman
them on early
speak.
if you're wrong?
There is a cost, right? When you're talking about
What if there was a cost to putting them on early if you're wrong?
there is a
There
cost,
is.
right? When you're talking about amphetamines long term, you've got potential heart side
fuck.
effects, you've got like other weird like mind shit that can happen.
But it ain't like
mood
fucking
swings and things
puberty
like
blockers.
all of these things that we're putting.
It can't be.
ain't like puberty blockers. I mean, like arguably, like some amphetamines or medications for ADHD can have more like serious side effects than puberty blockers,
And what
depending
if
on what
the
you're talking
cost
about, right?
is that they were potentially they were more likely to not have ADHD if you had let them go over this certain age gap, rather than you deciding to medicate early and then them definitely
Sure,
having
these
ADHD.
are the hard decisions that
That's
I
not
think
a hard decision.
it absolutely is a hard. I hate that you're a parent. You're saying this. You're fucking dishonest fuck. Okay, it is absolutely hard to make these decisions about your children, which is why it should be kept between the parents and the doctor, and not some fucking loser that's like, I don't think this should be legal until they're 18. Fuck you. I don't want you telling me what the fuck I do with my kid until he's 18. That should be a
When
decision between
Whoa.
parents.
rates
That
are
should be.
so
There's certain
freaking
things you-
high. It's
No,
not-
Max, stop.
There are better ways to do this. None of us disagree with that. So stop with
I
the
don't disagree with that,
the
no.
virtue signaling of like, oh,
Okay.
these systems are high.
Okay,
We
but
all agree
everybody's
that there
taking-
are problems. We all agree.
on, Virgil.
Hold on.
We're all
We-
taking
we-
indefensible
no,
positions.
No, hold on.
It's
No,
not- you
that
don't-
is not true. Your position might be
you don't-
indefensible.
you-
Don't project. Okay. Okay. Hold on. Let me finish my thing. Let me finish my
Do you
point. Let me
actually
hold on.
believe
Wait.
you should be able to do whatever you want to your kids before they're
No,
18?
I think that it should be
Okay,
a
great.
medically
So we
informed.
agree
It should
there's
be a
some
medically
basis.
informed. It should be a medically informed decision where the government can't arbitrarily restrict saying, "Oh, your kid has to be 18 before you can take this fucking drug."
Well, what if your doctor said they want to cut your kid's head off? Like, your kid's too unhappy, so we have to chop his head off. Like, at some
If
point,
he's a League of
you-
Legends player, maybe that's the only route left.
At
Based.
some-
Fucking based.
At some point, we have to say, like, oh, actually, you can tell doctors they can't do certain things with kids. Like, you don't actually believe.
Finally, the representation I needed.
Sanctity of the parent-doctor-child trio. It should be like
When it comes to
interruptible
something
by
like
the
related
government.
to like trans issues, probably. When it comes to like chopping their head off, probably not.
Right, but I
What
guess that's my
about,
point. Is
transableists?
how close is transitioning to like a
I think
obviously destructive?
it's at least a few
negative
doors
thing.
down. I think maybe even on the next block.
Okay,
There's a
cutting
difference
their
between
dick off.
transitioning and chopping.
You're
people's heads off.
Well, yeah, I would rather get my head cut off than my dick cut off.
What about
What's the-
legitimately? What about transableism,
Both are.
which is a rising, sort of fringe issue for now, but it's the idea that that some people believe they're born disabled, and so they get medically
it's-
disabled. If your child believes that they're born a paraplegic, should you be able to take your child to a doctor and have them snip their spinal cord and their lower vertebrae so that they can't walk? Like, should
If
you be
there
able
was
to
like
do that?
the thing is that trans people have existed for as long as we've had like in history. It seems to be the case that there are some people that are born dysphoric. Their brains are wired wrong, or something gets turned on as they're aging that messes with their ability to
Phrasing.
this congruence with their gender identity and gender expression. And as much as we've tried, conservatives like, oh well, they just need more therapy, blah blah blah. We've tried the conversion camps. We've tried every fucking thing possible. We've had some kids that are assigned a certain sex at birth that they weren't because of a botched surgery, and it doesn't seem like you can just socialize somebody out of their gender. So if it's impossible to socialize somebody out of something, and we have medical technology to alleviate an issue, why would we not use the medical technology other than to virtue
Do you-
signal? Like,
Do you believe that body dysphoria is limited to gender, though?
it seems to be the case. I haven't heard or seen any convincing arguments or anything to the contrary of that.
What
So-
about like,
Oh.
guys who like do tons
I mean,
of
have you ever met a
steroids
fat
or-
person?
Or
No,
women?
body dysphoria can be a thing. I mean, like
Dysmorphia and
some
dysphoria are
eating
two different
disorders
things.
are real,
Yeah.
of course. But this is fundamentally different than like trans racialism or trans like genderism or trans whatever, like these other types of things that people say exist. But yeah, I
But
mean,
the
I think
way
people
How it's
can be.
fundamentally different.
Yeah, the way we deal with eating disorders, or with somebody like a bodybuilder, bigorexia. You guys heard of that? Or a woman wanting bigger breasts. Let's say your 13-year-old daughter is realizing she's going through puberty, and she's like, she's not gonna have the huge breasts that she wanted. Should she? And she's really upset about it. All of her friends are blossoming, and she wants to kill herself. Should you get her implants? Or put her on hormones so that she develops further. Like, obviously,
I think you should
the
probably
answer
see a
to
therapist,
this
maybe.
for everybody in the panel is probably no.
And
That
I
would be weird. But if
Yeah,
she
I
wants-
think maybe you should get a therapist for a significant amount of time, and then if it makes you feel better, you can start stuffing your bra. And some girls did that, and hey, maybe you can figure it out before you need to actually like get a boob job at 13 or 14 or 15. Like if like he's asking is like these horrible like scenarios, but it's like, yeah, you should be able to socially do this, and like you should probably see a therapist about that.
wants to turn into a man, then we're like, well, yeah, maybe we should consider it. To me, it's much more reasonable to give your daughter breast implants than your son. I think, but I'd be against both. But for some reason, there's something very protected.
He probably like wrote that line down,
gender
probably.
dysphoria, but I think of it as the same as all dysphoria.
Well,
Like,
I mean, like, but there are
you're-
some forms of that we would accept. So, for instance, like, if you were a woman and you had to get like a double mastectomy because of breast surgery, we would say, yeah, you should be able to have like reconstructive surgery to rebuild your breast. Like, that's not necessarily. Or if you're like the victim of like some sort of horrific thing that leaves you disfigured or it's with some scar, like, yeah, you do get.
That's
cosmetic
true, but
surgery
there's
for
a big difference between that feeling like something you had was taken away from you and you're
Sure,
trying to
I think the
reconstruct your life,
difference is that, like-
and a 13-year-old that just wants mommy milkers.
Sure.
Like,
I
there's
think
a
the difference
difference.
seems to be, like, when it comes to things like eating disorders and stuff, there seems to be some underlying
Does-
issue that can be treated without like
I
saying
think
that
that-
it has to be.
Does Mr. Girl often think about 13-year-olds with mommy milkers? Just asking.
I know you think that all trans people can be taught how to be trans, but there are people
No,
that are way more
no,
motivated than
no,
you that have been trying to do it
okay,
that
don't tell
haven't.
me what I think.
Okay, what were you gonna say?
Don't
Go ahead.
ever tell me what I think.
Okay,
think-
I can't imagine
Kalvin-
doing that. My bad. Go ahead.
I can't. Thank you. I think that anorexic people can't just be talked out of it. You have to learn how to cope with it. So yes, you could lose a few pounds, as Nick would suggest, or you can just cope with it. Cope with the feeling that your body's not going to look and feel right to you. And so I think it's worth trying to talk trans people out of being dysphoric, especially trans kids. But if that doesn't work, I think it's also worth just saying, like Nick said, kind of like, yeah, it sucks. It sucks that your body's not the way you want it to be.
Why would you gatekeep them from like medical interventions that can help? Just so
But
that
my
you can
friend,
feel...
but here I need to say something about the puberty blockers. I don't think you understand. It's not all perfectly yeah. It's all great. There are some horrible side effects to these puberty
No, he
blockers.
knows.
One of them
He's
being
talked about.
genital growth. Genital growth is very important for the older when you get older and you need to, let's say, get a vagina. You're not getting that. Your penis has now been stunted. This is actually true and real. Not only that, your bone density. There are so many layers of health problems that will exist once you put a child on puberty blockers, and they are medicated for life now. As a person who struggled in my gender and struggled in my life and struggled with boobs and struggled with female anatomy, I would say that I think that is the best thing that ever happened to me that I wasn't put on puberty blockers. So this idea that
Imagine weaponizing your identity to agree with a point.
woman's going to grow big shoulders and arms and all of that. That happens, but what's the percentage of that
Fuck.
compared to the other people who just kind of deal with their gender dysphoria and move on and get surgery and do that? We do not have enough studies or understanding of what the long-term effects of puberty blockers are on these kids. Why would we
Sure,
do
but I
that?
mean, how do you get the data?
What do you mean? There's tons of data.
No, first of all, there's not tons of data. That is
My
not
friend,
true.
you're wrong.
I'm-
Finland, Sweden have done studies.
No,
for
those are-
20 and
Those are just studies on white trans people who can afford everything. To be fair, those are very specific studies. He just gone from saying that there's not a lot of information on this to there's so much information that these are harmful. So you could get me to a situation where I can maybe agree that the case is not closed, but to say definitively in one way or the other, and then cite that there's not enough evidence to say that they aren't harmful, but there is evidence to say that they're harmful, or rather, sorry, that there's no evidence on it, period, but now there is evidence that it's harmful. Is like at this point, in this situation, I would like ask for the citation on that, because he's like contradicted himself in multiple ways in I guess breaking apart the argument.
30 years, which they just shut down because they said.
Yeah, so
I can
Sweden, I
you're
understand.
lying.
Hold on, I'm not lying. Okay, there is very limited data. There are some studies,
There's not
but
limited data.
the
That's
idea that
the
there is
concept.
like this is a new thing, right? I know that
It's not
Sweden.
new. It's new in the United States. It's not new in Finland, Sweden, where they've been doing it for 30 years. 30
Can you
years.
explain that? Can you explain those studies more? Because I'm not.
Yes, thank you, Dick.
Finland,
Jesus
Sweden,
fucking Christ.
Which was to give the children puberty blockers, which they did at 8 years old. They did studies on long term. They followed these kids from 8 years old all the way till they were adults, 20 to 30 years old. They realized that it was not worth it, that they actually did struggle still with their gender. Some of them desisted from it. So they just shut that down. They no longer give puberty blockers in Finland and Sweden because they said that the actual usage of those is not it's more negative than it is positive. So that's why I'm saying we actually have studies on this. We actually have long-term studies from other kids in other countries. Yet we're doing it here. That makes no sense.
I'm gonna look these up. Give me 1 second.
Look it up.
Yeah, keep
Email
going.
me and I'll send it all to you.
They are finished, though. They're barely people.
We have I believe, a trans person who wants to join the panel, who I believe is more left-leaning than any of us. Is there room for one more? What do you guys think?
Excellent.
Sure.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait.
That'll take a second. So just
What's the screen layout
I'm
going to be?
gonna jump in 15 minutes, anyways. Have you ever heard the game Papers, Please? Anyone?
Yeah.
I've heard of
Gonna
you.
be playing that with Brittany Venti tonight on stream. You basically get to be an
That's
immigration
actually
officer,
so funny
people
that she's
attention.
playing it.
Sounds fun.
No, you just stopped them
Are you
from
gonna have
coming in.
the
Honestly, if I wanted to make good money, if I was real
Yeah.
desperate, we'll get the feet
Do it.
cams going, all right? You gotta cancel me up until I'm that broke. That's the only way you're getting the feet pics.
Get on it, squad.
Okay, while we're waiting, serious
Wait, I had a question.
for-
I had a question for Nick that I've been
Okay,
asked
good.
for like 10 minutes.
Oh, also, I just want to read this quick because I know this. I've argued this so many times. Hold on, I'm just going to read it. So, part of the reason why Sweden pulled back on this is that there was poor quality / insufficient evidence. The evidence for safety and efficacy of treatments remains insufficient to draw any definitive conclusions, which is exactly what I said. They pulled it back because people don't nod because you said that there was evidence that they didn't work. Okay, what I'm saying is that there was not a lot of long-term
I
data.
said they stopped them.
They
I'm
did
nodding
stop. I
because
don't
I'm
disagree with that.
agreeing with you, my friend.
I don't disagree that they did stop them, but there's not like all of this data out here collected longitudinally about puberty blockers. Like it's still
They
in
have
its infancy.
20 to 30 years of it.
For how many people? Like
30 people.
And what do those people look
They
like?
actually had 30 trans people that they took from the age 8 all the way up until adulthood.
Okay,
Read it.
sure.
If you're looking at
Okay.
it, read it.
I believe you that there is probably a longitudinal study with 30 people that were given puberty blockers, but we
Yes.
have to acknowledge that like there's probably like a little bit more room to study. That's probably not the
100%. I'm not saying we shouldn't study. I'm saying we should study, number one, before we give children puberty
But this
blockers.
is the issue. How you have to give them puberty blockers to study it.
No, you don't. You can actually do it on other ways. You're going to use kids to stud. You are actually...
How else do you test
Hold
medication
up.
on children
You are
other than to use
actually-
medication on
So
children?
go ahead,
Yeah.
my friend. Use your child. Why don't
Wait,
we
hold on.
use your
What is
child?
the alternative? Are you going to give puberty blockers
Whose
to
child
adults?
are we going to use to do that? You're not going to use my child.
That's
Whose
fine.
child
I mean,
is
you.
gonna-
That's
But,
why
like,
you
this
don't
is the
need
entire
to
point.
have
Actually
will enroll-
willing to sacrifice children for an actual cause like that?
Wait, you're
Wow,
willing
my
to
friend.
sacrifice children because you're too scared to explore the research?
No, I'm not.
That's
scared
what
of
you're
anything. I'm a
saying. You're
trans
saying that
person.
maybe
I'm
puberty
saying-
blockers can work, but I'm not willing to have anybody even be able to be volunteered
No,
for
I'm
any
not.
research like that.
I'm not. I am not willing to
Okay,
put a
then it-
child under the bus.
Sure.
I'm not.
But in a,
Then at least say that, like
yeah.
you're
Yeah,
okay
okay.
that they're
So at this point, then he's like, you are throwing. If you're denying them access to these treatments, you are throwing them in the bus, or you damned if you do. It's catch-22.
there's not definitive data out there, and there will never be definitive data out there because it can't
Maybe
be
not.
research.
And maybe
Well,
so.
then this is my
somebody
whole
will
original
grow up
point.
like me and actually finally realize they're trans and have a beautiful life. Maybe.
Okay,
they're
well
just
that's
gay
a
kids.
but
Maybe
Buck,
they're
that's
just gay. Maybe they're
that's-
not even trans.
yeah,
Okay,
those
isn't that
those
a
are all
thought?
those are all possible, but what
Possible.
I think, yeah, but what we're saying is we don't know. So either
That's
we
right.
have
We
to
don't know.
we have to potentially harm kids by giving them puberty blockers, or
don't.
we have to or
That's what we did with all drugs with children. Yes, there is
or
a
we have to
potential harm.
potentially harm them by not giving them
That's
puberty
right.
blockers.
So
Okay.
which-
Wow,
so-
Max is based.
So for me,
God bless
okay,
Mr. Girl.
I'll take the road to not give them.
Clearly,
and
but
to
I
let
think it
them
sounds
go.
like
Clearly.
your real position is that you think it's unethical to even do the research in the first
That's
place.
right. I do.
Why did we just open with that?
I don't know. I have no idea why we did it. But there we go.
I'm gonna transition so I can get a word in.
Good
this
one.
Conversation. Yeah, got him. Yeah, I guess we'll just open
I wish.
Tiffany's Dr. Mengele office for children to get all this research.
Bad joke.
Is that the plan?
Yes.
guess
Oh,
so.
were we gonna say anything, or was it just shitty mic night with Lauren
Yeah.
on that? Okay, nice.
Nick, are you
Yeah.
okay with adults taking cross-sex hormones?
If they choose to do it, sure.
Are you okay with adults getting their hand surgically removed because they feel they shouldn't have a hand anymore?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions.
Can I ask my question I had for everyone now? Everyone, if you honestly, everyone except those of us who have transitioned, of course, boys, if you were in the right environment, like raised on Tumblr, you were in school right now, your teachers were telling you it's lit to be transgender, you didn't have
Based.
any sort of concept of all of these ideas we're talking about right now, the dangers of hormone blockers, political conservatism. Do you think if you honestly look back on yourself, you might have transitioned?
No.
Destiny will maybe say yes.
Try to take yourself out of the childhood that you had, Nick.
No, no, because okay, so I just went through my childhood and determined that I thought teachers were largely idiotic. I did not have a lot of respect for the overwhelming majority of them, and there were plenty of instances where teachers tried to convince me that the world was one way, and I resisted that tons. I mean, I leaned on different institutions, different people,
Tip.
than teachers. But like, if you put me in a public school system, I was an asshole. I still am. Like that didn't.
Clearly.
But so it's not like I was thinking, oh yeah, this teacher has lots of wisdom. So for me, no, I don't think so.
Dick?
What if the people you leaned on were telling you to transition?
Then it might have been a little bit different there, but that would have mostly been my parents, probably.
Yeah, what if
So I
your
guess
parents are saying that?
Yeah, then who knows, right? Like that's a different question. But I don't, it's
But that's not what I was asked, so I'm not going to answer that one.
If we're being honest, we all have grades of where we put people, and that's, to me, that's the big risk of having this shit present in the school system, is because there are kids who do not.
Bro,
have
we get it. Don't say
stronger,
gay, Bill.
other,
Okay. You live in
more
Canada,
trusted
bro.
people Than,
Yeah.
than the state.
Oh, maybe
and that's
that's not
the
true. I don't know.
terrifying thing for me is that it's, holy shit, the state is involved with this.
Okay, the next question has to do with the state. Lauren, I'm going to give it to you because you complained about not talking.
I'm probably gonna hate it too. Let's hear it.
The Don't Say Gay bill,
Oh.
or anti-groomer bill,
Mhm.
is a response to a seemingly irreconcilable political divide around gender and sexuality. If we take the law at face value, is it bigoted? Is it reasonable? How do you think we should talk to children about trans or gay issues?
Obviously, I think referring to it at all as the Don't Say Gay bill is just a misrepresentation of the bill in general. If you read it, it actually only says the words gay, transgender, like once in one sentence. The majority of the bill is just about, hey, if you're going to talk to people's kids about really crucial things in their life, like, I don't know, their mental health, suicide, whatever it might be, you have to tell the parents. You can't just get a bunch of information from this child and then, or do quizzes about their mental health, their sexuality, whatever it might be.
Destiny's
and
going to
then
hit on it,
cut
but
off the
it's
parents from that
opening up
conversation.
to a lot of
I think that is
lawsuits.
that should not be a controversial bill in the least. And of course, they have a section in there that says if the child claims they're being abused by their parents or some harm might come to them if a secret goes out to the parents, yes, that is one exception where you can keep secrets from the parents. But otherwise, the bill, the way it's been portrayed politically just blows my mind. I don't think you should have straight teachers going up to their kids and being like, hey, you know how much I effing love being straight, how much I love having sex with my male husband or my female wife, love that. Like, I don't think that. And this bill does not really explicitly apply.
Warren, you don't. Are you really saying that you think that when liberals teach kids about sexual orientation, they say, you know how much I love fucking my boyfriend and sucking his fucking dick?
That's what they
Oh
said
my
on the Libs
God,
of TikTok account.
fucking
I saw it.
amazing.
I
I saw it.
saw it with my own eyeballs.
I don't
Yeah.
think that you need to have teachers talking so much, especially with young kids, about their sexuality. I don't, especially, this is talking about like kindergartners in this bill,
We're talking
right?
about classroom instruction. I don't think the teacher comes in, and even when in high school when they teach like sex ed, they're not like, so let's talk about what I like to masturbate to, kids. Like they're not talking about their own sexuality. They're talking about like,
But
like,
this
hey,
is pre-sex ed.
yeah.
Like,
So
of course sex ed is
it would be
fine,
like
we
it
can
would be
talk
like
about it normally.
so homosexual means you like the same sex. Heterosexual means you like the opposite sex. Transgender means blah blah blah. It would be that kind of like classroom instruction, not like
I have no problem
intimate,
with that.
intimate. Do you have a problem with
that's
that
not
before?
that's not what the Don't Say Gay bill is about.
It
be.
actually is.
It's
It
not,
literally
it's not
is about classroom
sex ed
instruction.
because
Yeah.
it is applying to kids before they generally get sex ed courses. It's like K to 8
It
or 9
applies
or
to
something.
it applies to all of the children throughout the entire school.
Yes.
There is a section that
when
specifically
it talks about sex. Yeah.
Well, there's a section that references K through 3, but then it also
It
says
says right
or
after
any
that,
other age
or
appropriate
any
too.
other.
The biggest problem with this bill and the reason why-
Specifically, it says or any other age inappropriate lessons. So that age under inappropriate gives, which Destiny's about to hit on, is it opens up this like wide angle of litigation. I don't know what the word is. Maybe Rekieta can help me on that. But it opens up public schools to be sued based on, and then also gives like the definition of whether or not it's age appropriate is up for debate, which like causes this like massive problem.
the bill is a fucking disaster is because the bill is unique in that it creates a private. Did I say something funny? That's right.
Yes.
Okay. The bill creates a private cause of action that allows parents to sue schools, and because of the way that the fees work in
Nodders.
Florida, the schools oftentimes might have to share a whole bunch of the burden of any of those court cases from the parents. So what you've essentially done is you've created the ability for any parent in any school district in all of Florida to just start bringing lawsuits to a school because they think that their child was taught something that they shouldn't have been taught. It's a disaster. You would never want to have this system. Like, you create a massive chilling effect on, like, should I not even teach a poet because he's gay? Should I not do this Shakespearean play because they mention gay? Like, now, like, when you're designing curriculums in schools, you're going to be designing the curriculum in mind
It's
with, like,
their turn
I
to
have
live in fear.
yeah, good one. Okay, I have to design the curriculum that's least likely to even have a chance of, like, some parent deciding to do some fucking crazy civil suit against my classroom. Like, it's a horrible idea.
So is your problem with the bill just the application of it?
Wrong.
The problem in the bill is that it creates a private cause of action for parents to sue school districts. It's
So
a
it's
disaster.
that aspect,
Yes.
not the actual language of
Wait,
the
are
bill.
you okay?
Cool.
Are you okay? If other than that, are you okay with the the social content of the bill? Of like, don't talk to my kids about being trans. Don't talk
He's
to
just
my
trying
kids
to
about
find
being gay.
something to disagree with me on.
First of all, no. Number one. Number two, it's
apparently
the
we agree
question
on
is about the bill, okay, in its totality. All right.
Yeah.
Now, if you're
Well,
gonna
the
ask me,
question
yeah, if you want to go,
I
if you want to
I
go
wrote in-
deeper, you're not the moderator, so you didn't write these. Dick did. Thank you, Dick. Okay.
no, I did write the question.
No, Dick did. He told me. But no. So if
Kick
you
it,
want to go
Chad.
like a step further, I mean, like, the problem is it's a bit vague in what it says, and different parents are going to have different interpretations of what it means to, like, appropriately teach something in class. Like I said, like, is it appropriate to mention that an author is gay? You know, for some teacher, they might think that that's a formative thing that, you know, influenced the writing. For some parent, they might say, I don't want my kid learning about who that poet fucked. My kid doesn't need to know if Oscar Wilde was doing weird shit or if Shakespeare was like. We don't need to know about that. Just teach them the material, right? So I mean, that's a hard.
Lots of Oscar Wilde and Shakespeare and K-3 education.
Well, if you read the actual bill, you can do it. It's only 3 pages long. You can go read it if you want.
Oh, believe me, I've read it.
Okay, yeah. Well,
Okay, well, you read it wrong.
It says age appropriate up to, I believe, high school is what it extends through. So it's not. It does
Yeah,
specify
so
K through 3 in one part, but then for the rest of it, I'm pretty sure it lets you bring these cause of action cases all the way up through high school.
You understand? You may not. Don't take this the wrong way, because I'm a lawyer. Lawyers are retarded, and we have to pay a whole lot to figure out this stuff. But do you understand that when they say the age appropriate standard set by the commissioner, that is what's called a catch-all phrase, and that the board of Florida would have to develop those age appropriate standards that currently don't exist in regards to this topic. So there's not like, well, we think it's age appropriate at 6 to talk about that. So that is one of these catch-all things that allows the board to actually establish some of these.
That's the whole point, though.
some of these
That's why you're saying it's bad.
standards. They can set what is age appropriate beyond K-3. But the bill itself is actually saying K-3 is set aside. None of this shit here. And then the commissioner or the board, I can't remember the exact wording, gets to set those standards under the Florida Education Bill. For example, Florida has standards regarding race discussions. When Black history is brought up in a Florida classroom, it is incumbent upon the curriculum to include positive stories about contributions that Black people have made throughout history within the subject. So if you're talking about science, you're going to talk about people like George Washington Carver, etc. That's one of those age-appropriate sort of standards that would be set, and that is then required by the bill to have these age-appropriate things if the Board of Education determines them to be there. But otherwise, it's just K-3. You can't talk about this stuff.
I don't know how anything you just said. I don't know what disagrees with anything I just said. Can you point out which section does, or?
I can help.
I don't know how you didn't catch that, but
Well, explain it to me. I mean, you should be able to do it, right? So you're
I did.
all you're telling me is you're kicking the can down the road to some board that
To
is
the
then going
school
to try
board.
to iron out more.
Okay, they're kicking the can down the road to the school board, where Fox News has militantly gotten you to, whether it being over mask, critical race theory in your schooling, or now these new trans, like this anti-trans panic. It is kicking the can down the road where school board members, whether or not they're literally hired by the Koch brothers or not, to run, to then arbitrate it themselves. So the actual legislation doesn't look bigoted, but the actual implementation of that legislation is. Oh, I muted it.
no, that
Kappa.
could.
To iron out more what is going to be appropriate or what isn't going to be appropriate?
No,
Like,
that could carve out age-appropriate things and determine them, and that would remove them from any private cause of action in any sense. They could actually they could determine that there's an age-appropriate second grade curriculum for sexual education and include that.
Yeah.
what
Is Florida going to do that though?
Legal stuff then. What's the difference between this bill and just ordinarily like figuring out curriculum for your state at this point?
Well, this is a directive from the state legislature to control the curriculum in some way. It puts some walls around what the state board of education.
Very conservative, by the way.
That's all. And I just want to point out, like, creating a private cause of action got blown up like as if it's a big deal. But I tell you right now, it doesn't matter if you're in Florida or, well, you can't say Ohio because they're working on the same bill. Let's say Florida or Montana or Nebraska or California. If you want to bring a private cause of action against your school for some sort of thing against a teacher, you can do that. And the school will also be involved because the teacher would be acting as an agent or employee of the school in the course of their duties. The school would be bearing the burden in the same way. So I know it creates a private cause of action, but it more clarifies a private cause of action because one already existed. You can sue the school for whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah,
That's-
you could,
that's
but my guess is
interesting,
going to be is that a
but-
judge is going to look at that lawsuit a lot differently if there's already a bill in place establishing
Yeah.
those types of cases, right? If I go before a judge and I say over and over again that I want to sue the school for this bullshit or that bullshit, like at some point, like I imagine that the case is either not going to be taken seriously, it'll be thrown out, but like it's going to be probably different. I would imagine if the state has passed some piece of legislation, like specifically outlining where parents can take schools to court for these different types of things.
Yeah, it's when a teacher engages in classroom instruction that includes discussions about gender identity, sexuality between the ages of K through 3 or K through 3 grades. That's when it does that, and yes, it will give more validity to those specific lawsuits under those conditions.
Doesn't
But
didn't okay, I don't have the text in front of me, so I'm relying on your good faith interpretation. Doesn't in the next sentence of that bill doesn't it specify? Doesn't it go on to say?
It's not even the next one. It's the exact.
School or whatever's included. Doesn't it say that in the next sentence? I thought. I don't know if there's a link to the bill.
Sort of, but what that is a phrase allowing a board to create standards in the future. Yes, it's not kicking the can down the road. It's opening the bill to accept either standards that would say this is acceptable education before 3rd grade, right? Like we say, oh, we actually like the gays. We can talk about them in 2nd grade now. Or it's creating unacceptable education up to 5th grade, where they say, well, we like them in 2nd grade, but we don't like the gays anymore in 5th grade, so there's no more talking there. It allows the board some flexibility in creating standards that go beyond the mere words of the bill. And this is really common. I mean, if you look up the Environmental Protection Agency, to pick an analogy here for an administrative sort of state agency, the EPA is created by the Clean Air and Water Act, and that is just merely
Section
given a directive
3.
to make clean air and
Oh, he literally has it there too. Yeah, I'll bring it up bigger, I guess. But classroom. Yeah, okay. Classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties for sexual orientation, gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3, or in any manner that is not age appropriate or development appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. So it's not even a different sentence. It's literally the last part of this, where it specifically dictates and gives this very open interpretation to it.
and make clean water. And then the administrative body and the executive branch that's in power gets the interpretive power to implement those things, to execute them, right? It's the same thing here. They're still giving the board some leeway on how they do this, but they're setting some pretty strict ground rules and some guidance for it. And so then any of the board's decisions would have to be within this bill. But that catch-all at the end gives them actually a whole lot of latitude if they change their minds later.
Sure. So I guess when we talk about things that exist in privilege of the executive, these different things like the EPA or any of the organizations that exist in the executive literally does not have the ability to do like clean air and water without that executive directive, right? Whereas it seems like don't we already have the ability to do curriculum in Florida? Like, do we not already have a state board of education that can decide like what curriculum they can enact? Like, why the additional legislation from the state in order to do that? What is the purpose?
They're narrowing the scope of the board's ability, which of course should be the prerogative of the representative body that represents the parents who control education in the state. And this is where this ultimately comes down. Look, I'm not saying that the Florida bill is the 100% correct solution or the most ultimately correct solution, but we do have this system where the schools, the education system in this country, borrows the right to educate children from parents. They borrow that right, they borrow that authority, and then they implement it through state law. That's a state-by-state basis. As long as we can keep the fucking feds out of it, that would be great. But they do this, and that means that once you're an agent of the state, once you're a teacher, no, you don't get academic freedom. You get to shut the fuck up and teach what the parents are giving, because they're giving their right to the state. The parents have the right of education. We have all sorts of litigation about this. We have all sorts of precedent that says parents have the fundamental right to educate their children in the way that they want. So when they lend that power to the state, they get to sculpt it however the shit they want. That's why the Florida bill is wonderful, even if you disagree with the language or the ages, and I might disagree with some of the age ranges in there, but it doesn't matter because the people of Florida get to carve this out, and they get to implement it, and all the teachers who want to bitch about it, fucking leave, start a private school, homeschool kids, start a homeschool pod, whatever you want. You can teach all of your ideology there, and people can voluntarily do it. But when kids are given to the state, they have to use the authority that the parents give them. And if the parents don't give them the authority, fuck off, you don't have it.
Is it a good idea that we're establishing the precedent that like curriculum comes from like our state laws?
Yeah.
We're essentially
How is that
putting
how
some
conservative
limits
win?
on like how many black people should be taught in school or how many whatever, that this is something that
Where
like
do you-
like
Where do you think curriculum comes from?
my idea is it, or my understanding is that curriculum is designed by like whatever state education board does their stuff, but you don't typically have input from like the state legislature on
The
like
state
the scope of
legislature-
what. Is that
Oh,
not
sorry.
the case? Yeah, go ahead.
The state legislature creates those education boards and lays out a framework for how they will determine curriculum. Yes, that's how it's been done basically forever.
Sure, but like, isn't it not generally the case that you're passing like state legislation to like narrow the scope of like what the education board can design for curriculum, or is that normally the case?
I mean, I don't know that it's been done in this particular way, but sure, yeah. I mean, because the state says, for example, and this is probably more akin to what it used to be, we want you to teach this subject, and this subject to these kids. And maybe actually early on it was like, and don't talk about black people. But we've kind of changed that. The 14th Amendment changed a lot of how this works too, but this is how it's done. The state boards of education are created by legislation from the state legislature, which is representing the people who are giving that power. Yeah, absolutely.
I guess I just
So true, Nick. Anyways, shut
Yeah.
up, Steven. I've got to go here.
Bye, loser. Leave. Okay. When we talk
So
to
true, Nick. Honestly, you're doing great here. Just wanted to let you guys know. Had fun. Had a good time.
Thanks
All
for
right.
coming, Lauren.
it
Thank
feels
Bye,
like there
Queen.
is, like,
Whoa.
can you leave? Don't you have video games to play?
Yeah, just let me interrupt you once more. All right. Bye, guys.
It feels like there's like the appropriate forum for parents to have conversations about education is one, relatively local, right? Like we have like our different city councils or our city school boards and educators that we elect, and that these conversations literally happen within schools. And that seems to be like the most appropriate setting for conversations relating to curriculum or curriculum direction, like within the scope of we should probably all learn like math, science, history, like for those conversations to happen. I guess getting like a state directive from the top down that is so, I guess, specific around this individual topic just seems like, it especially from a conservative party that seems to be less in favor of centralized educational power. It just seems to be like a weird way to go about these types of conversations. Or rather, it should be left to more like the more local municipality, whether it's in your individual school or whether it's your like city or your district that's having a conversation about how education and curriculum should be designed.
Again, it goes to the fundamental way in which we borrow power from the populace and give it to a state institution. Remember that, I mean, yes, there are school boards that are localized, and sure, there can be flexibility amongst local school boards with
No,
parents
Calvin, you
voting
just
on
fucked up your
curriculum
hair.
and
It was
stuff
so
like that.
cute.
Well, there can't
But
be now,
ult-
right?
No,
Wait
there
a
can
second.
be. Just yeah, what's
Can
up?
I want to know what we think about this, assuming the bill is in whatever spirit it's supposed to be in, right? Like, 'cause this is drifting into like a debate about big government, small government, who should be making these decisions. But I wrote the question because I want to know what decisions you guys think they should be making, not how they should be making.
Well, that's a big government
Well,
government
like
question,
how they're
dude.
making them is kind of important, right? It's because that's kind of the process by which when we talk about laws, right?
But are you okay with a school or a state deciding that?
I think that if
kids are
like
not-
if you go to your school meetings and all of the parents there are like, hey, when we're doing curriculum here, like for our school, we don't want this particular thing taught at this school or whatever. I think that, I mean, they're your kids and it's your fucking government. You're the one that pays the taxes with your property of the school. I think that the parents ought to have the ability to say that. It feels a little bit strange to me to create such narrow directives from a state legislative body that has to filter down all the way down through.
But what
I
if they
guess,
say
like, a
that
level.
you can't learn about black people?
I mean,
Like,
like,
there is
we
a
can get
point-
into conversation about like protected classes, or if they say like you shouldn't learn math. Like, I mean, I'm in favor of like federal like standards that we should probably all know some level of math, reading, science, or whatever.
Okay.
Other people should talk. I'm sorry. I feel like we're going back and forth. Nick, I appreciate the responses.
Yeah, no problem.
Calvin
real
has entered the
quickly,
chat.
on the black subject, we have the 14th Amendment, which would prevent that in
Okay.
general. But yeah, again, it comes down to where you derive authority to do this. The school boards, the county boards, they don't have the authority to take from the parents. It has to come from the state. So the state makes the guidelines. And again, ultimately, our system may be flawed, but it's the system that we have was designed so that the states were the petri dishes, not the counties. And if you don't like it, you will always have the right to
Yeah,
educate
just
your
move.
children so long as
Just
so long
move.
as some conservatives get to have any sort of say and have a couple good lawyers laying around. But you can always pull your children out and homeschool them. You can always take your children to a private school. And in my wonderful world, you would actually have school choice, and the state would fund your ability to do that in the way that they do with public schools, and we could eliminate this problem entirely.
Build your own school, right, Nick?
Exactly, with the government money.
Calvin, you're libertarians. You can never pin them down. Calvin, you've joined the conversation. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Little
All
loud.
right. So yeah, the only person.
Wait, you're slightly too loud. Is that?
He said slightly, but he really means you're absolutely fucking too loud. Way too
I
loud.
turn it down. Is it better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, cool. Yeah. So hi everyone.
Calvin, white
I think
people.
The only person I've talked to like face to face.
Whoa,
Buck. What's up,
whoa.
Buck?
Hey, kiddo. How's
What's
it
going on? Not much. But
Cutie.
yeah, sorry. I just saw your invite to join. I started watching. I was like pretty busy with school today, but I wanted to join in. Like, you know, I saw Buck was really the only. I mean, I haven't talked to most of you, but Buck was the only other trans person here, and I felt like you're having a Trans-cel. You're having a panel of canceled trans people. I'm the guy to talk to. So
That's right.
yeah.
Thank you for coming.
This guy.
Yeah.
How did you get transled, Calvin?
Oh God. You want a list?
Obama.
Like honestly, most of it was like just for cringy, like anti-SJW videos I made when I was like 17, 18, where I said people couldn't identify. It didn't make sense for people to identify as autism gender. And like there's some legitimate stuff. I stopped making videos kind of a minute ago, but I do like from time to time hop in like on my channel and do like lives and stuff. I don't know. Namely, oh god, no, I don't know if I can name drop certain people. There's this trans creator who's a trans woman. She just says crazy things, never had one good take. She says
Do
crazy things all the
Who?
Her name is Demon Mama. But you know, I really love her.
Absolutely fucking base. I don't know
I'm
who the fuck you are, but
scared. I'm scared to
you're
name drop
base.
her.
Hell
I don't
yeah.
know. I don't know if she will. I don't know if she'll be summoned by just her name. But
That's
she just
transfer
said
culture
some
for you.
crazy things about like self-diagnosis, and I like.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know, I mean,
Demon Mom is fucking insane.
Haven't kept up with me since I stopped making YouTube videos, but I'm in college and I'm like pretty much I'm dual enrolled in undergrad and my master's right now. I'm getting my degree in applied counseling. So I with mental health like self-diagnosis, I have like a lot of opinions on that. And I did not like her opinions. So
Okay, MrGirl, I'm gonna throw this one to you. This is the next question. Feel free to jump in, Calvin. The specter of suicide looms over discussions about trans people's access to hormones and surgeries, including teenagers. MrGirl, you compared this aspect of trans activism to a romantic partner threatening suicide in an abusive relationship. Is this
Hilarious.
suicide a manipulation tactic, or is it important to raise awareness of suicidality in trans populations?
It's a manipulation tactic.
I think so.
Yes, I think that it's one thing is talking about suicidality tends to increase suicidality, which is so when you're raising awareness about it, you're also making it worse, which makes it kind of tricky to talk about. And like even in this panel, I want to be sort of like hopefully careful with how we address it. But I do, yeah, I think that a lot of like thought trees end at, well, if you don't do this, you know, these people or these kids will kill themselves. And and then that turns into like straw man arguments where you're like, if you're arguing against this, or if you're questioning it, even if you're not willing to accept this new truth or new reality, you are killing people, or you're complicit in murdering them. And yeah, I do think it's manipulative. And if
Calvin,
if what
smite
you're
it down.
saying
Let's
is
go.
true, like it basically boils the whole like ideology and advocacy down to like these people will be really, 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 really upset if you don't do what they want. And like for us to sign on wholesale on changing our definitions of what women and what men are and what is appropriate for kids to be taught or medications to take and surgeries, I think that it should stand up on its own without the fear of
Yeah.
of
I think that's generally better, but that's an easier thing for some to do than others.
I think your
Oh, and
point about it being used as a straw man is true. Like that is a true thing that that trans people do. They will use that but I do think that it's important to not understate like the fact that there is a really high
a
suicide
staggering
attempts
number
rate for
there,
trans
yeah.
people, and so you kind of have to walk this line between like, okay, let's address that this is a thing, and that there is like a high percentage of trans people who are trying to kill themselves, and that's why we need to give them access to transition and to like discuss trans people and like understand that it's like a real thing. But at the same time, I do think that like there are trans people who will abuse
Weaponize it, yeah.
There's
So
100%
I don't
trans people who do that. I have read on boards where kids tell other kids, if you just tell your parents you're going to kill yourself, that I've actually read it. Said this is what you need to tell your parents so you can start to
Oh,
be a
yeah.
binder,
And I've
so
seen
you can
things on
start to-
TikTok,
so
Buck.
they are actually speaking to them, within the community about how to do that. There's definitely a high rate of suicidal tendencies, but I do not think that there is a high rate
Bro.
of actual suicide. So I think that it's kind of like messes with people's understanding of what that means. They might, it comes off as we're all killing ourselves. That's not true. We
Yeah,
definitely have a high rate of suicidal ideation, most definitely. But I also think it's manipulative, and it can become manipulative. If you don't give me my hormones, I'm going to kill myself. Or you don't let me get my binder, I'm going to kill myself. That's an actual manipulation towards parents, and they're being taught that.
I also just don't. I think I don't agree with part of that, Kalvin, where you're saying, like anorexia, as far as I know, is the disorder with the highest death rate out of all psychological disorders, and that doesn't mean we should give anorexics what they want.
But anorexia and dysphoria are different in the sense that anorexia, like they're these are you can't really make a parallel between
Ooh, Calvin's
I
a
think they're the
counselor,
same.
so he's gonna
but they're
fuck him.
not.
I'm not even making a parallel. I think they're literally the same.
Okay, so can you like explain how you think they're the same? Because like I think if they were the same thing, the literature and the DSM would have those two
Reflect
things do
that.
the same thing. They're not.
Yes.
They haven't caught up to
I
Mr.
disagree
Girl
with
yet.
that statement.
They're behind
No, you're right, Destiny.
by about 100 years. They're the same in the sense that you look in the mirror, you can't stand what you see, and you want to
Keep hating your life then,
change it.
working class
But
and
This
really,
is where
really badly.
People conflate people mix up gender dysphoria and body dysmorphia a lot.
Mhm.
Body
Yeah, I think
It's
dysmorphia
happened twice
they're
now.
the same.
But
I
they're
think
not,
that-
because body dysmorphia is when you look in the mirror and you're delusional. You're seeing something that's not there. Like if I were to look in the mirror and think I looked morbidly obese, right? Like 300 pounds, right? And I genuinely see that in the mirror, that's body dysmorphia. Gender dysphoria is like it's strange because it's the complete opposite. It's like pre-transition. You look in the mirror and you see what's actually there. You're not delusional. You're not seeing something that's not actually there, but it's not right. It's like you're looking in the
I understand that some of the mechanisms by how they're experienced are different, but ultimately I think someone's looking in the mirror, they're really unhappy with what they see, and they want to do something to make themselves happy with what they see. And so when we have an anorexic 15-year-old, we say, yeah, we know you want to do
Yeah,
that.
I can't wait until it brings it into makeup and saying, oh yeah, and people shouldn't wear makeup either, because they look in the mirror and they don't like what they see. I'd love to see Calvin's reaction to that.
And you're going to be really, really unhappy if you don't. But like you can't. Like you have to find other ways to accept your body or cope with this or whatever. And
But you can treat anorexia. You can overcome anorexia. With gender dysphoria, the research literature shows like gender transition is the most effective way of overcoming gender dysphoria.
yeah, if there was a way to surgically make somebody look like they're 80 pounds without harming them or killing them, that would probably help with anorexia too. But I guess I don't think
the
that
issue
would be
is Calvin's
desirable.
saying is that wouldn't help because even girls, I've known anorexic people, two of them, even girls that are anorexic, there is no surgery that will help because they always feel like they're overweight. Like they'll be like 80 pounds.
Mhm.
Like
Eat
5'7",
yes.
looking in
Yeah.
like, oh god, like I'm so
so
fat.
to me that
Where there is no like eating dysphoria like euphoria, where it's like, oh my god, my body looks so good. Whereas for trans people, ideally, if they've gotten like a good enough surgery and they pass, they do look in the mirror like, oh my god, I actually feel like I look like what I feel like.
I guess I just see the whole the trans advocacy movement as a whole as
It's like
this
running from something.
compulsive, never satisfied, always digging, always wanting more.
Always
more
running,
definition.
always running from
No,
what
it's
you
not,
see in
it's
the
not
mirror.
all trans people. It's not all anorexic people too. Like there are people who really do just want to lose weight and be really skinny, not to the point where they're
But
like.
we
But
know
they're
the
not anorexic,
etiology.
right?
There's
True,
the
yeah, I guess-
etiology of gender dysphoria is we don't really fully know what the etiology of it is. Whereas with anorexia, there's a lot more like understanding of what the etiology of that is, and there's like documented treatment of it, like without and like therapy. Like you go to therapy, you can't like conversion therapy, talk therapy doesn't work for.
Yo,
trans
Calvin's
people.
fucking based as
Whereas
shit. What
over time-
what the actual
I
fuck?
just don't believe
I don't
so.
think it works for anorexic people either. You
It
just
doesn't
gotta
work for
take
fucking
a-
anybody.
Okay, can
All
you
talk
listen to me for a
therapy
sec?
does is make you like
Anorexia is
learn
one of the
how-
hardest. I will say, I'll concede this. Anorexia is one of the, like, statistically one of the most difficult disorders. It's like the most pervasive. Like it's hard to treat, but it can be treated. People can
Look, I
overcome.
just my point is that if you take a person who has a disorder, normally they don't decide their own course of treatment. Usually they're like everyone with a disorder wants something that is like weird and different from what most people want. They usually want to do something that looks insane to the rest of us. And most of those disorders we respond by saying, "Hey, we love you, but you can't do that. Just
But
stop.
what
You
about
can't do
someone-
that," especially if you're a kid. But with trans people, when someone has dysphoria, we say, what do you want? Like what do you want on the like pharmacy shopping list? We'll give you anything you want. We'll do anything we can do to make you feel comfortable in your body. Whereas like with every other teenager, we just say like, yeah, you have to be uncomfortable.
But they don't have to be
We're all
uncomfortable. We have
uncomfortable.
surgeries.
Yeah, I
They don't
transitioned
have to
out-
be. Like,
For context, I transitioned at 15. Like, I socially
Yeah.
transitioned at 15. I started T at 16. I got top surgery at 17. There has not been 1 second of my I'm 21 now. There's not been 1 second of my life where I ever regretted it, never thought back to anything.
Oh well,
I
if you're already 21, then you fucking know everything, don't you? Listen, I don't want to I don't want to argue. I don't want to argue with you about your own medical decisions in your life.
No,
okay?
you're right.
You do.
But I try
you.
to be accountable and introspect a lot. This is something I introspect about a lot and keep myself accountable. And
Okay.
obviously I'm here. I'm not trying to argue.
Okay.
I'm trying to
argue
have
with him. Calvin, he's literally saying you
interest-
shouldn't
I-
exist. That's what he's saying. If Mr. Girl had it his way, you wouldn't be allowed because Mr. Girl doesn't believe in any sort of medical transitioning before the age of 18. He doesn't believe in any puberty and anything like that.
That's true.
I guess
I don't believe in it
Why
either.
do you believe that if it works? But why if there's people like me who it works for, and I'm not the only person? Like why? And there's why?
It worked
believe
for
it.
me. I transitioned 30 years ago.
Okay.
It worked
And-
for me.
Calvin weaponizing
believe anything.
their or his
Well, I mean, okay, so
I'm
so
not
Identity
I'm
here
not-
is
I'm not
rough.
sitting here saying like, oh, like my life
The
is
word
great.
You just
Worse.
got
Your life's
Mr.
great. Like,
Girl. Oh shit.
Everything, life sucks. Nick was right on that, and it's all a mess, and nothing works. You're gonna regret it. And if you didn't transition, you'd regret that too.
On my
That's
deathbed,
right.
You're
I
gonna
don't
you're gonna
regret it.
regret your whole
on
fucking
my
life.
deathbed, on my deathbed, I will remember. I swear to you, Mr. Girl, I will. If I'm 80 years
Good.
old, I will say, Mr. Girl, I didn't regret it. That will be my
Good.
final word.
I want my smug face to be the last thing that goes through your mind before
My
you
mind
lose out of
before
existence
I'm
forever.
So life sucks. Is that the?
That's so good.
I'm
Life
just saying that-
doesn't have to suck. You're being nihilistic. Life doesn't have to
No,
suck.
no, I don't think it's nihilistic to just say like yeah, we all wish our bodies were different, and I don't know.
Why not let
that
people? Here's my thing: is like if it
Okay, do you think it would be weird if every high school boy started taking steroids to be more muscular so they could look more like Captain America?
That would be weird.
Like that would be weird, right?
I mean, it's not necessary.
Why not?
Because what if they
Because
really
they're not,
want?
like, they
What if they're gonna kill themselves if they don't, Kel?
I mean, to be
And
honest,
they literally do.
And they literally do.
to be honest with you, the thing is that if there's a high school boy who's gonna kill himself if he doesn't take steroids, there's an underlying issue probably when it comes to like body dysmorphia again, because men struggle with body dysmorphia too.
Right. And,
And-
you want to
but
define
again,
trans.
Within
you want to define
within
gender
the
dysphoria
psychological
as a.
literature, body dysphoria can be
Yeah,
very-
I will burn that literature. You want
I
to
will
take?
pull it up
you
for
want
you.
to take? I don't fucking care. You want to take gender dysphoria and define it as a bedrock psychological issue that there is nothing underneath. There's nothing to treat or even to look at. We can't like lift it up and peek at.
Oh, I
like,
think
well,
we
why,
should.
Why
Oh
do you
no,
feel-
there's
okay.
definitely something
Okay,
under
okay,
there.
okay. But when it comes to it, but when I describe a high school boy wanting to look like Captain America, then all of a sudden your mind fills with explanations of why that might be and how looking like Captain America, while very satisfying.
Well, no, that's
even
Calvin's
up to
entire
maybe all
point.
the way to his deathbed,
Oh my god.
might not actually be the ideal solution, and that maybe the ideal solution is a societal shifting in the
Like at this
family.
point, like usually I'm not too much a fan of weaponizing your personal thing in like a panel like this to kind of get your point across. But in which Calvin has explained, it's like started socially transitioning at 15, then went on puberty blocker 16, and then I should go back and get it, but detailed like a 3-year kind of step process in which it was like there was this introspection, and like the same process would have to happen to these Captain America kids.
If thing within himself of accepting where he's at. So it's so like yes, some people are gonna want it so badly that they get the fake boobs, they do the testosterone, they whatever they buy that expensive sports car that they want during their midlife crisis or whatever. Some people take the leap, but I think what maybe we can all agree is that progressives are moving that gap to help you leap over it and making it smaller and easier and younger.
Well, I think that first
encouraging.
of all,
That's right.
transitioning is a decision that shouldn't be taken lightly. All these fucking people
That's
that
right.
get all these. Listen to me, bro.
That's right.
This is where me and you differ, Buck, though, because the thing is,
We
okay,
do.
be
We
very-
do.
But but we both can see the importance in it, and so like let me just like get.
You have to realize we come from different generations. I have a different.
Yeah,
way
well,
of
let
thinking,
Kalvin
I have a
fucking
different way
talk,
of
Buck.
being, I have a different idea of why transition and what transition is about. I have a whole different idea of it than the younger generation, and that's why.
Okay, well,
Kalvin
let's
and I
hear
are
the
both
younger
buddies, but we just have
generation's
we have
ideas.
disagreements, which is awesome. And I love that we can have this conversation as trans people. This is what people need to see. We have totally different ideas, but we still can be friends around it and understand
My
it.
opinion is
But
that like you guys are saying like okay, you're coming to the conclusion. Okay, well there's all these like issues with medical transition and stuff. So we should just we should bar it. Like we should just not have kids transition. We should just But I think that the solution is more like let's go back to kind of how it was with like let's focus on the mental health aspect because there are different
That's
there
right.
are different groups of trans people. There are trans people who will benefit from medical transition,
Yes.
and there is no way to convert them. I don't care what you say, Mr. Girl. There are trans people where
I'm
and
not
this-
saying you. No. I'm saying convert them to being miserable like
no.
me.
You're saying
Convert them to accepting that they're not going to have the body they want. They're not going to have the life they
That's
want.
right.
They're going to look in the mirror every day and feel some distant sadness. Or
But
maybe
why should I have to live like
acute-
that? You know
because
what I
that's
mean?
because that's fucking life.
Type
But I
1
was-
diabetes is life. Like, I don't know
But I
what
was
you mean when
able
you
to
say
live like
that.
this,
what-
and I'm so much happier.
Their autoimmune diseases is their life. Like, if we can alleviate something medically, why would we not? We would never.
I guess I just
accept
don't.
this.
I guess I just don't. I don't believe that it is medicated.
Yeah,
I don't,
okay,
I
so
don't
here-
believe it is.
wait,
I don't
okay.
believe it is actually alleviated.
So
I
yes,
think
that's
that
the thing. So you need to be more clear because
Yes.
you make it sound like you're agreeing when in reality you just don't think that trans people are like a real thing. You think that it's just like a mind fuck thing that they can get over or just accept and deal with. But it's not like a unique thing to trans people. It's just like part of the human
but
condition
that's
of
not
life being
specific
shitty.
to trans people. I don't believe that any of these things are like a real, like an autoimmune disease. That's a real thing, for sure. And the trans advocacy is to try to make us think of a psychological state or disorder, depending on who you ask, into a similar thing. So I think, I do. That's why I'm listing other like psychiatric or psychological conditions because I see it as similar to that, not similar to diabetes.
But see, the problem with this is that the trans issue, and I think this is kind of what you're getting at, Mr. Girl. The trans issue is a sacred cow. It is unassailable. It is set aside. It is somehow different. And then when you mention that, I'm not really sure how it's different. The onus was instantly put on you to prove that it wasn't different, rather than any evidence that it is. And I mean, we treat it differently, sure, but I haven't ever seen any reasoning as to why it's treated differently, other than, well, it's in the DSM, so a bunch of people got together and decided it was different. But I mean,
A bunch of
fall
people?
in line with what you're
What?
saying, that this is an issue
Oh,
as
Rekieta,
treated
boy.
with these other issues.
At least
and
Mr. Girl doesn't do this
issues
shit.
aren't treatable with- or we
Oh,
don't deem it
fuck.
socially acceptable to treat these
Oh, he
diseases
kinda
with
does.
surgery
He
or
does do a lot of
hormones or
medical
anything else.
disinformation.
There's a super chat from Cynthia, my favorite liberal, who said that her 14-year-old is in volleyball and wants to take hormones to get taller. Why aren't we allowing this stuff? Why don't we have these things for kids? And I think it's because we are concerned with the decisions that we're allowing children to make when we don't allow them to make other decisions. I mean, if you said, look, there are some kids who are really, really poor, and the best thing to do would be to give them a credit card so they could buy food. I think that we go, wait, but we don't give kids credit cards. And it's like, well, why not? Well, they're not capable of making appropriate financial decisions. I mean, I would rather deal with debt than long-term medical issues. So to me, this is where I'm seeing the problem. This is a sacred cow issue, and that's kind of the whole theme of the night, right? Trans-cel culture is the sacred cow.
I think that
Yes,
there
and
are
that-
some.
yep.
Okay. I think that there are some issues where there are some things where we accept that like this is like a baseline thing that we ought to be able to live with. Like we have some base expectation of what people should have to deal with and like the I guess, the privileges or the existence that ought to be afforded to some people. If some kid came up to you and he was like, listen, my life is miserable. I really need like the newest, hottest Nikes or Yeezys or whatever. We would look at that kid and we would go, you know what? Like, I don't think in society that you should be guaranteed the right to have your favorite pair of Yeezys, or to the whatever the lady's daughter's name. Like, you don't need to be guaranteed the right to be a certain height to play volleyball. Like, I think that you can exist in society and be just fine without being guaranteed. But if a kid was like, hey, like, I go to school and I get lunch there. When I go home, like, I can't eat because my parents can't afford food. Food is probably something that we should provide people. Like, so at some level, there's going to be some subjectivity to what we decide you have to live with. But when it comes to something like gender dysphoria, if we do have the
Do I
ability
smell communism?
to
I do.
absolutely nothing I said had anything to do with communism.
Like
if
what?
You have a JD. I'm sure you must have taken at least one poli-sci class or something. Okay, so
Oh yeah. Well, no, we should just give people food all the time, right? Like that makes sense.
we do that in
And
the
then
United
probably
States.
water,
We
right?
do
Like,
that
if
in the
you find
United
the
States.
water,
And
you should
every
take it.
single
That's not how this
in
is.
every single developed country in the
Keep it on
world,
track.
this is what is done. Yes, we do not let people starve on the street traditionally. I'm sorry if that upsets you, but yeah, we've made that decision in society that people probably should be starving to death. But
That
yeah, when it
happens in
comes
LA still.
when it comes to
Yeah.
in LA they choose it.
still
Okay, those
starve,
people are
it's
fucking
amazing.
crazy. Okay, there's a reason I left that godforsaken city. But when it comes to things like gender dysphoria, if there is a way to alleviate it medically, we do have processes for it. It just seems a little bit unnecessarily cruel to be like, no, you're gonna have to just go ahead and live with this. Like, I think having the right to live as the gender that you see yourself as, and to not have that incongruence that it doesn't seem like people choose. It's not just some shit that you're just like, man, fuck, I want to be fucking trans today because suicide sounds awesome. It seems like you probably should have the right to make these decisions and medically transition should you have the ability to do so, when we do have the technology to do so.
When you turn 18.
But then it's too late. There's no point in
It's not
Why-
too late.
It-
That's not too
it-
late.
For-
Lots of people transition.
For male to
Yeah.
female, it absolutely is,
I
Buck.
transitioned in
We
my
all-
late
we all-
20s.
Buck, shut the fuck
Hold
up.
on. Buck,
Buck,
you're driving me crazy.
stop.
For women that have, for trans women that have male puberties, you're looking at potentially over 100,000.
Yeah, I think you're wrong, Buck. I don't know why, but I got this inkling that maybe you're just
A lot of
wrong.
that is because people feel like passing is gate kept behind money, right? FFS is incredibly
No.
expensive. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
not why.
Well,
Well,
that's one of the reasons why, is because it is like, right, go ahead.
So first off, I don't necessarily think that's true. But that being said, a lot of people transition later in age and are perfectly okay with it and have a great, awesome life like me. So I don't necessarily think you have to transition at an early age in order to be able to just live your life.
No, but the
beautifully.
utility
Yeah,
there
it's
is
a struggle.
what-
Yeah, a lot of
not
people
worth
struggle.
throwing
Also,
away
is
entirely.
struggle a bad thing? I don't necessarily think so.
But it
That
depends.
being said, you have to remember we are not monolithic. We are
I agree-
all
I
two
agree
different
with
people.
I agree
The
with
way
that.
come to it,
We
some
are
people don't
not a
realize they're
monolith.
trans until a later age.
Sure, and
Some
if they don't,
people
that's
go-
great. But like,
Mhm.
Buck, if I saw you, I would just instantly assume you're a man. I would, no question about it. But there are a lot of trans women that don't
Thank
have
you.
that
But you
privilege.
keep going back to trans women.
Well, because
not trans men.
because trans men typically, like, you can get away with looking a bit more effeminate in society, and people aren't going to call you a woman. Nobody, like, it's just not typically a thing. Whereas even Lauren here earlier was saying, like, sometimes people accuse her of being a man. I think that when it comes to puberty, I think that, like, the female puberty is generally a bit easier to transition from female to male if you've gone through it. But if you've gone
No.
through,
That's not true.
When it
We
comes
can
to-
It's
fuck-
easier to add
when
to
it
your
comes
body
to
than
externally
just subtract.
passing, I think that trans men can have a much easier time passing than trans women generally. Maybe not every time, right? And for evidence of that, facial masculinization surgery is like I think like $5,000, and the female version is like $50,000, right? It's like 10 times more. It's so much more. So I think that in general, this is why I keep going back to trans women. I'm not saying fuck trans men, we exclude trans men, but it's easier if you go.
Also, you can talk about Adam's apples. You can talk about voices. You can talk about height. All these things,
It's
unless
just
you have like
different. It's just a different
wild,
thing we have to deal with than what trans women have. Now, I
wild
understand
medical
your-
intervention.
your
It is something that
analogy
you can't
there,
really
having to have big
deal with.
shoulders and all of those things. But I still know tons of trans
Take a check.
women who have dealt with it and have been perfectly okay with it and said that they are okay that they didn't have puberty blockers. So my
That's great for
experience
them.
tends to be
Yeah,
different.
it's
I think
fantastic.
Every
different than
trans
yours.
person would say, if given the chance, they would have transitioned younger if they could have. Almost everyone.
That's not
Okay, but
necessarily true
every
because I
cis
think some people
person-
didn't actually understand what was going on with them at that age and then realized at a later age. But that being said, again, we're all different and that's why we can't it's so hard to have this conversation because we're always put in this more, like,
Is it?
zone that we're all
It's not really that
exactly the
hard.
same. And some people don't even want to transition to look like how I look anymore. They just want to be trans and not necessarily a pass as a man or a woman.
I think we all agree those people suck, right? Everybody on this panel.
Yeah.
Everybody on this panel fucking hates those people, okay? Yeah.
I can't.
Everybody hates.
No, Destiny, I can't say that kind of stuff
Okay,
anymore.
maybe you don't, but
Calvin
fuck
gonna
those
get in
people.
trouble. I can. No, it's all
I
good,
just
but,
want to say for
it's
the
just
record,
a different space. We really need to recognize that.
like,
we come
I
to
don't
this
understand why
differently.
the conclusion has to be though. Like, let's stop people under 18, all people under 18 from transitioning, and not okay. Well, let's get way more like concise. With,
Yeah,
like,
let's
the mental health
get more
procedures
information
and
out
the
there.
therapy
Let's
and like ways that we can be affirmative
Yeah.
and say, okay, let's have therapists that are respectful of people's identities and don't like try to do conversion therapy, but also try to explore like what else could be
That's
going
right.
on before. Like when I started T at 16, I went to therapy for a year. I lived as male for a year beforehand, and I went to therapy for 6 months.
Okay, this motherfucking
And
spitting.
if I like, I urge every trans person I ever
Keep
meet
hating
to
your
just
life then,
live
working class
socially
Andy.
transition for a year and go to therapy for at least 6 months and go to a therapist who's not just gonna like affirm and not think about other things. So my therapist always called me Kalvin, but she talked with me about everything in my life to make sure not only that like I wouldn't regret it later, but to make me feel more confident in the decision, and my parents to feel more confident. Like my parents talked to her. We had the whole family come in. Like it was a whole thing. And that's not required, but it should be. So why don't we
Yeah,
focus?
I-
Because you're gonna have way less people.
At the very least, if it's not required, the massive utility there, should be explored. And this is how you explore it: is socially transitioning and then having these having therapy in this, of course.
Passing through the system and detransitioning and all these problems if we focus on the mental health care instead of just banning all kids from transitioning.
That's right,
Okay,
but that's the problem. We're pushing people through too fast. You can get hormones in 5 minutes on the internet now. Like, how is that even possible? How are we not implementing that?
I have a question from chat. How does a therapist figure out if a complete transition is appropriate for an individual?
Okay, so there's diagnostic criteria for gender dysphoria. So obviously you touch on that criteria as in the DSM, and also oftentimes
Wait a second. I think the question is more how should
I think
figure out, not
well,
how
I-
does, how should.
I think that there should be like just discussions about like what your goals are. Why do you want to transition? How are you feeling? Like if you were because here's the thing for me, my transition was never about. It was about how other people view me, but it's also not. Like if I truly believe that if I was on a deserted island in the middle of the ocean, I would have still felt uncomfortable. I still wanted to transition. It's not when I'm thinking about getting bottom surgery and stuff, right? It's not for other people. It's not for sexual purposes. Of course, that's nice, but for me with bottom surgery, it's like more about like I don't have to shower in the dark anymore. That's an awful fucking thing. Shower in the dark,
Yeah.
and it's not. I'm not this.
Wow.
I don't have like body image issues and with body dysphoria. It's
Yeah.
literally. It's not.
Yeah,
it's a new
sometimes being able to go to school and being able to look at your reflection in the mirror, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe there's utility there to explore.
type of thing with body dysphoria is it's just that you see something that's not there and it should be, and it's not, and like the way that you would like, and again, it's like so complex how you would do an evaluation, and again, it takes months and months and months of talking to a client. But I think that like the answer is to focus on, okay, let's have conversations about what are the questions we should ask, what are the best, most effective ways, and not just like in my opinion and your opinion, but like let's do some research, some psychological research, and look to the literature on effectiveness and stuff, because it is documented. And I feel
Efficacy
like that is the best way, like empirical
is
evidence.
the word,
That is
but
the best
Also, it's
way.
I love you, Kalvin.
individual. You have to understand, again, it's individual. So this doctor's dealing with this patient, and that's in an individual space. And I do think that we can't, again, say, well, how can a doctor diagnose a person with gender?
Obviously, it's
You
not
have
going to be a
understand
blanket,
each
Buck.
individual is different,
God
and
damn it,
doctors
Buck.
have different ideas and different understanding of that person and make that choice. But I think ultimately it comes up to the person to make that final decision.
Like everyone is different, but Buck, I'm gonna be honest. Like I feel
Yeah.
like the underlying mechanism of my dysphoria and your dysphoria, there's probably a similar, like whatever the root of it is, we still don't know. Me and you are the same transition. We don't regret it, and here we are now. We would never go back. For trans people like me and you, there has to be some sort of underlying mechanism.
I agree.
And there would be a way to diagnose that. There should be a way, and there kind of is. It's not perfect.
There is.
But you know what I mean? Like I have a gender dysphoria diagnosis. There's ways to to do that. There is like some sort of like everyone's different in their own way, but in other ways, there is this disorder that we know exists, and we see it in different people.
I I guess like the question comes down to like if and this is weird because Mr. Girl and Nick kind of have. It's hard to tell if you guys think that trans people are like a real phenomenon at all. If you
No,
do think,
not really.
okay,
I don't.
okay.
No, I'm not in the. In the
How?
same- I'm in
No,
the-
wait. I just
Well,
want to say
curious.
because we're having these conversations right now. Like we're having an argument with Mr. Girl. Like how do we figure out if they're trans or they're? But he doesn't even believe that trans is like truly a concept. So that discussion is like worthless. Is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Well, you do.
What I believe that trans. What do you mean?
But like, how could you say that? Like, how could you say that when like me and Buck are sitting right in front of you, telling you that's not the case, and like all of the evidence and empirical, psychological, it disagrees with you. Like you can,
Wait,
you can say.
do you believe that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior?
The religion thing. Let's go.
Okay.
Based.
Wait, Nick.
I've been waiting. I've been waiting
Yeah. Okay.
2 hours and 14 minutes for this.
He's right here. in
Yeah,
front
but
of you.
Jesus
How
isn't
did-
here. That's the
Jesus
difference.
in there. That's
Yeah, but
when
my
it
point
comes
is
to
that, like,
Jesus,
you have a
I'm
belief
neutral.
system. You have a belief
there's as much
system
proof
about
that Jesus Christ is the Lord and Savior as much as there is proof that He's not. With trans
whatever.
people,
you can't. You're not going to change my opinion.
No proof
about,
that he's not.
You're not gonna change my like.
That's a
view of
negative, that's
gender
weird.
by yelling at me right now. Listen.
If there was
My-
ever
my
a place
point-
where Jesus wasn't, it would be not in this conversation.
My point
Anywhere
is-
two or more are gathered, even
My point-
trans. He said it.
So to me, transness is kind of, or gender ideology is kind of like a religion. It's a way of thinking about things that I.
That's
It's a,
It's not.
well, I know that's fine. I understand that you believe it is the literal truth. And I'm using Nick
Right,
as an
you- so you
example
can
of
have your
I'm using
opinion,
Nick
but-
as an example. Wait, hang on. I'm using Nick as an example of somebody who believes in a different truth from you. You can see him sitting there. You can see that he doesn't believe the world is the way you think it is, and you think the world is the way he doesn't think it is, and yet we're all still in the same room talking to each other.
That's right.
Okay, so let me make my point real quick. Let me just say what I'm saying. With Jesus, it's not that it's not that Jesus isn't my Lord and Savior, right? I'm just gonna go with religion. And like, so wait, Nick. So I'm assuming you're religious. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. I'm the best Christian there ever was.
Well, let's take someone who like I would say that I'm just like kind of neutral on religion. I can't disprove it and I can't prove it equal amounts. Like there's no proof that God is real. There is no way for me to say that it is for certain. Like you know what I mean?
So
I'm
you're
neutral.
equally Muslim, Jewish.
Well, I mean, I
Christian,
Oh, yeah.
there's no
Sign
way
me
to
up,
prove it. There's no way to
everything.
study it. There's no empirical like way to.
Okay, so yeah, so if somebody walks up to you in the street and they say, "Are you Muslim?" You're like, "I don't know."
I would probably just say like
I can't
don't-
answer that because I don't have proof.
I would say no. No because I'm not like I just not am not any religion. You know what I mean?
Yes,
I'm just-
I do. I'm also not religious, so I
Yeah.
know just what you mean. But so that's how I feel when people are like, "So do you believe that you have like a gender inside you that like could maybe not match up with your body?" I'm
I mean,
like,
you
"No,
can have your
I don't."
opinion and what I mean, but like
Yes.
all of the I was supposed to get actual research and empirical evidence that goes against that. Like you know what I mean? So like
I don't know if we
everybody can have.
understand
No,
what
I
empirical
don't-
means here.
I'm sorry, I might be.
But honestly, it doesn't even matter. To be honest, I don't really care if that's how you feel about it, and I actually respect that you feel that way, and it's totally okay. It's not going to make or break you, and that's what I think people need to
Fine.
stop being so
I don't, though,
sensitive
because
about
this is
stuff.
the
No, you're
problem.
not sensitive. You're not sensitive. I'm just saying, in general, the trans community gets so weird when people don't accept us. It's like, so what? Guess
Well,
what?
the
People
somewhat
aren't gonna
because the
accept
No,
us.
rejection
but
means like
trans
outlawing
people-
drugs and care and
Trans
stuff
people
for trans people.
require
Who
support.
cares?
Trans people require
Yeah, it's
support,
that
not
affirming.
people didn't.
It's the affirming. It's the cultural being able to socially transition before medically transition. All these things are vastly important before you even get to the medical care, and like that's Calvin Destiny's point.
Support you, Buck, you wouldn't have ever been able to transition. There
I
wouldn't have been no
transitioned when
therapist.
there was nobody supporting me, my friend.
You
so
had
that's
to.
not
You
true.
had to have a
But I
cis
had
doctor that
to,
gave you
so
the
those are-
hormones.
Wait,
But
I think Steven's making a good point where he's saying that it's not there's two different issues. There's one, do you believe in it enough to support me with what I want or need for myself, my advocacy, or at least to leave me alone? And then secondly, do you believe in it enough to pledge that you believe in it? And I feel like that this one is the one I'm more concerned about, where I feel like I'm being asked to pledge that I agree with this narrative, and if I don't pledge it, and even if I'm quiet about it, if I don't put pronouns in my bio or whatever, increasingly I'm in danger.
And
But, like,
that's what I
saying
get
that you don't
upset
wanna
about.
put your
I'm very
pronouns
upset
in your
about that
bio.
because I don't think that it should be that way. I think you should have every right to think how you want to think, and that just should not affect me in any way, shape, or form. So I do have a problem with that, and I don't think you need to accept it and be okay with it if you're not. And it shouldn't bother us as trans people. We should be like, okay, cool. You don't get
I
it.
like
We're gonna take
generally
care of
agree,
ourselves
but
and
think
we're
there's a
gonna move
bigger
forward.
point that
But
Kalvin's
I
getting
think
at.
there has to be varying levels of what acceptance means. Right?
Well, yeah,
That's the issue.
I'm speaking specifically about him, right? So of course, in the whole world, we have to educate the world to say we are here. Now, you don't have to necessarily agree with it, but what you do need to do is open up a little space for us, and that's what we need to understand. That's called coexisting. But that I do not, in any way, shape, or form, feel like I have to change your mind in order for me to live this life. I feel
Mhm.
like I respect that you don't agree with my choice, but I think we can sit here and have a conversation and maybe even have a beer. It doesn't really even matter.
Yeah.
That's where I stand.
I don't drink.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I would.
Neither do I.
I would, I would have
Based.
some peanuts with you.
I feel like it might be important to delineate something here because I think I'm getting put into this fun box, which is great and all, but my ultimate position is I don't care what you do as an adult to yourself. Like I could give a shit less if transgenderism is real or not real. It's irrelevant. I don't care if you're Muslim.
But-
I don't care what like you
but-
whatever. Maybe you're an ice cream fetishist and you like to bathe in some wonderful vanilla. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is
Kind of sounds like you do care.
the moment we start putting kids in an institution in which they cannot escape, and then we have someone agendizing something. I don't care what it is. And for anyone, let me head off the argument that, well, parents can indoctrinate children too. Yes, a parent indoctrinating a child to anything will always be 100% less offensive than the state indoctrinating the kid to the same thing that the parent would. And so as long as that's there, that's where I have problems. Like as far as whether or not like trans is a real thing, I think we're getting off into the weeds on like empirical evidence and stuff like that. When I think largely it's completely irrelevant if we just take the approach of, you know, once you are outside of the protection of the state, then as like a, you know, sub 18-year-old person, which is what we've decided, then you do whatever the fuck you want. I don't care. But as long as we're going to have the state here, then people get to have input on the rules on what the state is going to do to protect its future citizenry. And I'm really concerned about a state that has any sort of program that could potentially be causing significant harm to its future citizenry, especially when we go outside the protections of the parental unit by passing
Dude, he's just
quote-unquote
schizo posting
affirming
though.
legislation that is less about affirming and more about concealing. Like,
But
again,
I think
Is there legislation that affirms?
whether it's a real thing that comes into play when you're talking about what you're teaching in school. So like,
I mean, I guess the like
evolution we
C16
teach in
shit,
school.
right? But
And so for that
not
to
my
work,
school. No, I'm just kidding.
for that to work, we have to have religious people kind of concede like the world was created in 7 days, but like not scientifically or not like literally. That's not like the actual truth we're going to teach in school. We're not going to say that's like, we're not going to attack it, and you can have church and you can have a separate space for that. And so I think what's
Ken Ham is calling me right now. He's super pissed.
I don't know who that is.
That's the guy who built that Ark, the Creation Museum.
Oh.
Sorry.
Great
religious
joke, dude.
Just got wrecked by a bunch of fucking atheist heathens.
Wait, did you say? Wait, what name did you say?
Ken Ham.
Oh, there's another guy called Kent Hovind, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I've debated that guy
I think
before. He's like a 6,000-year-old Earth, like flat Earth creationist or some shit. Like didn't? Oh,
Yeah,
they
he's
call
a
him the
ham
Dino
associate.
Doctor. Oh, okay, nice. Yeah, friendly dude. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Girl.
So we're trying to figure out, are we going to teach this gender ideology, trans ideology from my point of view or from Kalvin's point of view? It's just science. And so we do have to figure out, like, you have to indoctrinate kids with something. That's the thing. It's like when you teach kids something, you're indoctrinating them to believe one thing or another. And so I feel like we haven't really figured out how to all agree on this. And then we could split up state by state, but like that's weird too.
I mean, I don't think it needs to be like taught. Like you could just like I think that there could just be like, yeah, okay, trans people are a thing, they exist, and like I don't know. There was never
Well,
a time.
already
That's
that is
already
saying
like
something
really
different.
controversial to some people, right?
Yeah, I don't believe that.
then.
But there are trans people that exist.
Where does it even come in? Like,
Well, I
what-
believe
what
trans people
lesson
exist the way
in
Christians
Like if it's
exist.
if it's just mentioned in passing, like in school, I don't think that should be a problem. If it's just
Like you're walking down the
mentioned-
hallway and the teacher whispers, you like.
No, like if you're in class,
people.
like if you're in class, like if you're in like I don't know, if you're in like a health
Well,
class,
Okay,
like, it could
but when
come
you say
up.
trans people exist, you're saying trans people exist and they're right. Right? So
Yeah.
if you say
Yeah.
Christians exist,
I mean,
it's
Yeah.
like yes, Christians exist. Trans people, yes,
I
people
believe
believe all the
trans
people
people
believe all
are-
kinds of different things.
I believe
but
trans
you're
people are right
saying-
in the sense that like transitioning is the most effective proven method for treating gender dysphoria. I mean, that's what conversion therapy doesn't work. I don't know what you're proposing. Like there's like
He's
I'm not-
proposing
I
you just
think
live
you're
with it.
proposing
You
not
just-
to talk about
you
it
just
at all.
live with it
Like, this
It's a-
doesn't need to be
and deal
talked
with it
it's a,
sucking.
it's a no, I'm
Yeah.
fine with teaching about gender dysphoria
Uh-huh.
and like some people transition and that works for them sometimes
Uh-huh.
or maybe or well here's the studies here's the that's different from your gender is like a soul
Oh right, yeah.
and
I-
your gender is
I
in
agree
your
with you.
body and maybe you're not in the right body maybe that
I
and
agree
like
with
I
that's
think
what a lot of
there's
trans
not.
people
That's
believe.
not how I view my transness. You know what I mean?
Okay,
And-
that doesn't matter. That's not what I'm talking. I'm not talking about your view. I know you're cool. That's not what I'm talking about.
right, but there's a
I'm
lot.
saying I'm saying generally the way this is presented
Yeah.
is like the way you would teach an 8-year-old about gender and from the progressive narrative now is
Yeah.
you would say, hey, so when you were born, we thought that you were a boy,
Right.
okay, because you had a penis, but now you're old enough to start thinking. Are you a boy? We don't know. We have to get to know you and figure out who you really are.
I don't think
What- and-
anybody's
and-
talking about like doing that sort of implication to a kid,
Oh,
right?
they
I think
are. Oh, I believe.
okay. There
absolutely.
might be
They
some
absolutely
people, but
are.
literally nobody on this panel support. That's like the most extreme.
No, we don't support. I don't think. I don't.
No,
support
but that
I
it,
would
it's still
say
it's-
that honestly, trans like pushing that. I'm of the opinion that like a trans kid like throughout history, like if they're trans, they're gonna find out. You don't
They
have
know
to
they
like.
are.
Like you
Yeah.
have like for me personally at least like they didn't have to teach me about trans people for me
Well,
to
then
know
how
there
do
was
you
something
explain the
wrong.
explosion in trans
Oh,
identifying
there's
youth?
because I would love to talk about this. Thank you for asking. So,
Well,
Pete,
my-
sorry, that was too
God
much.
damn it.
No, but my
Okay.
counter argument is that if
You can't give a
expose-
counter argument when you haven't even heard his argument yet.
No, to what you just said is
Oh.
that I'm saying they'll just know of like no, you can I think you can talk people into being.
Oh, you can totally talk people
Okay,
into it. 100%.
So can I make a parallel to
Mhm.
you, Mr.
So they don't
can I
just
make,
don't just know.
Can I make a parallel to you, Mr. Girl?
Of course.
Okay, so DID. Look at DID, right? There's
Yes.
you see this explosion all of a sudden of people
Yeah.
and kids thinking they have DID, right? And it's like it is a social contagion because the disorder people who actually have DID, there's debate about whether it's a real thing, but I believe DID.
Well,
It's-
there is a debate. That's what I'm saying. We don't know.
Okay, but I
Or do we
believe that
teach
DID
some
is.
peop-
Can you let me finish really quick?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Just
let
keep
me
talking.
finish.
Talk over him.
Yeah. So okay, so DID I believe is like a Trump, like DID like in the way that it
He should turn up his gain.
trauma
Just talk over
generates
Mr. Girl.
The etiology of his trauma. However, there is a group of people who say they have DID who don't have trauma, and they are these people who are. It's like a social contagion. With trans people, the thing is that there are trans people out there who are now identifying as trans because of it becomes like a social contagion in social groups. The problem is that this was studied and marketed as ROGD, which is, I think, at a surface level, is a fair concept. There is a thing of like teen girls thinking that they're trans and they're not. But TERFs like and rad films kind of took that and kind of like went off the walls with it. When in reality, there's a way to address that phenomenon.
Is that a thing? RGOD. Trans. I did not. I did not mean that. Oh. Is that what they... Okay, whatever.
Without like coming to these like extreme conclusions that like okay, well this is a problem. So like you don't have to make it turfy. You know what I mean? You
No,
could-
every trans person I've ever interviewed has this in group of real trans people and then out group of fake trans people. And
I don't
they
think that-
always do. No, let me fucking finish because I let you finish and it hurt me really badly. Every trans person defines themselves as the in group and then has this bunch of loser out group trans people that aren't real trans people. And real trans people just
Yeah, it's
fucking
literally-
those-
yeah.
they think, of
It's
course they
literally
think
all of
they would say the exact same thing as me, but for them it's social contagion. I'm the real deal. And so how do you synthesize that into some kind of coherent lesson plan for children? Like what are we gonna
Oh,
tell them?
Is that there's like, I think you in terms of that social contagion, I attribute that at least it's always brought to my mind that it seems to be there's this value in coming out, but there's not a lot of value of like in like testing out and socially transitioning. But then once you figure out that that transitioning like isn't really working for you, and there wasn't this underlying matter to address, uh, going back inside the closet, so to speak, is a lot harder. Um, Despite the fact that you're just like going back into like the gender binary, and it should be remarkably easy. But in liberal spaces, that's maybe not the case.
My-
Like
in
every
my-
trans person thinks that like 90% of trans people are fake, but except them.
In my trans medicalist YouTuber days, this is what I've agreed with you. But I've realized now I can't go with that anymore. So what I believe
Right.
is that I believe that like the thing is that there are a bunch of people who are all identifying as trans who are having completely different experiences. There are people like me and Buck who are probably experiencing the same thing, and it's like, you know, I would maybe call it like transsexual, something more like that. And then there are maybe people who are starting to transition for different reasons, and it's not so much that I can say that they're like fake
But
trans people.
they don't think they're doing it for different reasons. They think they're doing it for the same.
But they-
reason.
but
Well,
there are-
no, okay, if I just say this in the comment, then you can take this. Okay, I think that broadly speaking, okay, I think you can broadly split trans people into two groups, if I may. Okay, I think that broadly you have
Real
kind of
ones and fake ones.
Yes, actually true. Yes, that's what I would say if I was being edgy.
Uh-oh,
But I think
Destiny.
broadly speaking, we have real trans people. We have trans people that experience dysphoria, an intensely discomforting feeling that is caused by incongruence of mind and body. You have these people, and they typically want like group support, help, affirming surgeries, places to alleviate that dysphoria, which usually involves some form of social medical transition. That's like kind of the older, like the transsexual. Now we have newer things, which is trans people without dysphoria. As soon as you eliminate the dysphoria, you've opened a box of 50 trillion different possible things, and they might be in different groups. But I think that you can broadly like differentiate trans people between when they say like I'm part of the in group and the out group. I think it's usually talking about people that are like I think dysphoria is like an important or some part of the trans experience, and then people are like dysphoria has nothing to do with being trans.
Wait,
I want to be
Destiny,
anything. Yeah, go.
Can I ask you to replace dysphoria with incongruence? Because if you say dysphoria, it's like the trans medicalist thing. But
Okay, I
feel like-
understand that. I think people are really
Yeah.
scared of being transmedicalist sometimes, and
I'm
I
not.
understand.
I'm
yeah,
not.
but
I'm a
the-
But,
trans
but if you, the minute you're viewed as trans medicalist, you're completely written off. So
Yeah,
that's
I
what
understand. I understand what you're saying. The only problem is that like, and this is I'm going back to 2 emails I got where people.
It's like his criticism of Vosh feeding into turf talking points. I kind of like this like almost tone policing by Kevin. I think it's Kevin by Kalvin. I think it's very important.
And this is what they phrased to me. Okay, dysphoria is like the
Incongruence.
defining mindfuck of your entire puberty. So to an incredibly dysphoric trans person, when you, I'm speaking because
Incongruent.
I'm not trans, so if this doesn't connect, I understand. But for the way it was described to me is if you're an
Okay,
intensely
yeah.
dysphoric trans person, if another person
Sorry.
says, oh yeah, I'm trans too, and I also have an incongruence, but there's no dysphoria, the trans person with dysphoria has no fucking idea what that person is talking about. Like, what do you mean when you say you have an incongruence with no dysphoria? Because the incongruence is like what you described earlier. It's not like people use the wrong pronouns, or it's not like you're sad that you're dressed as somebody. It's that you have like this deeply disgusting, discomforting feeling in your body that something is so wrong that like the second you start taking HRT, as soon as you see your body change, like something is being alleviated within you that is so deep that it's like unshakable. That's
So
like
that
my
was the
understanding.
case. That was the case for me, right? Like that was the case for me. But what I've kind of like, I think that like all, so like when we're obviously when people are born, everybody has like you have like a predisposition to like it's like kind of like not extreme, but so like for example, if you have somebody who's born with like this underlying gender incongruence who has a predisposition to being kind of like good at coping with mental health adversities, that incongruence might manifest as more discomfort. Because when I say dysphoria, I'm talking about the clinically significant like like the criteria. Because we can have a whole debate. I think dysphoria as like just a construct of like
Sure.
like feeling distress. Yeah, I'm talking about diagnosis.
I think I agree with you, and this has always been the problem. Initially, trans medicalists only had themselves to blame, but like the problem is that trans medicalism quickly becomes hardcore gatekeeping. Where, and I agree with you, it might be possible that somebody might have an incongruence, but they're not like thinking like I want to fucking kill myself because this is so horrible. It's more just like fuck, this sucks. But whether it's their resilience or who they are, they can deal with it better. I do agree that it's bad to be a trans person that says you need dysphoria, and when I say dysphoria, I mean you better be ready to fucking slit your throat because of how much you hate yourself. Otherwise, you're not a real trans person. That type of gatekeeping is really toxic. I do agree with that. Yeah.
That's why I say there's different kinds of people.
Sure.
Like, I do consider myself a transsexual, more medical side of that, and we have newer trans people who don't want to have or have dysphoria.
But Destiny, you
just
were
want
on
to,
I kind of went on a really like niche little thing there. But Destiny, you were on in general kind of going on this point though, where like there are trans people who I think it's more about the trans people who have something immutable, integral to them, like that is unchangeable. It is
Yeah.
unchangeable.
But then you have all these other people that are referring to, like, I think when you and Buck, I think when you guys are talking about like this integrated idea of gender, it's fundamentally different than this new age of person that is talking about like they have autism gender or they have like deer gender or like their genders are when
Not
they
deer
say
gender.
yeah when they say gender, what they're really talking about is like forms of expression, which is fine. You can express it. That's awesome. But it's not like your gender. It's a fundamentally different thing, right? You don't have dysphoria because you don't have the same tail that Bambi had. In the same way that a trans person might have dysphoria because they feel like their body is not matching the sex that is being like expressed
right,
in
and
the mind.
both are calling themselves the same thing, even though they
That's
have
right.
completely different
Yeah.
needs, and
Exactly.
that's the problem.
And like one is building off the work of the movements that have predecessed it from Stonewall on. So calling them the same thing is not only disingenuous in like when you're actually trying to a rational conversation with people, but also in the long con of things.
You guys are
Communities,
conflating
everything,
gender ideology as like all these people who are calling themselves trans when there's like kind of two
That's
separate
right.
groups, and they need to be labeled as different things because it's
That's
just
right.
it's not one's fake and one's not real. It's just that both are
It's
real, but
different.
they're different things.
So trans
the
people now
problem, though-
identify as trans. I don't identify as trans. I identify as a man. So in the newer generation, a lot of these youngsters identify as trans, and so there's their difference
I
too. I think
just
they take it
am
on as identity choice. It was never an identity choice for me. It was always a way and a means to become a man. If that makes sense.
we're talking a lot about these two different groups without addressing, some of the issues. Is validity? Is there validity to one group versus the other? Does one group merit childhood treatment over the other? I say no, because there isn't a way to identify the difference between these two groups, except with after the fact criteria and judgments about the other. And
not after the fact. You can have a kid go in for psychological evaluation, and they can tell you.
Oh, yeah, psychological evaluation.
Well, like, do we
sure.
think the kid should be given any kind of psychiatric drugs at all, like below the age of 18? Because you can't really tell someone who has chronic.
I think it depends on the. I think transitioning is inherently harmful to the body. So
it is.
So.
It is.
Right, so there has to be a trade-off.
Medical. Well, we don't even talk about that. What about putting testosterone in the body?
Yeah, I mean,
I think to call it harmful, I think that's a value judgment. I think it's
yes, what if a
it
cis
is,
man has to take...
but that's how we decide what is harmful and what is not. We make a value judgment of like, well, would I want that to happen to me? And if enough of us say no, then we think of it as harmful.
Yeah, but I mean, like for stuff that fucks
right.
with your brain chemistry, right? Like if we're talking about like SSRIs,
testosterone.
Well, yeah, I'm saying like, what about like all forms of psychiatric drugs?
Yeah, they are all somewhat harmful to differing degrees, but I would say getting surgery is like definitionally harmful in some way, unless you start defining your sex organs as things that like aren't you or aren't really part of you, and then you're removing like a growth.
You're not putting value on how like severe the dysphoria is. Like
right. Well,
the dysphoria is more harmful than the surgery.
That's true. So I don't value that much. That's true. But also, yeah. So if you're asking me, then like it's never worth it. But I'm talking about how we define it as like a society. We have to have some evaluation of harm versus how badly you need it versus how old you are.
But that's why I think it's important for people like me to be visible, so people can see it did help me, and I am here, and I
visibly
am alive,
trans.
and I am functioning, and I am
Bad
a
funny.
big part of the world. Even though I will agree with
Like,
you,
he doesn't even know.
long-term use of testosterone has done things to my body that is not okay. But that being said, I'm willing to take that on as a person who needs it. I'm willing to take on the negative effects of the testosterone on my body, and that's my choice as an adult to do that. So I agree with you on that, but I also want people to understand that it's really important for us to be in the world so people can see, wow, Buck really did do this. I might not agree with it, but it really changed his life. He really became a good person. He's alive and he's happy, and that's what I want really the world to see. You don't ever have to agree with me. All you have to do is understand that it saved my life.
I think that's important.
Yes,
good for Buck.
So
I mean, he's fumbling, but
how do we define these two groups? Calvin saying that we can just do an evaluation.
it's a good thing he's hot.
We don't.
I'm sorry.
Evaluation.
That was a joke.
Do they believe?
I
don't actually think that.
Believe in this shit or not? As
This is the thing. There's a problem with psychologists nowadays, where there's a lot of psychologists out there who will just affirm, and they won't take the time to explore like what else, all the possible mental health issues that could be going on with a person who wants to transition at a young age.
There's a problem with psychologists today in which there are some who will not affirm no matter what. They insist on exploring, and they just will not affirm the gender when we know that gender dysphoria is real, and they will not get on board. Instead, they insist on other types of treatment, and that is the problem right now. This is a psychology problem. And with that little hot mic drop, I have to go, gentlemen, because I have 1 hour and 13 minutes to spend with my wife before I have to do my own show. MrGirl, it's been an absolute pleasure to the panel. I love all of you. You're all very transgender and super gay, and just like as the only black man here, I have to sign off.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
You're hilarious, dude.
Funny.
I gotta leave too, my friend.
All right. Well, thank you for coming
Thanks
as
for
well.
having me.
It's great to meet you. I really appreciate it.
Contact me. Okay, thanks you guys.
Okay.
I
Thanks a lot
appreciate it.
for coming to
I
spend fun
appreciate
chatting.
meeting all of you. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Bye, Buck.
Now that those guys are gone, we can really get into the kids.
I would
right?
love to talk to you, Mr. Girl, about this, because I know you're a psychology major. You were a psychology major, right?
Well, no, he actually had clinical training. We found that out the other day.
That's
awesome.
Extensive clinical training. But
No. One of my fans came up with a conspiracy theory that I'm secretly a failed psychologist, and Stephen really likes the idea.
Yeah, you were terminated for ethical violations, probably.
Exactly.
Based.
Okay, I believe that I believe there needs to be a really huge overhaul of the gender dysphoria stuff. I'm so what's the word? I am so passionate about this. I believe that like they should really focus on honing in the gender dysphoria criteria and like in the DSM, and on top of that, this is something I've like kind of proposed, and I don't know 100% how they do this, but I think there should be a way to not only measure if someone has dysphoria, but to measure the severity of it. Like if they could take all these traits that you could possibly be dysphoric about, whether it's your secondary sex characteristics, your genitals, your just certain traits, and
Or Obama.
evaluate how severe the dysphoria is on each of those different like
Okay, so we plug it into a formula, and then we say, oh, you know what? You almost were dysphoric
I mean,
enough.
it's the best.
We're almost dysphoric enough to transition, but
This reminds me of a lot of doctors in exploring the science. They will say that, or at least for like trans athleticism, in regards to competitive integrity at upper levels of competition, they almost like chicken out and they say, well, okay, all these things, it makes entirely that trans women who undergo a male puberty and only get access to treatment later on, the International Olympic Committee (IOC) has a 1 year period where, and then 2 to 3 years, you're gonna have cross muscle sectional advantages. You're gonna have respiratory function increased. Your height's gonna be larger disproportionately. Lean body mass. Women can't go under these certain like thresholds that, or sorry, if you are assigned female at birth, there's different disproportions of lean body mass that you can have, where like AMAB competitors can tone that shit down. No pun intended. So for 2 to 3 years, a lot of papers would suggest that there is a competitive edge that you can that trans women have in women's spaces, cis women's spaces, and they then say that they chicken out to this like one paper. Like I saw a whole bunch of papers like link it, where this paper is like using terms like transsexual that is like dated, kind of give me like a bad vibe. Made me feel it's like, oh, well, is this like bad data made by like TERFs or whatever? And then the paper will like will prescribe that we abolish all gendered sports and have like a ELO system based on economic prosperity and like genetic qualities to equally face off men and women, all people. Which is like, how the fuck do you do that? Like, that'd be great, but how the fuck is that even possible? So I think that's kind of where Kalvin's getting to. But I hope Destiny even presses Kalvin on that, but we'll see.
Well,
I'm not
no,
quite there.
no,
Sorry.
but it would be a way
come
to like
back, come
help.
back when it's a little worse.
It would be a way to help somebody. It would be a way to help determine how, like, if to say like, okay, this is imminent. This is imminent.
I think
we should do
the
this.
problem is I don't think he thinks this is a real thing. So you guys are having like a conversation that's way past the point.
Is there anything you could say, Destiny? Anything?
No, well, my argument would be over whether or not being trans is real, right? Because if you think it's real, and if he's a reasonable person, which I think he is, if you think it's real, then there must be some question or some diagnostic criteria that we could use to differentiate between people that are actually trans and are just having confusing issues as a teenager. But the problem is MrGirl sees all of this rest on some spectrum, and there's not like, this is the trans part, and the only way to treat them is medically, and these are the non-trans people. He sees it all as just like, a lot of people have a lot of kind of fucked up problems, a lot of us have problems with
And
their
they should
bodies,
just
some of us
live
have
with it.
eating disorders, some of us wish we were women, some of us whatever.
Some of which they're prettier, so they should wear more makeup.
Life, and we don't use like medicine to treat every single potential thing. If somebody walked into the office and said, fuck, I watched all the Pirates of the Caribbean movie and I really want an eye patch and a peg leg, can you chop my shit off? The doctor would never say, okay, fine, we'll do that. That's just something we have to learn.
I need a serial number tatted under my tongue.
You get me.
I need a set of propellers stat.
And I mean, then what's the point of your like of having a conversation then if you're not gonna budge on it? You know what I mean?
Well, you're here to budge him.
Well, yeah, you're here to.
But I mean, I'm
but the
sitting here.
Change my mind, Kalvin. Well, no,
I mean-
the conversation was supposed to be about
Change my mind.
cancel culture.
Yeah.
So
Well,
the freedom to have this conversation,
Yeah.
and whether that's like do you? I know you think I'm wrong. Do you think I'm so wrong that I should be banned, or do you think I'm so
No.
wrong that I should like?
Yeah,
You're
I
right.
think we
So
can agree on
That's
that.
what the
It's like,
discussion was.
well,
originally supposed to be about. But yeah, we can do like.
he's
I'm
aggressively
advocating
wrong,
for
but
this,
yeah.
I don't know. I haven't changed
If
my
you
mind.
really
so
wanted to
far.
do a panel like this, you needed to grab the demon mamas of the world and bring them on.
Yeah.
please bring her here, please.
No, she won't come into
she
a
won't
chat
get on
with me.
with me.
Oh,
She
yeah,
won't
then
get
she's
on with
definitely not
me.
coming into here, yeah.
She
But,
banned me. Times.
You never know.
I just want to say I want to give a huge shout out tonight, okay, to Dick, who I know has suffered.
Hi, Dick.
Have you ever been in a conversation like this for this long before?
I'm gonna go identify as an alcoholic.
Oh my
I love
God.
Dick. God bless.
This is the
So some
easiest
problematic
stream I've
shit,
ever
but
done.
I
Not
will
had to
say, I will
no.
say that conversations about cancel culture have the potential to be the best conversations, but the problem is you'll never get the people that hate each other in the same panel, so they're always horrible.
I
Because
wanna
of
talk to
cancel
Demon
culture.
Mama.
Yeah, but I mean, the problem is that
talk
people
to
that want to
her.
cancel us will never come on and talk to us. And if they did, it would be exciting. It'd be screaming matches.
That's
I
true.
think you should be fucking banned from me. It's like, hell yeah. Well, why do you think I should be banned? Fuck you. You know. But those two worlds never collide.
Are you
so
mad?
it's like,
Are you mad?
Well, I don't think we need a moderator anymore, Dick. If you want to,
I'm gonna
wanna
hop
jump?
off and grab food.
Well, no, I was going to ask you. Do you want to say what you think about any of this stuff?
No, because I don't want to lose my Patreon. One
Yeah,
question,
Dick.
Kalvin.
Dick's not
You
down
think
for it,
you
but
can-
you know,
you can
it's
get
a good sport.
transitioning drugs as a teenager, right? You think that's good? As
Uh.
I understand your reasoning for it.
I think that it's good
Real.
for certain people, yeah.
Okay. Do you think there should be a lower limit to when you can get a beer? Like, if you're getting transitioning drugs at 15, can I get a Tecate at 15?
I just think that there's a difference because
Got it.
one is medically
No, I think
necessary
so.
and one
I think
isn't.
I think there's a spot.
Honestly,
I think
if
there's a
I-
spot where you
okay,
can
I
already
think
your parents
It's a
can.
disease, my friend. I don't know if you're up to the literature on that.
yeah, but I don't think we
Legalize
treat
all drugs.
alcoholism with more alcohol.
This is
well,
funny.
if you're an alcoholic, you do, I guess. I guess we call that self-medication, huh? Hey, if you're buying HRT online. Yeah, maybe. Thanks a lot.
That's
Dick.
good to talk. Good to talk to all of you. Good to meet you, Calvin.
Nice
Good
to meet
show.
you, Dick.
Thank you for hitting it out of the park, Dick. I really appreciate it.
I
He really
I did
did.
good reading on your questions, right?
Yes, you're great at reading.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Have a good one.
Bye, Dick.
Yeah, I just want to say, as much as I if I'm butting heads with you, I do value I value the pushback. I think that there's no point in having discussions about things if you can't.
Yeah, if it's just
take
a
the
hug
perspective
box.
and, I guess you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like people were trying to cancel
He
me
doesn't
because I
even
was.
think you're real, Calvin.
You don't
Shit
think
in
I'm
this
real?
dude's mouth.
I just think that MrGirl, I think that it's just really hard for me to I guess hear you say stuff about being with trans kids transitioning or even that trans isn't real because it's just that's my life every day. I wish if I could have. Here's my thing. If I could have
Cry.
taken a
Sell
pill.
it. Sell it with tears.
If
Cry.
I could have.
Cry.
If I could have taken a pill to not be trans, I would have.
Oh, jeez.
If I could have taken a pill to not be trans, I would have. If I could have just been a cis girl and not been dysphoric, I would have happily been that. You know what I mean?
I'm not saying that there's a way to not be dysphoric. When I say that I don't believe in this the construct of trans people the way that it's presented, I'm saying there is no solution.
Well,
I'm not saying you can go to therapy and it'll fix you.
But there is a solution.
But why do we
right?
want people to be
they
unhappy?
can transition, right?
Well, yeah, I guess I just don't believe that's a real solution.
But
I
what
believe
about the
everyone
people? How do
deserves
we
happiness.
wait? How do we know if it's a solution or not?
I don't know.
Okay.
Probably
then
efficacy,
why
right?
don't we go by self-reporting, right?
Yes, but I don't believe in self-reporting.
Okay, wait.
So
If you don't believe in self-reporting, aren't you a fan of psychoanalysis, which is entirely driven by conversations with the patient?
Not the Freud stand.
Isn't literally every single thing in psychology, or a fuck ton of it, based on self-reporting? How do we know anything?
no, because in psychoanalysis, the therapist is
Are you a
letting
psychoanalysis fan or psychodynamic fan?
I don't fucking know.
Okay.
In psychoanalysis, the therapist is listening to you say what you think about yourself, but they're not agreeing with you. Right? I rarely like Lauren can look me in the eye and say something about her feelings, and I'm like, I don't believe you. I don't believe trans people about what they say about their feelings either. I don't even believe that. I think most people.
Don't you
If
worry?
somebody says they're.
Don't you worry that there's some experience there that is inaccessible to you? That the only way you can get is by listening to another person?
No, kick it, Chad.
Yeah, that is a limitation.
Okay.
So
there you go.
What people
there
say
are
about
this is the
We're
only bit
going.
I've seen, okay? And to some extent, I am empathetic with you because people are crazy, and I don't believe half the shit people say. But
This is great.
and I don't know if I would say you should talk to all of your fans or whatever the fuck, but I have gotten so many emails from trans people, and there is such a consistent explanation of phenomenon Even between the ones that like they heard about trans at an early age and then they started going through stuff and like especially when puberty came by, like shit started to get fucked. This idea that like they started HRT and like that day or the next day for whatever reason like they started to have like actual measurable feeling betters, and then once their body changed, and then people that are like I had no idea what trans was. I didn't even know. I'd never heard of this ever. I went until I was like 24 until I saw my first trans person, and then I got this idea like wow maybe I am, and then they started exploring it, and then they had all the same feelings once they started medication and everything, and it just seems like there's such a consistent set of experiences described, even from some people that don't even hear about trans shit until they're into their 20s. It feels weird to think that it's all just like some random magical shit that or imaginary shit that like a bunch of people hopped up on.
It's not like all mental health issues are. You know, all we have is like this. We gather like people are having the same symptoms, and we categorize them together as okay. This is probably an experience that is like tangible, even if we can't.
But usually, with most mental health symptoms, okay, all these people could be saying the same thing, even if they're not. Like when I hear a gay person say, I knew I was gay. I had my first awakening, and then I'm like, I don't believe you. I just don't believe that is that clear cut. I don't believe that that's what I think it's just a story that you're telling yourself. Just like every story that we tell ourselves. When someone like you meet an old person and they're talking about their career and they're like, this was the bond. It's like, yeah, well, I hear your story, but I have no opinion even on if it's true. Just listening to you. And so when I'm talking about therapy and going to therapy, I'm talking about the therapist challenging your narrative of yourself. Usually so I think if somebody comes in and they say, I know I seem like a man, but I'm actually a woman. I would think that person was delusional.
I think that those conversations are important to have. I think I agree with you there, and I think
we don't let the patient define.
Sure, but that's part of the relationship between the patient and the therapist. Like a patient,
we never let the patient define what's wrong with them.
Well, but you do rely on what the patient tells you to figure out what's wrong with them. You don't just ignore everything they say. Yeah. So if a patient comes in, ideally they're not saying like, "Hey, I think I'm trans. Like, what do I have to say to get HRT?" LOL. But instead they come in and they describe what's going on. The therapist will have extended conversations with them over some time. Maybe they'll give them suggestions to improve things. If things don't improve and they are all acting a certain way, at some point the therapist has to make a call like, "Hey, have you considered this?" Like maybe that, and then at that point, like that's something that patient
like
would
if you're
explore.
checking all the boxes, then why that's probably what's happening.
Well, I think it's still different. It's not you're conflating a diagnosis with agreeing with the person you're diagnosing. So if somebody comes in and says, I'm actually the president of the United States secretly. You might not think it looking at me or talking to me, but actually I am. Then yes, they're checking the boxes for schizophrenia. If somebody comes in and says I'm supposed to be a woman, this may not make sense to you, but I am actually a woman. To me, that's in my bucket. That's in my bucket of things that can't be true.
So let's
So the way I interpret that is I'm like, okay, well, I know you're not the president. I know you're not secretly a woman. So those things aren't true.
But like,
so then what do I?
At this point, it's like, what if you started like spouting out like different things about differences in IQ and shit between races? Like that shit, like that is questionably or unquestionably just debunked. Like just actual pseudoscience, to the point where it's like there seems to be a wealth of knowledge out there that you seem to be not tapping into.
Now how do I make sense of what you're telling me? Why do you think that? Why do you feel this way? What is like? Yeah, is it genetic? Is it environmental? Is it a combination? For some reason, you think that you're a woman, and like I want to get to the root of that. I would, if I were secretly a therapist, I would never say like, well, maybe you're right. It just feels like that, like psychology is being dragged.
Yeah, but like
into
the psychologists, they're not
fantasy.
coming in and saying, "I think I'm a woman." They know that they're not biologically a woman, obviously.
Yeah, so that's the difference, right? Like,
I'm supposed to. Okay, I'm in the wrong body. I'm supposed to be a woman. I feel.
Well, no, because this is actually it's so important because if somebody were to come into your office and they were to say, I'm the president of the United States, then you've got a huge problem. You're not going to say they're the president of the United States, right? But if they were to come in and they were to say, hey, I think I'm the president of the United States, this is probably a problem. You're like, yeah, that is a problem. But I agree that you do think that. So how do we alleviate that? Well, with antipsychotics or whatever for a schizophrenic person, right?
Or get elected, I guess.
For a trans person, they don't come in saying like, I think I'm a woman, even though I'm in a man's body, I'm a woman, right? This is like, I think I feel like a woman, right? What do we do to address tried. Better like people have tried so much conversion therapy, it doesn't seem to work. Well, so then what do we do, right?
Do you think that's the standard, like, stance of most trans people or progressives when talking about trans people? Is
No,
that
I think that the
they
conversations
they just-
today fucking suck. Like, most of them are
Just
horrible.
get elected,
Like,
kick a
to the
shit.
Agree that
detriment of
the-
trans
you-
people. Yes.
they go much further than
Absolutely.
I
So
think
like
I'm a woman.
anybody that
They go
says,
to,
for
I'm-
instance,
I-
anybody that
yeah.
says like you are whatever you identify as a fucking moron. They have no idea what the fuck.
Okay.
They shouldn't even be in these conversations. And 90% of people that say that identify as trans, they're crazy. There's
And if
something
you-
different on the internet. It's something totally different.
Destiny, I wish Riley's video with Dima Mama, What is a Woman, about like you can't just say a woman is whoever identifies as a woman. That whole debate really highlights that like that's just delusional to say, but we can explain why trans people feel the way that they do. Like I would be delusional pre-transition to go and say I'm a man, like I'm living as a man, but it's not delusional to say, hey, I'm having these feelings like I should have a male body, and I would be much less distressed if I had a male body. And I
think so. Okay, so we're saying a trans person is someone who thinks they should be the opposite sex.
Well, they have the feeling in their mind
Or
that
they
their
want to
body
be.
isn't the sex that it should be.
It's
That's
not
the,
a
that's
want.
The feeling.
It's like
It's a
if you
should.
aren't, if it doesn't, until you align that brain and the body thing, and this is for dysphoric trans. This is for the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The real deal.
No,
I
but
gotcha. I
but
hear you.
Yeah, the real deal. Yes.
let me. Okay, the real deal, but we'll
The
just
hard
say.
stuff. The top shelf trans.
I
people.
hate to say it that way, no, because I just like that's what people get mad at me for, and then I'll just get fucking like people will say everything.
I'll
I
say it. Yes, the dysphoric
Okay.
trans people. Yes, the one
Okay,
that need
that's what
like
you
their
mean.
own
Okay.
like medical stuff, communities, and everything. Yeah. Then you
Okay,
have
But-
the
so
fear
for them it's a should. I should be in a different body.
No, it's not. No, it's not a prescriptive statement they're making. It's an observation of their feelings.
I feel like I should be in a different
No,
body.
not like yeah, sure. Or I feel like I'm in the
But-
wrong body. Something feels.
But then I
wrong.
feel like to prescribe transition, don't you have to then agree that they should be in a different body? Or you're saying,
You just have to agree
You're-
that
are
they
you-
have the feeling, and that feeling can't be changed.
okay, so you have an unchangeable feeling that you should be in a different body. It's not true. You shouldn't be in a different body, and you should be in your body. But you think you should be in a different
Mhm.
body, and the
Well, it's
only
still your
solution-
body. It's just different.
Okay, a different body. That's what I just said. My
I mean-
point is that my point is how far into the belief system of the trans person is the therapist going in order to then agree with them that the solution is to transition? It seems, I guess to me, it seems like uncomfortably far.
Well, I agree. It is uncomfortably far. I think every trans person is like, yeah, it's a lot. But the question is, well, what is lesser that you
What's
could
the
do? That
other
could, yeah,
option?
what is the
Well,
other option?
I guess I think of it the same way I think of like breast implants. If a woman goes to her therapist and
Yeah,
says,
just die,
I need to
5
have-
head.
I should have bigger breasts, the therapist is not going to be like, well,
Yeah,
But
because
the problem.
maybe you should. I don't know. Or they're like,
Well,
you have
look
big
at you.
breasts already. What do
If-
you need
okay,
big breasts
if-
for?
I'll make this concession. If there was this like mind fuck disease that was like rampant, where women were like having severe fucking distress, like a woman on a desert island who's born with small boobs, and she's like, fuck me, like I don't have big boobs, something is wrong with my body, then you know what? Maybe cosmetic surgery for women should actually be like stepped up there. Maybe that is a thing. But that seems to be something that you're way more in control of, and is way more like socially influenced. Whereas
Yeah.
stuff related to trans identities are very much like this internal, like within the machinations of the mind. It's not just like I got mad because a lot of people
No,
misgendered
I don't
me.
agree
It's
with
like,
you.
well, I
don't-
know you don't
because-
agree, but it's the
No,
it
I
is
don't.
the
But
case.
because of the mental gymnastics that you guys are doing.
There's
but
no
you're
mental
saying-
gymnastics.
what-
It's
well, no,
straightforward.
that's
Yeah,
what-
it's
hang
just
on,
the
hang on. You're saying-
empirical
you're saying
facts.
on
We
an
don't need to say
island,
empirical, but
the rate of trans people would be the same, except it's exploding. But then your explanation.
No,
for
hold on,
why
wait,
it's
no, wait,
exploding-
hold on. No,
but then
you're
you're
missing.
saying-
No,
no,
hold on.
no,
You're
I don't-
misconstruing
let
me
me
so
finish, let me
hard.
finish, let me finish,
We
let me
agree
finish.
that there are like weird, fake,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
non-dysphoric
no,
trans
but
people.
I
Whatever. That's a
don't-
different
I don't
thing.
agree with that. I think it's all fake.
Okay, but
That's the
you
problem.
at least
So
acknowledge that there's a difference between dysphoric trans people and non-dysphoric trans people.
I don't know. I think that I agree that people will give
But the
different
dis-
reasons for transitioning and
The
have
experience
different
is
experiences.
different.
But I don't agree that it's a binary. I think that that trans people want it to be a binary and always want to place themselves on the more real side of the binary.
You're right. There's more than just two, but there's two. There's kind of there's two
there's-
general
it-
groups.
It's a spectrum. What I'm saying
it's a
It's not a
spectrum.
spectrum.
okay, that in order to justify the claim that the desert island claim that it's not socially influenced and that it's real because it's genetic, which makes it more real or something, you have to
that's not
exclude.
true, but
You
go
have to, in order to support that claim, you have to exclude 80% of trans people now.
Okay, you know what?
Because
I'm
you have
glad
to
you said. Sure, I'm glad you're saying this. You know what? I'm glad you're giving air to this. This is why all of the non-dysphoric trans people, y'all motherfuckers need a different word because you're fucking it up for everybody. They need a different identifier because because I don't even hate Mr. Girl. I understand why it's so fucking confusing. I don't even fucking blame you.
I
Because
understand
it's-
too.
Yeah,
I'm
because
Yeah,
completely
it's-
with you.
I don't know.
Because
He's
people
definitely
online
being
are talking
inflammatory
like
about
being
it, but
queer, or like I'm like a trans femme, like mass presenting lesbian, like femboy or whatever. It's like I don't know what the fuck any of that. I can't even like some of these tweets. I can't even fucking like. Contra did a meme tweet the other day, and I actually had to
I
read
love
it for like
Contra.
15 seconds, where I thought it was a serious tweet. It was like I know all these words, but I'm not sure if something real. I actually spent some time for it, so like I don't even necessarily like fault you for it. The only thing that I'll say, my only contribution to this conversation, somebody spent way too much fucking time over the past 2 months diving down all this shit. I think that there is a huge difference between you have trans people with dysphoria, and then you have a totally different thing that is like a socially driven phenomenon between young people with way too much hair dye and way
I
too
want
many
to call it
piercings.
sociocognitive gender dysphoria. I've actually started to really come up with my own thesis about this. Sociocognitive gender dysphoria. I'm coining that term right now on the stream.
Sure.
It's not ROGD is just like a turf thing, but there's like different
It's
dysphoria.
just the same thing that you're
It's
saying.
not, but
You're
it's
just-
totally
you're
different. It's not.
renaming it.
It's totally different. That's the thing.
No,
This-
yeah, I'm just saying that Calvin's renaming ROGD to a new
Yeah, I'm kind of in a way,
politically
but I would
correct name for it. But it's the same thing. You're saying it's the
not
same.
the politically correct, but I would rewrite the literature surrounding it to be more more objective and not biased against trans people. But
Okay,
me and
so we're-
Destiny, I feel like what me and Destiny are trying to tell you though is that like I feel like
Is that the
needs to
turfs
be
are
trans
right?
and there's ways to be trans.
No,
I mean, there
sorry,
are
no.
though. There
Negative.
I
are.
think
There
the
are
issue though, Calvin, is that like because we're cis, we don't have a perspective.
I'm
In
cis,
my
thank you.
opinion, what?
No, I mean, I was like, I'm cis, thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Are you actually? I have no idea.
No, I just like to say I'm cis as
Okay,
a joke.
gotcha. Okay. Well, good job. Yeah. So, but like, so for me and Mr. Girl, I assume Mr. Girl says, like, in my opinion, maybe I'll say this kind of strongly. I don't like. We hardly have an understanding of gender identity because when that's not in congruence, I don't think it's something that you necessarily feel. Like, I don't even know what it's like to feel like I'm in the wrong body, right? So when I've got one trans person saying like, I am a man but I feel like a woman, and another one's like, I'm a person and I feel like a deer, and someone else saying like, well, I'm white and I feel like I'm black, it all sounds the same to me. Like, I can understand somebody being like, yeah, you all just sound like you're fucked up. Like, I know a lot of women with A cups that wish they had double D's. I know a lot of anorexic people that wish they could lose 25 pounds, and I know some men that think they should be women. I can understand why it all feels the same over here when all of it gets lumped together as like transgenderism or trans identities or gender identities.
Yeah, for me at least with being trans, like it wasn't so much like I'm so happy to like be trans, whatever. It's more that I just feel normal. Like before, I felt really distressed and uncomfortable, and it didn't feel right.
Yeah.
And I transitioned, and my life is just normal now. Like I'm just like I can function. I can not be distressed. I'm not like I really don't have any other mental issues like that. Like I'm just happy. Like I live a normal life. You know what I mean?
No.
And well, if I hadn't.
Calvin,
I can not be distressed. I'm not like I really don't have any other mental issues like that. Like I'm just happy. Like I live a normal life. You know what I mean?
No.
And well, if I hadn't.
Calvin,
If
you
I
gotta
hadn't-
cry more when you're explaining this. You're driving the ball
Okay.
hardcore here, man.
Sorry,
All right,
he's
yeah.
he's an empath. He won't get it unless I'm crying.
Exactly.
So- Basically, what
Right.
I'm saying is that if I hadn't transitioned, I would have just been like distressed, and it would have impeded on my daily functioning. Like I wouldn't have been functioning as well. Like I wouldn't have been able to like complete. I would have been like so mentally distressed that it would have made my quality of life worse. And my quality of life is just normal now. Like I just
Okay.
live.
And so, but this is predicated on there not being a better solution.
As of now, there's not a better solution.
If there was a better solution, I'm gonna speak for all dysphoric trans people, okay? Because I'm brave like that. If there was a better solution, I think that
Yeah.
almost all trans people would opt for it because transitioning is hard, and it's like from my discoveries, there's like the two worst points in a trans person's life. Like the second worst is before you ever transition at all, and the worst is like those few months when you begin to transition and you don't know if you'll ever pass.
That
Your
is so true.
Your hormones are fucking crazy. At some point, a lot of people are like, I'm gonna go stealth. I'm just gonna like fucking, I'm not even gonna do this because it's so difficult. that's like an excruciating process. It's not easy. Even if some people do have some mental alleviation from the drugs, the process is still really difficult. So like I think if there was something else, I think trans people
The stealthing
would,
Discord
yeah,
continues.
Trans-cel, sorry. I think trans people would opt for it, but it's like fuck, like what is it? Again, like we've been so motivated to find like conversion therapies and shit that work, and they don't seem to. Right?
Do you think it's a problem that now, it would be bigoted to even look or say that you're looking? I feel like this maybe is something we can agree on, that Trans-cel culture would preclude us from, if somebody says, I think I might be trans, you're not supposed to say like,
Maybe not.
yeah, maybe not.
I agree.
Come up with another
I
solution.
agree. I think it would be really hard if there was promising research to show that you could like untrans.
Oh,
somebody
they'll
without
call it
research.
eugenics.
Yeah,
they'll call it
I
eugenics.
agree that that's a problem. I think everybody here, well, all
The
three of
demon
us
mamas of the world
would
would
say,
be enraged.
So that is a problem, right? And I agree with that. But like, still, we can't go.
That
I don't think
gets
completely
back to the root.
Yeah.
There's
So
two
you
groups. There's two groups: people who want to be trans and people who.
I hear what. I get.
Who
I'm
are-
just saying that because you're saying it. I don't
Yikes.
believe that though.
It's not
So-
great, but
I guess where we have to meet, the only thing we can agree on is if
God,
there is a
fucking
better
3
solution,
hours,
it
fuck.
would be good to keep looking for it and keep an open mind and not shut all talk of it down as bigotry.
True.
As long
Okay.
as it's not being bigoted, sometimes it is like, even if it's like painted as being objective, like ROGD is, it's biased against trans people. The entire like article about it is, and like it ruined it. It ruined the whole concept. If they could have just done it in a more unbiased way or objective way, it could have been more legitimate. So I think that things.
Are you talking about Abigail Schreier?
It's
Or
the,
what's her name?
the lady who wrote the study. I forget.
Littman?
Oh, Whitman. Yeah, Lisa
I think
Littman.
it's Littman.
Lisa Littman.
Lisa Littman.
Yeah, and like
Lethal Littman.
Don't even. Abigail Schreier's her own thing, but like basically, yeah. I mean, if there's an article. I wish I had a link to it. This trans psychologist. She's MTF herself, but she's also a psychologist, and she wrote an article recently talking about.
She got
specific
shit on
and everything,
Twitter.
but like
Yeah.
also was like, I don't support like the ROGD turf type of stuff, but this is a thing, and we need to have a conversation about it in a way that is still acknowledges like that there are trans people who are going to benefit from transitioning. There are kids who should transition, but then there are kids who have it this way.
I guess we just have to keep talking about it.
Guys, if you're
I agree.
trans, send your emails to MrGirl. They can read all of them.
MrGirl, I
okay?
think that you should just become. I think you should just become trans and see if you get reverse dysphoria. I think you would take it.
Yeah.
That far. You could take
Wait,
it that
dude,
far.
you've done so many cool videos. You should start HRT.
Yeah, do your own little
Get some plump
experiment.
hips, a nice little booty. Get fucking
Yes.
do it. HRT
I already
that.
have all the above.
Because
Thank you
Get
very
some,
much.
don't you
some
believe
real
that if
effeminate
you
ones. Start
took
shaving.
estrogen,
Yeah.
if you took
Um,
estrogen and transitioned, you would be
Yeah, I get
completely
gender
happy.
dysphoria if I shave.
This would be so. No, this would be sick. This would be awesome. Like sick
Oh,
in a good way. You
I've
should
had-
do a whole U-porn series on it or whatever. It would be amazing. Oh my god.
You could
And then
be
you
the
could be
next
like after you
MTF
transition,
star.
you could be
You and Buck could
you could be
collab.
Mrs. Boy. That could be your alter ego.
Mrs.
Yeah,
Boy.
Buck just rails
You and
me.
Buck could you
Uh,
and Buck collab on Pornhub?
Yeah, oh, sure. I've actually had multiple trans women DM me and email me asking me to try to de-trans them on stream.
I
they're
want
like,
you
I really
to
want-
trans me. Let's
They're like, I
go.
really want to come on stream and I want you to talk me out of being trans. And one of them was like, I'm gonna inject hormones if you don't respond to this DM in the next 20 minutes.
Damn.
Oh god. Yeah, I don't think you could do trans me, Mr. Girl. I'm sorry.
There are probably
think-
something like this is the hard thing about anecdotally. There are probably some people that you can de-trans because they're probably
Sure.
not trans. That's
In
the
the
thing.
first
That's
place.
like there.
Well,
Here's
that's
the
a
problem. A lot of
tautological-
people can think they're trans and not be trans. But if you are trans, you'll know you're trans. The issue is just picking them out from one another, which is really, really, really difficult to do.
But what if
especially
you
for
couldn't
teens.
you could know you're trans and be wrong, right?
No, I don't think so. I think the problem is I think if you are trans, you'll know that something is up. But there could be other things up with a different person, and they might think they're trans, but they don't know 100%. But maybe they're like, oh fuck it, I'm trans. there's a difference
But
there.
like I guess I think knowing is like an emotional experience of like I know this. And like, there's plenty of things I've known in my life that just weren't true.
Related to like your identity though, like your sexual
Yeah.
identity, like
I think so.
there were times you intensely felt like you were in a man's body and you were like a woman, or
No, but I think if you asked me when I was 10 if I was straight, I would have said yes. I know I'm straight. And if you
I
asked me
feel
when I
like
was
sexual
14, I'd be like, actually, I
orientation.
know that I'm not.
Yeah, they're very different.
I'll join you and be a little bit edgy, and that I think
Okay.
that heterosexuality is super conditioned, and I think that almost everybody
Yeah.
would gravitate towards some level of bisexuality,
I
given a
agree.
society where that's probably true. But I think that it's just man, fuck. I can't communicate this anymore. But like, I just when trans people talk to me, the experience sounds so unbelievably intrinsic. I had one trans woman that emailed me, and she was on insurance, off insurance, went on drugs and off drugs, and her description of like she could tell as soon as she started like putting on the like appropriate types of fat, like the difference that she felt about her body versus like losing it and then her body becoming kind of more boyish and masculine or whatever, and like the disgust. It's like this.
I can attest to that.
It's like this super intrinsic feeling that's not
It's
just
like
yeah.
nothing else. It's like nothing else.
You
It's
just have to
like-
try it, man.
That's what I said.
Try it, Mr. Girl.
You gotta
No,
try it, Mr. Girl. Estrogen it
But
up.
I'm sorry, but I've really loved talking to you.
That's
That was really nice to talk to
itching.
you. But the only thing I will say and be a little bit firm about here is
Ooh.
that like you'll never be trans. You will never ever have been born trans. So you could sit here all you want and say, "Oh, I don't believe it," and "Oh, it's not a real thing," and "I just don't believe it." I mean, at the end of the day, you're just hurting people. You're just hurting trans people, and trans people are still gonna transition. It's still gonna move
Giga
forward, and at the end of the day, you're just sitting
Giga
here,
Chad.
you're trying to, you're just. I mean, in a way, it just sounds almost a little bit like you don't want to change your opinion. It sounds kind of bad faith because it's like we're sitting here telling you, so many people have told you trans people are real. I have no reason to let. I'm just. It's so intrinsic. There's no other way to describe it. There's no other way to describe it.
So what would you have me do? Just believe you?
Yeah, honestly, at the end of the
How can I control? You want me to pretend I believe you, or you want me to?
I mean, I don't
brainwash
know what it's
myself
like
until
for
I
people
do,
to
or,
have
like-
DID, but I believe that they have DID.
Okay, I don't
No,
believe
I'm
the
asking
idea
you.
is real.
I'm asking.
Okay,
you,
let me
what do
pick a
you- what do you
different
want- No,
disorder.
What do you
I'm
want
sorry,
me to
Mr.
do? What do you want me to do about that?
Yeah, what do you want her to do, Kalvin?
I don't know. I guess I just have this problem where I feel like trans people annoy me in the sense where they will come around. They'll be like, oh well, if you think that you require, because that's just what Buck was doing, right? He was like, well, I don't. It doesn't matter if we have a different opinion because I am who I am and I don't need your opinion. We can just disagree and let's all disagree. But the problem for me is that like I require cis people's support to. Let's see. I require cis people's support to
Okay.
be gendered.
Cis people are important in affirming social transitioning, so we can have this important discovery phase where we know if people are trans or not. With Mr. Girl not believing and not doing this, he does say he uses like pronouns to people's faces for whatever value that gives you, but without this mechanism for people to discover this, everyone's going to have all these concerns down the line when we get into medical transitioning. So affirming this in a social environment is much more important than the medical transitioning itself. So I pray to God that Kalvin gets here. Otherwise, we're just going to loop for like the
Correctly,
50th time.
I'm gonna say that socially transitioning is a burden on the people in your life, especially at first. Like you have to ask people around you
True.
to adjust their language and the way they view you and all this stuff.
I understand why you want me to believe you, but I'm asking what you want me to do. You're confronting me. You're saying I'm hurting people, and I'm asking you, what could I do, I guess ethically or morally, to not hurt people, if this is what I believe.
I guess hurting people is like. It's hard for me to say that you're directly hurting people, but I think the rhetoric is hurtful to people. Like the rhetoric.
So I hear you. What do you want me to do?
What Mr. Girl is saying is that like you're talking about something that's downstream from his beliefs. It's kind of like telling like an atheist like, hey, when you say you don't believe in God, that hurts everybody's feelings a lot. And the atheist's like, okay, I mean, I don't believe in God. What the fuck do you want to say? And you're like, and you keep reinforcing the downstream. Like, well, when you say you don't believe in God, it's hurting everybody's feelings. It's like, okay. So Mr. Girl is saying like genuinely he has an internal feeling that this trans thing is not a unique like construct of the mind.
So you should
It's
should
something
respect it,
if you genuinely
right?
feel that way.
I feel like
I guess at the end of the
may
day, the
rival your
truth-
own feeling in strength.
The truth, I guess, like, it's just one of those things where it just feels like eventually it's like it's not even like a matter of it's not like a religion. You made like an analogy to religion. It's like trans
Steven
people
just-
actually there's just it's like it's documented. Like trans
Well, no,
people.
he's not, what he's just saying is that like he understands it's quote unquote documented, but like a lot of people, you know, say they've experienced. We can keep going with real sex. They say they've experienced
Religion's
stigmata, or they say they've seen. He's just asking.
I
Like,
guess I
he's
don't
just saying
know.
that, like,
I guess I don't know.
He's just
I
saying
guess
like you
I
can't
don't
just say like, hey, please believe me, and then him go, okay, I believe you, because that's not sincere. That's an insincere profession of belief, right? So he's saying like, so what does he do if he doesn't believe you? Like, what is he supposed to
Do
do?
you want me to pretend to believe you?
Yeah.
I guess I believe things when I'm presented evidence to like that's like.
Okay, well, I'm a stupid fuck up, and I can't.
I don't think you're
evidence
a
doesn't
stupid
affect.
fuck up.
No, evidence doesn't affect me. Or maybe I'm presented evidence or conflicting evidence, and one is very compelling to me, and the other isn't. For whatever reason, I've read a lot about this. I've interviewed a lot of trans people. I just don't believe the whole thing. I don't believe a lot of things that people say and believe about psychology or about themselves. It's not unique to trans people. But what's unique to trans people is you believe the way I like. If I talk about depression, I'm like, I don't think depression's real. When people say I have a chemical imbalance, I'm like, I don't believe you.
I mean,
just
I don't believe
you. Okay, so
Wait, you
but
believe
does
in
say
DID, but you don't believe in depression, Kalvin?
No, I believe in depression, but like when people say I have a chemical imbalance, like that's
yeah,
not
I'm like, no, you just don't like your life, and you are blaming
No,
it
but
on
the reason
your
we
brain
know that-
structures. When really you should like fix your life. That's what I think when people say they're depressed or I have depression and it's been proven. I have a chemical imbalance. I need this pill. I don't need to change anything about my life. I just need this pill. I have the same reaction of like, I get this is your experience. You really strongly believe this. It's really important to you that you believe this. It is documented. You could show me study after study supporting what you say, but that's just not how I see it.
because you have like
I just-
multiple options with depression. You can
Well,
try.
here, let's ignore that.
But I'm
Actually,
saying
let's say there was a
I
brain
don't
scan where you can hook an electrode up somebody's brain, you push a button, and we actually identified, like right behind like the fucking amygdala.
I'd be the
There's a
first person
trans
in line.
there's a trans part of the brain, and it's either on and you're trans or it's off and you're not. If that part existed, would you believe it, or it's almost tautological? But
It is. So I guess I would have to believe it.
Okay, never mind, that's a boring question, 'cause it's
You're
literally
all my eggs on setting fire to the building.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I think this is such a niche conversation that there's no clear-cut answer to, and there never will be a clear-cut answer to.
I
unfortunately.
disagree with that. I feel like for dysphoric trans people, I think we have a decent understanding of it, and I think there's a lot of like hard boundaries we can draw. I think that the issue is with the explosion of non-dysphoric college kids. Like the conversation seems unbelievably more fucking complicated now than I think it has to
Yeah.
be, which I think is really sad.
Yeah, and it's I don't know. Yeah, I guess like it's difficult because I mean, at least in my experience, like I mean, I'm in college, and it's like there have been times where there are people in my classes who are like those kind of people who are like very, and I just don't out myself or like talk about my experience because I just don't want to. Like I don't want to like debate with them or like have to like deal with those people in real life. And I guess then the people around me are like they're seeing that as the trans person and not me, and I'm just gonna be like okay. But yeah, I think I'm kind of disheartened. I guess I wish that like I could have the same optimism as you, Destiny, because like I used
Well,
to.
no, I'm not optimistic. I think it's fuck now because now it's all called trans shit, and now no one has any fucking idea what it means to be trans or what any of that shit is because yeah.
Okay, I have a question.
Mhm.
Steven,
Mhm.
do you think it was racist when Nick Rekieta said racial bonds are real and inherent, and read this article about how white people like love other white people and black people? But there's a connection there that is just intrinsic.
I think
do you find
I
it-
think shared experiences are really strong, and race can be
Yes.
one of those bonding experiences.
But I think he was going beyond that. He was talking about
I
some
would
Yeah.
inherent.
pull him in. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
like, it's hard for me because I'm the default character in society as a white male. But like, there are times where
Like that, Rekieta's around like Kiwi Farms types and stuff like that. So there's a possibility that he's just like read like a really fucking bad paper on it. It's like them people like it's like people saying that the Hart-Celler Act changed the demographic of America against the public's will. Like, yeah, I don't know what that.
like it's so hard to explain this. Like when I'm in other countries and I'm walking around, if I hear an American talk, I have like an indescribable sense of happiness. It comes like, oh dude, and you just like look at him, you see him, and it's like, motherfucker, what's up, dude? And it's like,
Yeah.
hell yeah, and that, like that's what, or even this is the only time in my life I've ever felt this because I don't ever think of like racial components. When I went to a libertarian conference, I met a group of Cuban people that all lived in Hialeah, and chatting with them for like 2 hours, and like all of the crazy similarities in terms of shit that our moms made with fucking white people's rights and the horrible fucking apartments and these like talking with them about all those experiences was like, oh holy shit, this is actually like this is really interesting. I like, dude, I got wasted. I talked to people all night long. It was a really cool experience. So it wouldn't surprise me if somebody told me that like, yeah, 2 black people could share some kind of racial bond or 2 white people or whatever. Like, yeah, I mean, I could totally see that happening.
So do you think it's racist to believe that it's a genetic or racially problematic to at least promote the idea that there's just an inherent genetic closeness
Ooh,
that happens between
I
people?
guess where you go, where you would say that those things are, they happen because you were born into those specific stanches, but they're more illustrated by the environment as opposed to the.
Same race that can't be.
No, I mean, I think if you're a
Change
loser, I think
genetics.
they'll say that it's like, you know, you can't talk about it. But yeah, I mean, like people on the left have ceded every genetic argument to racist, so it's not surprising that only racist people.
That's
will do
true.
Like, yeah, I mean, the thing is that we can simultaneously acknowledge these genetic factors probably exist, but then also acknowledge that like
Yeah, the environment is much larger.
In terms of making
Yeah.
you comfortable with other people, right? If you grow up around like different races of people, like you're gonna be conditioned to view them in certain ways. Like there's like it's funny because I make Asian accents and shit on my thing. When I go to other countries and I see like the odd Asian person and they start talking, I am actually racist because when I see them talking, I'm expecting them to sound like an Asian person would sound in fucking San Francisco or LA. I'm expecting to hear them talk like fucking Lily or Offline TV. I expect them to sound American because that's how strongly living in LA and then traveling to San Francisco, San Jose, I associate Asian people with like fucking California and Seattle. That's like that's the association I have in my mind. So like I mean you can overcome like some associations based on like how you're raised around people or how you hear people talk or people that you share schools with or whatever. It doesn't have to be like this is what your genes say and you can't change it, you know?
I felt uncomfortable when he said that.
Said what? Oh, the racial. Well, that's because I don't know where he was going with it. But I don't know his belief system at all.
I don't either, but it made me uncomfortable. But I'm trying to compare what Kalvin's asking me to do. What Tread Logic said that trans people are the Jews of gender.
Hmm?
And I think what he meant was
life, then, working
that
class Andy.
the ADL and ACLU don't want you to spread anti-Semitism, even if you believe it. Even if you have evidence to support whatever anti-Semitic thing you're saying, they're just like, it's too dangerous, just like don't say it. And that reminds me of kind of what Kalvin's saying to me now. Just like you're hurting people by saying your thoughts about this, and so you may really believe in it, but it's harmful to spread these ideas. So I think that in order to say like, well, I still think we should all say what we think, I then have to say I think if Nick Rekieta believes that races inherently should stick together, then I also believe he should say that. If that's what he really thinks. I don't believe it. I find it destructive and concerning. It freaks me out. But like I'm not going to tell him not to say it.
So here's like the issue. Okay, I'll say something then Kevin can go. Okay, the issue is that like for us, people's beliefs don't really matter because it's never going to cause any harm to us. Like at the end of the day, I give a fuck less what you think about like white guys or men or because I don't care. It's not going to affect me. But my well-being and my existence is never on the table in this country.
Yes. And not only that, but it's also not a battleground for legislation in this country. It's it could have some deal of weight to it as well.
But if you're a trans person and whether or not you should even have access to certain types of medication,
Okay, thank you.
when these things are constantly up for debate, I think it's a lot harder to be like, you know what, I respect you to have whatever opinion you want about us. When your opinion is going to influence how you vote, you might vote away my right to exist. I think it makes it like a fundamentally scarier topic to engage with. Like we can be very dispassionate about stuff like that. Like, you can make all the school shooter jokes you want. You're not going to force me to go Columbine somebody. But a lot of people making jokes about trans people saying they don't respect them, don't believe in them. Maybe we outlaw medication for children. Maybe we outlaw like arguably Kalvin only exists here as he does today because enough people were accepting enough of trans people that he was able to have an institution and an environment that supported his transition. In another world where everybody would really respect everybody's beliefs and they just don't really believe the trans shit is real, fuck them all. Like he's or her for the rest of their life, they're just fine. Like that's the.
And I would be suffering.
Yeah.
Like I would be unhappy. Like my quality of life would be like severely less. Like I'm like not literate right now, but yeah.
I'm not telling you what to believe about it. I'm just saying like, that's a difference where that's why I won't ever say something like, yeah, you can believe whatever you want about me, and I can believe whatever you want about you, and that's cool. It's not the same. My existence isn't up for debate. Nothing about my quality of life is impacted by the other person. Yeah, that's what I want to say.
But I still like engage with you. You know what I mean? Like I see what you're saying.
Fucks with me.
I fucks with you, MrGirl. You know what I mean? Like I see that you're willing to talk, and I feel like that's important.
Mm-hmm.
However, I agree with Destiny that like it's a little different when it's like for me personally. Like there's a lot of shit that's on the line. There's a lot of shit that in a perfect world, trans people.
Well, I think I think there's the JQ that gets discussed fairly often by people. I would say my existence also is debated.
Well, but like nobody is realistically. I don't want to go full flames on you, but I think Jewish people enjoy a lot of mainstream support in the United States right now. Okay.
It's just a spectrum.
They
It's on
do
a
until
spectrum,
they don't.
MrGirl.
It's a spectrum.
I think the perception that Jewish people enjoy a lot of mainstream support in the United States is also part of what is dangerous.
Anti-Semitism and transphobia are both like problems, though.
Yeah, they're both bad.
They're both bad.
Yes, I'm just responding to you saying like that I can't say, well, you believe whatever you want about me, I'll believe whatever about you. I can say that because there are, such as Nick Fuentes, people who do debate over whether I should be allowed to exist or what to do about me, right?
Yeah, I mean these are both bad things. I don't think anybody's saying we should be anti-Semitic, right?
Yeah, like there's no logical reason to be anti-Semitic. To me, there's no logical.
So what do you? No, there are logical reasons to hate every race. For sure,
I mean, if we were having the same conversation and we had Fuentes here, like, and Fuentes was saying like, listen, I respect your opinion about me, you respect my opinion about you. I mean, like, I would probably be saying the same thing to Fuentes. I'd be like, yo, listen, if you're gonna be hardcore anti-Semitic and you're talking to a Jewish person, like, that's like that's a really hard pill to swallow because that can't.
I know, but I think I have to. If I believe in free speech, I think I have to swallow it. I just what I'm saying is I'm not gonna tell. Like, I might say something similar, like I think your views are hurtful and they hurt my feelings or something. But I don't think I would. At a certain point, he's gonna say like, okay, but this is what I believe. What do you want me to do about it?
Yeah, sure,
and
but
it's
complicated. Free speech is complicated because, like, when we're talking about the rights that are afforded to us by the state, one of those rights might be like the pursuit of like certain health care, and somebody's free speech in the way that they exercise it might lead to the exclusion of people from accessing said health care. That's the complicated thing. I'm not anti-free speech or saying we shouldn't have this conversation. I'm just saying that, like, yeah, you just have to be careful when you tell somebody like, hey, just respect my different beliefs because that could be a hard pill to swallow.
Like at the end of the day, I'm gonna support free speech, but also like I'll like talk like there's the implications.
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about free speech, but always be aware that free speech is always just it's not necessarily a dog whistle, but it's like a very, very convenient avenue in which people will try to push dangerous beliefs and then have that extend into legislation. And I think as long as you're always aware of that, then you can be in defense of free speech. But MrGirl is like so fond of just walking this line. So I guess he's found it. He's found the line that he's angle shooting. But how much utility is there? Is that worth when like there's 200 plus bills discriminating against queer people in this country? Like, what does your free speech do in that capacity?
There always will be implications, and like, it sucks that it's a trade-off.
No, wait. When I say free speech, I'm not talking about speech that's like disconnected
Like, I'm not.
from.
I mean, more people not being
politics and-
canceled. I don't believe in canceling people for, unless they're being like, I don't know.
Well, do you think Nick Fuentes should be allowed on?
I'm gonna be so real with you. I don't know who that is.
Okay, do you think neo-Nazis, let's say a self-professed neo-Nazi with a swastika tattooed on his arm, do you think that should be allowed on YouTube?
I mean, they can say what they want as long as they're not inciting actual real-world violence.
Well, what if you think what they're saying is going to incite some type of violence down the line, but they're not literally saying go out and like kill Jews. They're just saying there's a Jewish problem, a Jewish question, and we need to talk about solution. Do you think that should be allowed on YouTube?
I'm gonna be real. Like, I don't want to say the wrong. I don't really know, honestly. I want to say like.
You're scared to answer the question.
Yeah.
I think that if I genuinely believe that what someone was saying was going to lead to real world violence, I would say no. But I guess you can never fully predict if something's going to lead to real world violence or not.
Okay. I have to sleep soon, guys.
I know, me too. I'm a little confused. But at the end of the day, you know what? I get frustrated with some of the trans debates because I feel like MrGirl, I feel like you're just conflating a lot of different kinds of, you're just hearing about like so many different kinds of trans people, and like there's some trans people that I feel like you just
Which is fair, because from MrGirl's perspective, you have to understand, he hears that same statement from everybody, right? Because Demon Mama would come on and say like every trans person is fake, these trans like they would all.
Can you talk to
disagree.
Demon Mama? If you talk to Demon Mama, you might come back and think you'll be like, okay, yeah, maybe you're valid.
No, Demon
Every
Mama
trans
will
person.
push things.
That's gonna make it worse. Every trans person says the same thing to me that I've talked to. They all say I'm
I
trans.
paid thousands of dollars to watch a debate between you and Demon Mama. I
Well,
really would.
Why don't you give me my PayPal? Or Demon
She
Mama's
won't do
PayPal.
it. Yeah, no, she won't do it.
For thousands of dollars, she wouldn't do it.
I think she might.
No,
She's
don't ever do that. I won't ever talk to you again. I'll blacklist you.
What?
If you
If
pay
what?
Demon Mama thousands of dollars for a conversation, I will immediately blackout you. She does not deserve that money. Let her fucking
No.
fade off and die. Career-wise is what I mean. Fade out, like her career fade out, not her die.
Yeah,
We're not
yes,
inciting
yes,
real
I
world
understand.
violence.
No, I won't pay
Don't pay
anybody
her. Thank
to
God.
talk to
No.
me.
Jesus Christ.
Miss Sweats today.
Okay, I'm going to sleep. I love you guys. Are we good?
I love
Yeah.
you too.
No, good night. It was nice to talk to you. It was nice to meet you.
Sweet dreams, Steven.
Sweet
Thank you for
dreams.
coming. I
Sweet
appreciate
dreams.
it.
Yeah, it's been fun. Stay safe, people.
You too.
Okay, I'm tired.
Oh my god, am I
Okay.
free? Am I free? Can I play League of Legends now?
Fuck. I want to watch this Sun Meltdown. Why is my last spell game crashing?
Alright. Alright. I'm gonna break it on here. I guess, does he has final comments?
My life is just.
So I wish Destiny, he was literally talking about it last night. I wish he had actually gotten to the fact of it's very, very important for people to socially transition and distinguishing that away from medical transition, which should come after socially transitioning in therapy. But overall, he kind of did prescribe that through different ways he was pushing back. So overall, I think this is like a very, very interesting conversation for sure. We got the surprise Lauren visit after Brianna Wu, whoever the fuck that is. More like Brianna Who. But yeah, I was better than I even possibly could have imagined. And Kalvin stole the show. God bless. Being able to weaponize that identity. Good shit. Yeah. Mostly do League of Legends content, but looking to do more politics lately. So subscribe, I guess, is what I'm saying. Or follow me on Twitter at Madden_LUV, capital LUV. It's probably going to be in the description. But thank you.